The blonde guy and his partner are out there trading blows like it's life or death. The Hamel Kingdom's fairest family has been around since before the country was even born, so they carry a pedigree so legendary it feels carved into history itself. Out here in Elba's eastern stretch, life hits way harder than those pretty paper promises ever could. Turns out that old saying about the poor and having kids still holds, because even the so-called blue bloods can't dodge it either, and it's all just starting to get worse as the story cuts off right. Even with all the Ferris family's history and old traditions, they're still stuck as a low-ranked nighttime house sitter, scraping the very bottom of the noble ladder. That paycheck should have fed 8 adults easy. But it all gets drained just to keep up the fake fancy noble act and being the captain of the guard doesn't come cheap. Those costs hit hard. The moment you see the two of them, it's obvious. Those 7 food portions don't even stand a chance before everyone's getting fed. But the budget is already stretched to the limit with only 2 kids shown. And it makes you wonder how many brothers and sisters are really packed into that family. And yeah, the reality is straight up wild. The Ferris family has 12 kids to raise, all at once. The whole household is on edge staring down those bills like they're a death sentence. And it's painfully obvious they still don't have enough cash to make it through. Then the protagonist's mind snaps to his sister Hannah trapped, unable to marry because no dowry will ever come so. He turns to Lilia and decides he can't let her drown in that weight, but she only lifts her eyes and calls his name. Right there he makes the call he'll protect the family he loves no matter what it costs, even if he has to toss his noble title aside. So he chooses the one path that'll let him fight back. He becomes an adventurer. It's all for his siblings. He knows this busted household won't get saved unless somebody steps up and brings in the cash, so he barrels straight for the huge wooden building where the guild is housed. He strides through the front doors, then freezes for a heartbeat, soaking in every detail of the place. The guild's bursting at the seams. Adventurers hustle, slam down gear, and gear up for the grind while he watches them. He freezes at how dead silent the room feels, like someone slipped a silent curse over the whole place. A cheerful receptionist beams at him, practically glowing as she welcomes him to the guild and leans in to ask what he's here for today. He tells her he's here to sign up as an adventurer, and she instantly snatches the registration book, ready to kick things off right now. The receptionist shoves the paperwork across the desk and tells him everything's ready, so she told him to fill it out his name, plus any skills or experience he had, and he just froze, staring at that blank form like it had answers he didn't know yet. Then he halts, staring at the sword at his side, and wrestles with what he should write for his skills. Once he's done the form and slid it over, that registration fee punches his wallet and he can't help but feel a little bummed. Then the receptionist grins and says, "We've taken your application before," right before she starts explaining how the guild runs. Especially how the quest money gets handled and what penalties you'll be hit with if you mess up a job. She starts blabbing about how guild cards work, then drops the hammer, break the law, or kill another member and they'll ban you from every guild in the whole country. And that's when she shoves a temporary tag into his hands and tells him, "Finish your first training request and you'll get the official card." He snatches the item from her and stares at that basic beginner's tag they gave him. He stares at it, and disappointment hits hard, just plain wood with his name carved into it. He gives it one final glance, then slides a wooden tag onto his neck to seal the whole thing as official. The protagonist strides toward the gigantic request board, and a sign flashes the way to the rookie jobs hidden deeper inside. He freezes for a beat, and it clicks. Those random colors on the board aren't random at all. They're the guild card ranks. And it turns out the guild hands out these ranks by raw strength and what you've earned, slapping material-based titles on everyone from stone-level rookies to legendary treasure-class heroes. Climbing to the top ranks like Mithril isn't a solo run. You need a stamp from the top brass, and only a select few get special materials to kickstart their mission. He daydreams about gear forged from that top-tier stuff, then snaps back he's got to earn enough cash for lunch today. He scans the board hard, hunting for anything he can realistically handle, and then zeroes in on the beginner-tagged quests, until he lays his eyes on a whole swarm of hard manual jobs, scrubbing city ditches, hauling trash at construction sites, and doing non-stop upkeep around the capital. He snatches a flyer off the wall, thinking, no big deal, because he used to do this kind of hustle for pocket money as a kid, and rookies don't get punished if something goes sideways. After hearing that giant rats are munching the slimes that keep the sewers clean, he realizes this is way worse than it sounds, and decides to grab one more job while he still can. He marches back to the counter, and the receptionist nods, confirming he's officially locked in on 2 quests, one to collect slimes and one for herbs. The receptionist shoves the papers into his hands and blurts out that the stamp on that form is the only way he'll ever get paid. So if he loses it, he's screwed. Heading straight for the city gates, he follows the signs as the roar of the busy capital fades behind him, As he finally hits the checkpoint, guards are swamped, ripping through customs forms and driving that long line forward. He finally reaches the front, thanks the guard for the grind, and asks, "Am I good to go through the gate?" And then the moment cuts off, and the guard just grins, waves him through, because he knows this whole place is basically the Ferris family's backyard anyway. He barrels past the other travelers, eyes locked on the open fields, hunting for the answers he needs. Just as he keeps moving, something in the tall grass snaps his attention, so he halts mid-step and drops low to stare at the ground up close. He tracks down exactly what he's hunting for, the most basic medicinal herb out there, and that's the perfect first wind for his growing list. Right as he's out there gathering plants, he spots some slime wobbling around nearby, minding its own business in the grass. And then it hits him. Most of these guys just chow down on trash and dead leaves, so they're basically harmless, unless you're small enough to count as tiny. He slowly scoops up a slime, still clearly panicking as he grips that wobbly little monster. It's painfully obvious, and my dude can't stop picturing how it'd turn the drains into a nasty sewage nightmare in no time. He starts shoving everything in, snugging the little guys right into his bag alongside the herbs he hauled in, until he marches back to the guild, feeling weirdly small as hulking. Big armored adventurers thunder past him. The second he steps inside, the place hits him like a wall-packed, deafening, and suddenly he's staring at this insane crowd, stunned out of his mind as he pauses. So there he stands in line, stuck listening to guys rant about paperwork while everyone else is already going wild, celebrating their successful runs. Crowds are everywhere, screaming their cheers and smashing their drinks together for the win. And there's, right in the middle of the room, a wild arm wrestling showdown is blasting off. Everyone's going crazy watching it. Right as he finally slips to the front, he leans in and asks the receptionist, "So the guild is this wild all the time?" She just bursts into laughter and assures him, "Yup, it's absolutely that. Like all this chaos is nothing more than a normal day at the office." The receptionist shrugs and says the guild is always this loud, and right then some drunk dude nearby slurs, "So you didn't enjoy the show, huh?" But she tells you, out here, chaos is the whole job. An adventurer just learns to roll with it. He stares down at the handful of coins in his palm and brushes it off. He doesn't really mind the grind, even though it's grunt work for pocket change, like chasing down slimes and hauling your weight on some farm. But all those tiny chores, mopping the floors every single day, started stacking up, turning into real savings. So he figures if he slashes his own food bills back home, his younger siblings can get fed more, even if it's barely anything. The next morning, the receptionist dives into his new request again, while the regulars clock that he's back in full swing already. One of the veteran legends slaps a hand on his shoulder, tells the rookie, "Give it your all." He spots the brand new tag hanging from his neck, and he blurts out that he finally landed his official plate. So, yeah, it finally happened. Which makes him realize that even with real requests on the table now, he's still stuck at square one, staring down the starting line. He stands there, staring at the ground, realizing that battling monsters isn't some game, it's a straight-up gamble with his life. And that crushing thought hits him hard, because he barrels straight into the guild board chaos, where everyone is shoving and clawing for a job like their lives depend on it. People always say that every adventurer has to smash 3 monsters no matter what quest they choose. First, it's just other guys scrapping in the mornings to earn shifts, and the second, that's when the real monsters show up. The ones they go out to hunt for real. But the third enemy is always greed. It swallows their hard-earned money, and that's why most people can't ever get ahead. He shoves through the crowd like he's fighting for his life, and finally lands a paper for himself. Though man, it was a brutal struggle. He takes one look around and realizes, yeah, he really did pick a dungeon monster hunt. And trust me, it's nothing like he expected, because those dungeon monsters are a whole different breed. When they get killed, their bodies don't leave a trace at all. They vanish straight into the ground. Instead of a corpse, they drop a magic stone, a crystal packed with mana, and then peep. When everyone was left scratching their heads, the Magic Institute finally cracked the mystery and uncovered how it all worked. People swear dungeons are real magic shadow mimic monsters carved from darkness, because they're special places packed with power. Giant pools of mana where these dungeons form and by. And if you use the magic stone as the core, a monster's shadow explodes into existence. Yeah, it's a bizarre process where a shadow is just a slick copy of the monster itself. And the protagonist suddenly remembers the one crucial thing they're tied to. Alburo, his oldest brother, drilled it into him. These guys never change. Their power stays identical, and once you know the pattern, they're basically predictable. But dungeons are scattered across the Elva continent, and everyone whispers about this jaw-dropping treasure buried deep within. So naturally, The crew at the Royal Magic Academy didn't just study those monsters, they obsessively figured out how to build their magic stone cores. And that discovery exploded into a massive business because once magic stones get reshaped into real-world must-haves, lanterns, food storage, all that good stuff, they become so handy that every rich noble and major merchant decides, no way, these are essential for my mansion. But here's the catch. Once the labyrinth's master, the treasure guarding power at the bottom, gets wiped out, the magic stones simply stop being made. And that chaos created a problem. The moment every dungeon conquest started draining the nation's magic stone reserves, they panicked, and the Mage Institute finally solved it by figuring out how to force the labyrinth to spring back to life on its own. Even with all that magic blazing, they still couldn't find a way to wipe those monsters out of the labyrinths for good. Dungeon hunting is just like mining stormmen. Smash through wreck monsters and snatch their magic stones. And it's a brutal grind. The guild receptionist nearly drops her jaw when she hears the protagonist wants to charge into a labyrinth she's staring. She clocks his plain gear in a second and snaps that it's way too light for something that dangerous. Then she starts flailing her hands, utterly panicked, yelling that he needs to wait and save up for a complete set of armor, first wall. But he just waves it away like it's nothing, cracks that he'll be fine, then the receptionist doesn't let it drop. She warns him that chasing even a basic stone tablet can go deadly the moment things spiral out of control, and reminds him that, telling him he's still just a rookie, and he better haul in some real equipment, anything decent at all. He just locks eyes with her, smirks like he owns the moment, and tells her to relax, because he's got a real plan in motion. Later, at the dungeon's pitch-black entrance, a goblin bursts out and starts shrieking at the top of its lungs. But the hero bursts in at full speed and lands one clean strike, smashing the monster before it even gets its bearings. The blonde protagonist barrels deeper into the dungeon, and with one brutal swing, he splits another goblin straight down the middle, and he finally steals a breath, sighing hard as the magic stones dropped by those monsters clatter across the floor. He stares at the loot and suddenly realizes there were dozens of them. Then his mind reels at how they actually wiped out a whole mound of enemies. So he starts stuffing everything into his bag, dropping to his knees on the cold floor and filling it with stones as he clears the area. Then, out of nowhere, just then, another goblin tumbles down from the ceiling, shrieking, and lunges at him with a surprise jump to catch him off guard. But the dude moves like a blur. He plants himself, stays locked on, and smashes the monster in the face with a brutal hit before it even gets its strike off. The blow blasts the goblin backward like a wrecking ball, while the protagonist barely even sweats as he closes out the fight. He slips his weapon back, steals himself, and heads out while the last few stones still glow on the ground later. He strides over to the purchasing office, straight past the labyrinth, where a dude is just lounging behind the desk. The protagonist strides up to the clerk, says he wants to sell his stuff, then thumps down a huge bag packed to the brim with stones. The clerk squints at the loot, gasps that it's an insane pile of magic stones, way more than a low-ranked nobody should ever be holding. While he's stuck doing the paperwork, he suddenly freezes and stares at the protagonist's gear, eyeing the armor like it's got secrets to spill because it's way too perfect for a rookie. He's basically praising the protagonist's high-quality stuff, and the guy just nods like, yeah, sure. Turns out that gear actually belongs to Alburo, the guy who's meant to take over the Ferris family, so the protagonist just rents it under a formal contract while his brother's out on a break. And even though he's raking in money, the moment he pays rent and grabs food, there's basically nothing left. But he knows this is just the way it is for now, staring at that tiny pile of coins against the mountain of what he has to pay. And once he pictures how gear gets wrecked and repaired for a fortune, it hits him. His brother didn't just help, he took a real, dangerous risk. Helping his younger sibling kick off their adventurer journey was a massive favor from a big brother, straight up life-changing. He freezes for a heartbeat, then realizes he's got his brother to thank for everything he's owed. Just one quick note on everything that's been happening. Turns out Alburo Nord was the one who trained him in that exact strategy. At the stables, Alburo just couldn't stop himself. He wondered if Node was really giving it everything right now. For a guy who'd graduated from the military academy, this whole plan wasn't some genius mystery at all. It was the standard playbook, to let knight apprentices earn a little side cash, because up on the top floors, the weak monsters just don't really. He grinds through that heavy armor, with Gretty's dead, certain that Node will hold up. Then he'll come back safe and sound. So fast forward 2 weeks after Nod got promoted to plate rank, he's still out there grinding like crazy, and spotting that they've been mowing down monsters at a brutal, steady pace, he slaps himself a quick glance at his newest loot. Even though non-stop work has got him feeling worn thin, he refuses to let it slow him down. At least not yet. He clocks that his brother's vacation ends today, so he's got to slam that armor back in place by tonight. Node worries that even if these monsters don't look like a real threat, they're brutal enough to wreck his shot at a new plate rank. Realizing that once that armor comes off, his efficiency is going to crash, he snaps into high gear and starts pushing the pace while he's still got the upper hand. He storms into the cave and tears through every goblin in his way, dropping them one after another. He tore across the distance and slammed in perfect hits before any of them even had time to blink. After the fight, Nod stared at the loot in his hand and realized this had taken him farther than he ever imagined. Back at the very beginning, he couldn't even survive an ambush. His body just shut down and froze. His swings used to miss completely because he couldn't read the distance at all. And even when he finally landed a hit, it barely scratched the surface. Nothing changed at all, but now it's different. Because he's finally stopped fighting the weight of that armor and learned to carry it like it belongs to him. Node suddenly realizes he can read the monster's moves now, so he stays just out of reach and takes down the entire group in one go. Nod catches his breath in the middle of the cave, sinking down and grinding through thoughts about how everything's shifting, and right then, he snaps back into the fight. He slams down with a massive hit that wrecks way harder than anything before. Nod realizes his body feels weightless, his eyes cut clean through the dark, and then bam, his strength rockets sky high. He flashes back to those days when monster patterns broke his brain, wondering how they even moved and what he was supposed to do. But after enough brutal battles, something changes. One moment hits, and you can feel your power rising. And that's exactly where he is right now. Selling his high-end armor for cash was the warm-up, because the real goal was simple, getting stronger and stronger until he couldn't be stopped. The truth is, these artificial dungeons don't pay nearly as well as the real ones, mostly because magic stones get used for everything, so they're always wanted, and you can sell them for a pretty solid price. Here's the catch. In these fake dungeons, the government scoops up the stones for cheap to lock in its monopoly. And if you even try to sell them anywhere else, that's treated like a massive crime. So while the adventurers hustle for those stones, most of the cash just gets swept straight into the royal family's pockets. The thing is, the Adventurers Guild barely makes a dent off these artificial dungeon gigs. They're popular because they're safe for anyone who can swing a sword, but here's the catch: these missions hand you nothing in return, no contribution points at all, so you can't climb your rank. Most adventurers are locked on leveling from newbie to crystal tier, because higher ranks slam you with way better pay, exclusive perks, and the kind of status that gets you noticed. Hunting monsters out in the wild is usually the smarter play, because you rack up completion bonuses and haul loot you can sell for way more than anything you'd find in a labyrinth. Node already knew every detail, so it's wild he still signed up for that lousy dungeon job. Like, what was he thinking? But here's the twist: he wasn't chasing the magic stones at all. He was fighting to survive his first real combat and get used to the pain without dropping dead. This wasn't the first blade he'd ever grabbed at the Ferris house. Every son gets locked into sword training as soon as they're little kids. Nod didn't just luck into it. He had the real gift, and with his dad, his two older brothers, and the family guards all training him, his skills shot up at lightning speed. Even without ever stepping foot in a military academy, people swore he was already as solid as a real soldier. Maybe even sharper. But the veterans who'd truly tasted blood and war always had something wild to say. They drilled caution into him. And Node still hears it in his head. Sure, being sharp with a sword is one skill, but being good at war is a whole other beast. Train drills can only get you so far, and then the rest comes. And real skill only shows up after you've actually survived a real fight. Node keeps listening as the warning drags on, hearing them say that because if he ever forgets that, he'll wipe out one guy, then he'll be the next one to get dropped. Strolling through the city, Node realizes his gamble paid off, cut real combat experience, came out unscathed, and even saved some cash. So then, with that in he barrels straight to the blacksmith's guild, where the sign looms above the door. The second he steps inside, a huge bearded guy behind the counter blares a loud greeting and snaps. "So what are you hunting for?" Nod shoves a note in the smith's hands, demanding a full set of armor and a razor-sharp new edge for a sword, and the smith's eyes widen like he just got hit with a secret. He asks whether Node is an adventurer and what rank he's got, and Node tells him he's been the plate for about 2 weeks now. The smith grabs his shoulder and shouts, "Hang on a second," while he dashes to the back to fetch whatever he's got. He pulls out a set of hard leather armor, then explains it's been soaked in a special agent to make it tough enough to stand up to real attacks. The blacksmith snaps. Even with leather armor, a metal blade can slice straight through it. Then he leans in and grills Node. "So what, are you just some trainee? And why aren't you wearing chainmail?" Node can't believe it. This guy actually listens to every single thing his customers need. He even starts to toy with the idea of grabbing chainmail for protection. He knows his dad and brother are already draining the family sets, and there's no way he can scrape together a new one right now, so he figures there's no use even bringing it up. And then, so he tells the smith he's got nothing, and the guy nods like, all right. Then shows him how the leather armor is built to cradle a protective plate inside the chest. Then he starts to explain the rest. Sliding that wooden plate in there turns it into a nightmare for any blade trying to pierce through. The smith admits chainmail costs a fortune, but says you still want the best armor you can get for your head and chest, and Node presses whether it can truly stop a hard strike only for the smith to remind him it's still just wood. He tells me that if the plate is too thick, it'll just crack and wreck how he moves. So he layered the leather on purpose, trapping any wood splinters so they won't slice into Node's body if the plate breaks. He says an iron plate would guard them way better and soak up every hit, but then he flicks his hand and cuts straight to a price is the real problem. Next, Node turns to the sword and says he's clocked over 2 weeks of brutal use on it, and he's begging to have it polished the right way. Smith wants to know the total if they toss in one more item, but Node snaps back that adding the sharpening already eats up every last cent of his budget. He throws caution to the wind and tells the guy, do it just like that. Because this is one of those moments you don't stall on. The smith leans in and tells him, for an adventurer, living is all that matters. If you can spend money to keep yourself alive, then you spend it. Because that's always the right move. And the deal is already set. And the smith tells him the leather armor will snap right into place, but the sword takes a few more days. So he turns to Node and asks if they should grab everything together at once. For a second, he hesitates, thinking Node might just suit up right there in the shop once everything's finally ready. A few days rip by, and then Nod storms in to grab his gear sword at the ready, armor finally finished, looking like he's about to dive straight into the next fight. Staring at his fresh setup, he realizes his next massive target isn't optional anymore. It's time to get real chainmail. It's built from metal rings, and it's insanely expensive because every single one is a nightmare to craft. He's got to treat defense like the #1 rule, no matter what it costs, because he can keep leaning on it even after he swaps out his other gear later. He glances over his notes, then locks in on the quest meeting place like it's the only detail that matters. Node hightails it to the plaza, straight in front of the castle gate, and his eyes lock onto the exact spot where the quest is about to kick off. He strides up to a girl in a hat who's studying a map, and when she snaps her head around, she asks if he's another adventurer here for the gathering job. So she whips his attention to the registration area, orders him to flash his guild card there, and tells him to get moving. The carriage ride out is pure nightmare packed. To the brim, and one jerk starts yelling at Node to move because his gear keeps ramming into him, while another guy whines nonstop about the brutal shaking as Node just tries to hold it together and not throw up. As Node scans the area, he spots the other adventurers rocking armor so thin it barely counts. But he shoves the judgment down. This is a gathering quest, he tells himself, not a death match, and the job itself is downright simple. He took the guild's request to head out and harvest medicinal herbs, but these aren't ordinary weeds, someone planted premium stuff, and those crops were located a half-day journey from the capital. And because these are perfect for potions and they're booming right now, the Alchemy Guild blasted out a massive request. They get a solid base paycheck plus commission for every monster they bring in, because the monsters really do show up at the site, meaning, so yeah, one trip won't cut it to grab that fancy chainmail, but give him a few days of grinding work and he'll still roll back home with solid profit. Nod's got to play by the rules, so he packed everything he needs to survive out there: sealed food, bags for the herbs, and the basics like a lantern. Because if he forgets anything, he's done. The carriage rattles for what feels like forever, bumping him around nonstop, yet it locks his focus like a blade on the mission waiting ahead. The whole crew finally rumbles up to a huge open field right by the mountains, and as they spill out, the guide lifts a sample in the air and yells for everyone to snatch one so they can dive straight into work the moment the explanation ends. Node ducks into the trees alone to kick off the search, and it doesn't take long before right before he realizes it, he spots strange markings on the ground that snag his attention. He inches around that thick tree trunk and peeks out, checking if he's in the right spot then there. The exact plant he'd been hunting was right there in the brush, just sitting in plain sight. He drops to his knees, replaying what his training drilled into him. All the good medicinal magic lives in the leaves and the stems, so he may. With a sharp, clean snip, he harvests it just like that, because he knows this method keeps the herb alive to grow back before he sprints off to hunt the next one. Nod just stands there, replaying in his head how all those times he hauled herbs near the capital finally paid off, and now he's thinking, I should totally write down where everything is just in case I land another job around here, and he dives back to work by the trees, locked in on the plants until a tiny monster suddenly rockets out of the bushes straight at him. By the time the sun starts sinking, he's already nailed the first day's deliveries. bagged and done then. He tells himself he'd better set up camp before night swallows the road. So then he bolts off into the nearby brush, ready to haul back a massive pile of firewood. While he's out there, he spots wild mushrooms and instantly prays he could tell which ones are safe to eat because one wrong bite could decide whether he lives or dies. Then it clicks. If he can hunt his own food, he'll slash his spending on meals. He vows that once he's back in town, he'll buy a scout adventurer a drink and pick their brain for every tip they've got. Soon enough, he finally trudges down to the water's edge, peering around like something's about to happen. He decides to gamble on fate and whips up a basic fishing rod, just a wooden stick, a length of string, and pure hope. The plan actually clicks. So he immediately starts gutting the fish he caught, lines them up on skewers, and gets them ready for the grill, but he still needs a light, so he strides over to another guy nearby and asks to borrow some fire, no hesitation. The guy's totally cool with it. Node shoots him a thanks, then fires up and starts cooking. The fish finally got tossed onto the blazing campfire, and now it's sizzling like crazy, filling the air with an insanely good smell. And the other guy hands over some of his fire, like a thank you gift. Node, stunned, tries to apologize for the trouble, but he doesn't waste a second. He bites down hard on the fish, tearing right into his meal. Under a sky full of stars, he sits with the other adventurers and realizes everything tastes insanely better then. And with the first night of the gathering mission officially winding down, everything shifts. The other guy shoves a steaming hot bowl into his hands with dinner, no questions, just heat. Nod shot him a grateful look and dug into his food, and the guy told him, yeah, it's warm outside, but these nights still bite hard. But the forest shuts out the wind, so it's not that awful then. He says his dad warned him the open plains would be way worse. So, Node leans back, warm and fully relaxed, and thinks, honestly, this job is way sweeter than I expected. By day 3, Nod rolls up on the forest entrance and finds the herb patch completely picked clean. But if he pushes deeper, there's still a whole lot waiting. Nod scans the whole place, and just like that, he realizes he won't have to hunt at all for herbs because they're everywhere. And he's flying forward until a strange sound crackles from the deep brush and stops him dead in his tracks. He freezes, eyes locked on the shadows, and asks. He stared into the silence trying to figure out that sound, and as it roared louder and louder, his gut told him someone nearby was in the middle of a fight. Which doesn't add up, because out here the monsters are basically just feral beasts, so he's fed up with how long this is taking. And that's when he starts making a click that whoever's out there is in real trouble, and he can't just sit around, so he snaps that they have to go. Even though he keeps drilling it into his head, no dumb risks, no shortcuts, because he's doing this to earn for his family back home. But even if he's done with night training, he still can't stomach the idea of abandoning other adventurers to die, so he launches into a sprint. He bursts through the trees, and right as he finally spots them, boom, goblins have a nasty group cornered in a clearing, but the adventurers are wrecked, barely hanging on, wheezing for breath while the monsters bear down, ready to end them for good. Node doesn't hesitate for a second. He lunges straight into the brawl with his sword already drawn, planting himself right in front of the group and daring the goblins to come for him. The black-haired guy stares in disbelief, then screams that reinforcements have arrived. He can't even finish the sentence before it hits. They're finally saved. Then the red-haired girl blurts, "Are you for real?" while she fights tooth and nail to pin a goblin down with her dagger. But before anyone can breathe, another dude in the crew rockets forward, yelling, "Thanks," as he drops in and nails one of the monsters with a brutal hit. Sensing their only shot at surviving, the whole crew snaps back in sync, steals their nerves, and reclaims their fighting stance. Nod kept his eyes locked on the brawl, and when he finally clocked it, these goblins were way better fighters than the ones he'd stomped through in the labyrinth. Even so, it doesn't shake him at all, because he knows that no matter how strong they get, a goblin's still a goblin. And he realizes his new gear is legit because it stops a wooden spear cleanly with zero trouble. The black-haired guy spots Node's kit right away and snarls that armor looks like a nightmare to move in, barely covering anything at all. Node only lets out a vague hum as the rest of the battered rookies crumple to the ground, gasping for breath. He just stands there, staring them down until someone finally yells his name and drags his attention back. He finally got a breather, thanked him for saving him, and introduced himself as a genius, then asked the guy's name. Nod spots Genius bleeding from his ear and lunges in, asking if he's okay because he looks wrecked beyond belief. Genius just shrugs it off and tells Node, "Because of you, I only got a few minor cuts instead of something way worse," then pushes Node to go check out what he's found. He points to the girl and their crew and goes, "This is Rise, our party priest." And she looks so drained after that fight you can practically see her energy fading. Genius finally admits, We'd all be dead if she hadn't kept us together. And as everyone just nods along, it hits harder. She's seeing the full weight of what they've survived. The short-haired girl with a bandage across her nose finally jumps in. She's Shino, and she thanks Node for the help like he just saved her life. While the other girl in the group glances back at her friend Almana, you can practically see the relief hit because somehow they all made it out alive and in one piece. Even Jago's the big guy in the back gets called out, and the whole crew shows serious gratitude for him holding the line. Rai shakes herself back into control, steps up to Node and asks with a warm voice if he's okay, then offers to patch him up using her magic. Node flashes her a quick thanks, but he's totally fine. He hasn't been hit once. So Genius shouts for her to come over and help him right there. Rise looks like she's one breath away from collapsing, her face beet red, soaked in sweat, and fully overwhelmed by the strange. A Genius snatches her mid-stumble, shouting her name, his face etched with real worry over how she's holding up. But Rises only flashes a faint smile, tells him she's fine, then admits under pressure. She pushed her magic just a little too far. Genius just glances at her, then snaps to the rest of the group that they're done for the day since Rise is spent. The rest of the party doesn't even bicker. Everyone else throws their hands up and admits they've hit their limit too. Back at the campsite, the whole crew starts tearing down their gear, and they all nod the same way. Yeah, it's finally time to pack up and head home. As they cut through the camp, the other adventurers clock their battered faces and pounce with, "What happened to you guys?" Notapool briefly put his Genius on pause and demanded to know exactly how many monsters they'd wiped out. And Genius snapped back that they'd taken down a massive horde. And when Genius blurts that there are roughly 50 goblins, Node nearly drops his jaw. He keeps saying the number over and over like he can't make it real. Before Genius even hears how insane it is that they somehow survived that fight, they're just standing there looking utterly wiped out. Genius tells how he fought back in the forest, but the sheer wave of monsters crushed him. There was just no way through. Shino blurts that since they couldn't slip out, they were forced to brawl it out right there in the plaza, and she's not even sure they'd survived 1 second longer if Node hadn't crashed in. Right when the campsite crew spots them rolling back in, one of them cracks. Speak of the devil. The second they show up, Node tosses food into the soup and tells Genius, "Eat up, you've probably bled so much, you need a real meal right now." And that's when Genius assumes she's got it all figured out. She gives everyone a confident thumbs up and orders them to step aside while she takes over the cooking. She straight up tells him her family runs an inn, so she's about to spoil everyone with a seriously mouth-watering meal as a thank you. But before she starts, she double-checks with Genius to make sure she's allowed to go wild with their supplies. And he gives her the green light? Go for it. Genius leans in, whispers to Node, "You're in for a treat. Shino's not just any cook, she's seriously skilled." Shino jumps right into cooking, slicing through the meat with sharp precision and firing up a giant pot of soup until everything's cooked ready to serve. They slipped out of the loud chaos, finally plopped down, and dug into that steaming hot meal looking totally reborn as they ate together. Genius points out that with goblins swarming their nest, this has to be a goldmine, and Almana agrees. Even if there's no big treasure, they've still likely got loot stashed somewhere, which makes Shino finally snap, admitting she was so stressed earlier she couldn't even think straight while Genius yells at Node as he's hunched over his notebook, scribbling like his life depends on it. Genius blurts that tomorrow is their last day here, then immediately asks Node if he's down to team up and hunt the goblin nest with them. Nod starts panicking because today's chaos stole his momentum, and now he's only got about 60% of the herbs he needs, so he's stuck wondering if he should even call in sick and take the day off. He can't stop thinking goblin hunting wasn't even in his paid contract, and now the thought of digging up real coins from a nest sounds way too tempting. Everybody knows these creatures can't resist stuffing their creepy dens with random treasure and stolen goods, pile after pile. Node shoots up to his feet and tells the group, "I've made my choice." He swore to himself that real adventure is worth more than anything, then marched up to the party and told them he was in finally getting to meet them for real. Genius is absolutely hyped, slaps an arm around Node's shoulders and blurts that he's just as excited for what's coming. Leaving the whole group buzzing for morning, Almana declared that Node was worth 100 men, and Jago nodded hard, because an adventurer's real job is to hit the road and live the adventure. By morning, the plan's locked and Genius orders them to leave the second the sun pops up. No degrees, no questions. Just a plan to snatch herbs if things spiral out of control. So the next morning, the crew barrels into the woods, buzzing with confidence about the hunt. As they stride along, Nod can't stop counting his herbs. Each tin is worth a copper coin, and all the while Shino is just trying to keep her focus locked in. Everything's smooth sailing? Then Almanis jerks his hand up and shouts, "Stop!" right where they stand. She makes the whole group go stone still, then snaps, "Wait a second," and keep quiet. Genius leans over and asks if she's taking the first watch, but she's already locked onto something hiding in the brush. She spots a goblin scout in the distance, snaps her bowstring back, and steadies her aim for a deadly shot while, as she releases the arrow, it streaks straight to its target, dropping the creature cold before it can even cry out. Once the coast is clear, they creep toward the cave entrance, ducking low as they slip into the pitch-black tunnel. Node yanks to a stop by the entrance to check something, and Almana whips around, demanding to know if something went wrong or if he's found answers. Node cracks open the container to check the goods and tells Almana it's mostly just food and supplies. So he stared at the box like it personally betrayed him, sounding crushed, asking if this tiny haul was really all they could scrape together. He and Shino start spiraling under pressure, and Node bluntly warns them that this whole trip could totally fall flat, because the herb payout is probably going to be disappointing too. Sheena lifts the fur she scavenged, then grimaces and admits it's so ragged and tangled up that they'll likely never sell it. Node just stared at her and said the guys at the party didn't give a damn about little things like that. He shouts at everyone to lock in and get their heads in the game as they push deeper into the cave. And they finally burst into a massive clearing where a whole pack of goblins is cowering together in the dark. Node's eyes lock straight ahead, his face set with pure seriousness as he quietly tells the group, "We finally found them." Genius grabs control and lays it out the front line ready to surge forward, because in the second almanac, the front fighter will fire her first shot. He tells Jay to launch the attack, while Rise hangs back to patch up anyone who gets hit, and the whole crew braces for what comes next. Node blasts the signal, everybody surges out, and the goblins instantly snap, screaming like the groups are falling apart. He barrels into the fray, and their leader blasts the front with one massive shout right away. The goblins freeze in terror, and one of them, Generous, gets slammed in the face as the genius rockets into the fight, unleashing crushing strikes that blast goblins backward right up. While Jagos bulldozes everything in his path with sheer raw strength, Almana and Rises stay locked on the front line from a safe distance. The fight ends way faster than anyone expects, and the guys are suddenly standing over a pile of crushed monsters. Almona's grinning like the danger is finally over, until she dashes over to Nod and fires off, asking if they found any gold or treasure in the chest, only for Nod to look crushed and tell her they barely found anything at all, which has Shino spiraling, demanding to know if they've got even a single cent. Node mutters maybe, and Genius swoops in, pushing the whole plan over the edge so they can. Finally, they get a clear look at what's really happening. Shino's practically buzzing as everything spills out, and Genius yanks a sword to inspect the quality. But Node leans in, digs through the pile, and realizes it's mostly nothing but copper coins. Almona sweeps back around, hunting for anything they might have missed inside, while Jago just slumps there, utterly drained, silent as stone. Someone yells that they just found a silver coin, and they're absolutely buzzing about it because, back at camp, one of the guys gets asked how the trip really went, and they flat out admit there wasn't much worth bringing back, because they'd learned just how crazy it was. They were just hunting goblins, and honestly, the real mission was grabbing a handful of herbs. Reese's just breathes out that she's relieved everyone's safe, and Genius nods along as they dive into grabbing food, but Genius starts whining about the brutal wagon ride waiting for them in the morning, and Jago just snaps back, "Yeah, that's how it is." Node stays silent, just soaking in the sight as his brand new friends kick back and relax around the fire after that brutal long day. He stares at his cut of the loot, and once it's all divided, it's basically the same as herb gathering, because he still has to do the work. And he does. He shrugs it off like it doesn't matter, then flashes a quiet smile, thinking, even without some huge payday, meeting this crew made every second worth it. Then they shove the last bites down, wipe their hands clean, and look like they're about to crash headfirst into whatever's coming next. Far off beyond the woods, the sun blazes over the colossal buildings of the royal capital. Node heads straight for the guild notice board, and just as he arrives, Jobs is there. Genius catches him. They trade a few words, and then everything suddenly cuts off. No. Node hustles his paperwork to the front counter, just trying to wrap things up. Then the woman behind the desk snaps, "BIG, congratulations." And she cuts herself off right there, like something's about to blow up, and she tells him the wait is over. He finally racked up the points for a promotion, and now he's officially cleared to climb to the second rank. So the receptionist leans in and asks, "Ready to grab that special promotion quest right now?" And Node takes a second to think because getting into gemstone class is huge now. He can finally take escort jobs that pay way better than. They weren't just hunting small stuff. These missions usually meant guarding whole caravans or protecting high-profile travelers, and every single one came with strict rules. And if And if a route is infamous for monsters, clients will flat out demand top-tier fighters, the ones who've already survived that nightmare. The guild won't take chances either. They won't let a single fighter below gemstone class even get within grabbing distance of a bodyguard contract, no matter how easy it looks. By the end of the day, it all comes down to one thing: strength. And if you're an adventurer trying to climb higher, that's the only rule that matters. The guild puts them through a brutal special test. If they can knock out a quest that's one whole rank above them, they earn the promotion. The guild's manual spells it out: clients dump their problems on the desk, and the guild instantly turns them into quests for adventurers. Sure, the pay for these social jobs can be pretty rough, but the contribution points they stack up are insane, and that's why they're the go-to for rank-up tests. Nod marches up to the receptionist and asks what promotion jobs are open for him right now. She blinks at his insane energy, then snaps into action and starts digging through the official logs to find the perfect match. And she flips through the pages like crazy until she lands on the right entry. Then she tells him this is the only promotion request right now that's approved for someone at his level, so she shoves the paper at him, an ugly wolf sketch staring back, scar slicing over one eye, and tells him this is a subjugation quest. The target is the beast everyone fears, the rock wolf. Out in the eastern mountains, these normal wolves stalk around like nothing's strange, until you notice they're wrapped in natural armor, with the young only wearing a few protective plates, while the pack's alpha is basically trapped inside a nearly solid hard shell. Nod sinks into thought, replaying every scrap of intel he's pulled from Tavern Nights, where he lounged with high-rank adventurers, letting old veterans brag over drinks. And those guys weren't just yapping, they spilled everything about how the wolves vanish up in the mountains, and they warned him their armor was so brutal that most attacks just ricocheted and did nothing. Nod's been hoarding a giant notebook packed with everything he's learned: monster weak points, handy maps, herb tips, and even the weird food recipes he stumbled across. Staring at the quest sheet and cross-checking his own notes, Nod finally clicks. This is why the guild chose that monster for the test. No way this is a free win, but he knows exactly what's coming. Unlike goblins that just swarm you in chaos, wolves hunt as a pack, coordinating every strike like clockwork, and suddenly the fight feels like a whole new nightmare. Nod finally gets hit with the full force of their power when a rock wolf crashes straight into his shield, and in that moment, he finally grasps what he's really facing. And honestly, it's insane. These armors are literally made of fur, and as time drags on, the tips of the hair twist, snag, and start to harden like they're turning into stone. And the older they get, that gray coat just keeps piling on until it hardens into something that feels more like stone than fur. By the time a wolf is fully grown, its hide turns into near bulletproof armor. Most swords can't even scratch it, so this hunt won't be anything like the ones he used to survive back then. He could toughen his gear and wipe out goblins or boars without even breaking a sweat, but this time, it's going to hit different. Now he's locking horns with an enemy who's finally on his level, because fighting through stone-hard armor instead of thin plates feels like a whole new game, and it's just getting worse. Node flicks through his notes, grinning as he remembers. This isn't just armor, it's a squad that hunts together. He's almost certain he can take them, but he knows one reckless step will wreck him. One wrong move, and they'll shove him so far past his limit, especially since he's been crunching the numbers on his skills and gear, and after how he wiped out those goblins, he's confident he can take on 10 wolves at once. But here's the catch: Pax's missions usually kick off at 10 and can rocket all the way to 100, and the latest reports are screaming that a huge pack of them is already out there tonight. The reports say a massive pack of rock wolves is huddled on the cliffs. Node clocks it in a split second, with 30 of them. Getting surrounded is instant death, so the guild receptionist leans in and asks if there are any other adventurers at Node's level he can team up with. Node just blankly stares at the paper, already sensing things are rough as hell. She explains that tons of the local parties just got bumped up to stone rank all at once, so all the easy promotion requests are already wiped out. Node sighs, realizes this brutal wolf hunt is the only move left on the board, and it doesn't help that the genius isn't there to back him up. He's been noticing their coordination finally clicking lately. But the other guys he knows are slammed too, so when the adventure Node saved pops up, it says he's leaving for a long grind to snag better armor, and he's already heading out, He storms out, leaving a receptionist hanging for an answer. And as he squints over his notes one last time, she fires the question. What's he planning to do? He can't stop asking himself if he's really on the same level as the rest of the group, so he forces a breath and tells himself to hold back, wait for everyone to come back, then they can team up. He cuts the wolf quest loose and tells her, forget it, get me a job I can handle solo for now. 3 days later, Nod slumped at the table with his head in his hands, completely crushed by how badly everything had turned out. Nod sat there slumped over with his head in his hands, totally wiped out, wondering if they really had to go hunt those rock wolves right this second. But then a voice snaps from behind, asking if their money's running low. No, just stands there, facing away. And he demands to know what Alec means by that, so Alec bends over his desk, eyes locked on the records. And you can see the worry swallowing him up as he kicks off another explanation, even though Nod already knows, then bluntly tells him the truth. The Ferris family's money situation looks seriously grim, and the biggest problem hits hard. They're pouring out way more money than they're ever pulling in. Alec points out that Nod has popped out a whole bunch of younger siblings right over just the last few years, and since they're still so small, their food bills haven't hit hard yet. But once Noah's got 6 kids under 6, the everyday chaos stacks up fast until the bills hit like a truck, and Noah just rubs his chin, admitting Alec's probably right. Alec blurts out that Lilia is already 13, and suddenly they have to start panicking about tuition for the Noble Academy where their mother and sister once studied. And that's when it all finally clicks for Nod. He feels the pressure hit, and the truth snaps into place. He stares at his own hand and admits it straight up. If he heads to the military academy, their household money is finished for good. Nod flashes Alec a gentle smile and tells him it's okay, but Alec just stares back like the whole weight of the world is crushing his chest. Right now, they're barely keeping their heads above water, living off Albero's wages and the extra cash Johan funnels back after he marries into yet another family. And to top it all off, they've even got Hannah slipping out to work as a maid in another house just to keep the family afloat. Which is seriously getting out of, which is exactly what Alec calls out the only thing keeping them from collapsing. Even with everything Nod throws at the mess, and yet, there's still a massive problem looming over them. He drops a bombshell. They have to cough up a massive pile of cash by the middle of next month. No excuses, because there's not a second to spare. Nod stood frozen with his head in his hands, realization crashing in as the debt deadline slammed down right then. Alec stares at the empty coin pouch, mutters that he's sorry, and you can tell he squeezed every last chance he had just to make the numbers work. Up to now, the Ferris family has been barely staying afloat. Whenever the money ran dry, they sprinted straight to fresh loans. And yeah, noble families getting buried in debt is pretty common, but most of them still own real land, so they can just settle up after the harvest rolls in. The Ferris family stuck with nothing but their pension and that old house, no land, no real money, so their wealth barely exists. Aside from a couple relatives, the only person who ever handed them money without even sweating whether he'd get it back was Albert's friend, and a Nod stares at his hands, and you can still feel that debt clinging there, stubborn and unpaid. It's pure desperation, because they've already pawned every single thing in the house over and over, so that door is slammed shut and there's literally nothing. They had nothing left in that house, just the family swords and their armor, and that was it. But ditching it isn't even an option if they lose their gear. The Ferris family as a line of warriors simply dies out like that, and that's a massive deal. Because whenever trouble hits, the kings of succession always lean on their own direct military power. In their world, your rank is basically decided by how close your home sits to the capital, so for the Ferris family to live in that prime district, that's not just nice, it's a huge, top-tier honor. They're right near the royal castle, closer than even the top ministers or counts, because this warrior house has bled and served the crown for generations. Nod knows that if they ever toss their weapons away, they'll be defenseless when the moment hits and the family would get wiped out for good. Yeah, sure, there are other ways to grab the cash, but teaming up with loan sharks or leaning on shady nobles is a trap, and it always snaps into tragedy. Johan knows he can't just stroll up and demand help whenever he feels like it. Especially now that, legally, he's only the son-in-law in his new family. He's terrified that if they clock him as a lord who can't even handle basic money, they'll turn him into a powerless figurehead or worse, cut him off and end the marriage. It would trap him in ugly choices, skipping wages, or taking bribes so fast he'd drag the family name straight through the mud. When Nod spots the tag, it hits him these adventurers are risking their lives out there. Yet the pay is so solid that even a total beginner can snatch a full set of gear in no time. Nod pauses, whiffs around to Alec, and demands the exact number they need so they can nail it. So Alec dives into his desk and yanks out the ledgers, flipping them open to the exact document where every specific amount is spelled out. Nod glances at the total, a quiet grin breaking out, and says he can probably make it happen if he really grinds, then swears he'll find a way. Alec just looks wrecked. He wipes the sweat off his forehead, fighting through wave after wave of pure stress. It's been chaos like this for ages. Alec keeps it under control, because back when Nod was still just a kid, he was out there swinging wooden swords, while everybody else was already snapping. Node pauses for a beat, then the truth hits him. He's been stacking this massive burden on Alec and the rest of the staff the whole time. Noah hunched over with his head in his hands, staring at the floor as the truth hit. If even Alex was showing up asking for money, their family had to be in a total crisis. The whole weight of it crushes him, and he knows that clinging to his current rank will take forever to rake in the money they need. So he hypes himself up hard, telling himself that if he can drop the Rockwolf and claw his way to stone rank, then he'll grind through enough quests to hit the deadline. But the spark dies fast. He faceplants onto the bar table, completely wiped out, and mutters to himself that his grand plan was probably just a pipe dream. He slumps there at the counter like a wreck, and then right behind him, someone in white armor strides up, closing in fast. Someone shouts his name, and Node slowly twists his head around, staring back with pure confusion only to see Shino standing there with a confident smirk, staring down at him from the side of his stool like she owns the whole moment. She leans in close, eyes on him, and asks what's been making him groan for so long. Then she offers to jump in and help. Shino leans in and fires off the question again, noticing he's been mumbling to himself for way too long. So she just stands there in all that gear, looking ice cold, waiting to find out what kind of mess Node cooked up this time. Shino snaps her head over in shock as Node just slumps there, totally confused, wondering why she's hovering. Then the scene cuts to the next twist, and then the bartender leans out from behind the counter and tells them straight up, with everyone else gone on jobs, Node is the only one left standing around. Shino snapped at him that his non-stop mumbling was way too loud to ignore, and it instantly hit Node he'd been screaming his stress without even meaning to. She orders the same drink as before and just waits. Then he finally caves, apologizes, and admits he's been carrying some heavy stuff. And Shino leans in way too close, crowding his space as she pushes him to finally say what's actually bothering him. She thinks a quick chat could shake things up. So Node drops the truth. He's got to pull in a mountain of money by next month. He tells you he's got to claw his way to gemstone rank as fast as humanly possible, and the only job that can get him there is tracking down a Rockwolf. Node tells Shino the brutal truth, that he's the only adventurer at his rank who's even capable of taking this job, and it instantly snaps Shino's focus to him. He fesses up that he can't find a party. The monster is way too brutal to face solo, so he's been stuck racking his brain hunting for a real plan. Shino scans the request paper, then nods hard because, yeah, Node is absolutely trapped in a brutal mess. Elsa leans in like she's got sparks in her eyes, blasting questions about what this Rockwolf is really like, and whether there's a solid plan behind it or what. But Node just stands there, visibly stressed, muttering that the info he got definitely didn't come cheap. Elsa just shrubs it off, says she's all ears for a great idea, and then Node thrusts the documents in front of her, begging for her verdict. The two of them pause for a breath, scanning the papers in silence, trying to crack every detail, and Elsa finally blurts out that Truce taking this thing down alone is basically impossible, which Node already knows all too painfully. She goes dead silent for a beat, locks eyes with him, and then, right out of nowhere, demands his name. Node gets visibly flustered when he finally realizes he's been talking this whole time and still hasn't even introduced himself. So he flashes her a huge grin, drops the words, "I'm Node Ferris," and declares it's an official pleasure to finally meet her. She grins back, introduces herself as Elsa Chronicle, and then she leans in like she's about to drop the real secret. They clasp hands, and with that single handshake, their brand new partnership snaps into place for real. Elsa locks eyes with him and fires off. "So, you want to team up and form a gang with me?" As she catches him in the moment, she blindsides him completely, then tells him, "I'm a stoneplate rank 2, just like you." And right as he's processing it, she adds, "I only need a few more quack." More quests stand between her and that promotion, so she pushes back hard, saying teaming up will let them smash through those jobs in a flash, then finally hunt the Rockwolf together. And Node has to admit she's right, because the second he does, his mind races on how terrifying it is to be out there alone, especially because the scariest part of solo fighting is getting jumped from behind. Having that blindside fear gnaw at you non-stop is a constant worry. No matter how hard he trains, his human eyes still can't see past 180 degrees. And that's exactly what he knows. Trying to hear enemies hiding in his blind spots is fine as a backup plan. But it's never enough to call it done. In a real fight where one slip can get you killed, you've got to trust your eyes and track every tiny detail. His muscles tense and twitch, but if he's always on edge about a back attack, his focus shatters and his accuracy starts to slip. He keeps slipping through the environment to dodge getting flanked, but that trick can't last forever, and now the pressure is crushing in. Elsa snaps that teaming up changes everything because they can back each other up, keep the pressure on, and rain even more attacks, and that's why it all matters. Being with the others beats being alone every time. Because if someone gets poisoned, knocked out, or is seconds from going down, the rest can jump in and save them, as long. Node locks eyes with her and asks, point blank, if she's truly got his back. And Elsa flashes him a confident grin, says that's perfect, and you can tell she's buzzing that he actually agreed. Agreeing to the plan, she drags him to the quest board and swears that real practice is the only way to. She flips through the papers, hunts down the one that matters, and fires back. What do you think? So they can finally learn how they both fight. Node eyes the Slate class request and goes, yeah, this is perfect for my first hunt, while they set out to take on a giant frog. Giant toads suddenly show up everywhere, fattening up to the size of an ox, and come spring, they multiply like crazy. And since they'll chow down on basically anything, they turn into a massive danger for everyone living nearby, so it's not. Don't think it's just crop damage. These things hunt harder, swallowing livestock whole and even going after kids in villages with no walls, so every place ends up begging for adventurers to stop them. The great frog is a total nightmare. Its tongue snaps out like a whip, and that slimy skin makes it feel impossible to beat. All the way. Landing a solid hit was brutally hard. Nod still remembers his first fight with one, and how he and his old crew fought tooth and nail just to keep up, to take it down. He checks in with Elsa, making sure they've nailed the right village and she confirms the local spring is hit by a massive outbreak. Note's heart sinks for the villagers, because that water is poisoning them. It's a living nightmare. Then a giant frog slams onto the scene and blasts out a monstrous croak, and right after that, more and more of them burst up along the riverbank and from the water everywhere, and still coming. And the whole area erupts with noise as the monster crew starts rolling in. Node takes. He snaps a glance and realizes there are over 20 of them creeping in the brush. Then Elsa cuts in and stops him for a heartbeat. Node leans in, like, what's going on? And she blurts out that she wants to be the one to rush in and make the proposal. She dives in and fights first because it was her idea to team up, and she's desperate to prove she's got real worth by showing him, in action, exactly what she can do. Nod leans in and asks Elsa if she's ever actually fought a giant frog before, and she just waves it off, telling him she'll be totally fine because she's way stronger than she looks. She steps up and then he rockets through them like a storm, leaving Node completely stunned by just how insane he is again. I can barely keep up with her as she rockets around the place, mowing down every frog she sees like it's nothing. Wood studies her every move, and it hits him her ruthless style is the exact opposite of his careful defensive focus, because she's like a walking, literal, burning through the battlefield. Right as he reaches to help, Elsa cuts in over the last one, apologizing for what she's about to do next. She storms toward the rest of them, wipes them all out alone, then spins back with a wicked grin and asks, so, are you finally convinced I've got the strength? Once the area was cleared, the two of them snapped into action, packed up fast, and pushed through the forest on their way back. A few days later, they're back on the move this time, hunting forest wolves, and Node's already hyped for it, convinced it's a solid chance to get some practice. But Elsa laughs and says these don't even count as real enemies. They're so easy it's basically insulting. Node just nods once, and boom, everything's official. The Node and Elsa party is finally real. They drag their little gear carts all the way out on the long haul to the kingdom's eastern mountains. Node stared up at the towering dry cliffs, baffled how on earth could anything even live out here. Elsa tells him the monsters treat these heights like a real hideout, and they only drop down to the plains when their hunger kicks in. She says staying here in this brutal spot is the smartest move, because it keeps them one step ahead of being hunted by even bigger predators. Yeah, Node remembers some drunken fool told him that story once. He grunts and flings the final heavy bag onto the pile, then turns to Elsa and demands, is that everything? That tiny handcart rattles and groans under the crushing weight of their supplies, like it's one bad bump away from snapping in half. Nodesi's wishing he had the cash to hire a real carriage, but he knows they're too broke for that end of the line. Elsa doesn't care about the budget at all. She slams her spear into the ground and fires off. You ready to do this? Two big things set a rock wolf apart from the forest wolves you're used to. First off, their fur has turned into this tough, armored shell like a built-in shield that gives them way more defense than any regular wolf. And here's the second huge twist: how they hunt. Their mountain home is safe, but the food is almost non-existent, so they're forced to cram their journeys down those cliffs just to eat, so they lose time and fall behind every other monster. To crack it, they broke into tiny squads and fanned out across the hunt, stalking prey wherever it slipped through, meaning their packs are usually smaller than forest wolves, crowding together in just 5 or 10 members. And because they're fully armored, they're way more successful. And that's why the guild finally treats them like a real threat. Node yells for Elsa as the first attacker surges forward, and Node stays locked on the pack's motion while the chaos erupts. The real problem is their whole strategy. Those squad leaders stay in Howl to call in a ton of backup, so Elsa barrels straight at the snarling leader, demanding if he's the one they need to take down first. Nod darts forward and hammers his spear straight through the Rockwolf's defenses, ripping it apart and cutting off its. Elsa scans the area, hunting for any sign more wolves are on the way. While she fires off, "You ready to start carving?" Node yanks out his knife and goes to work, carving through the heavy hide and stone plates with razor precision until, just as he finally rips off that massive pelt and grabs a quick breather, he looks over and there's Elsa, already miles ahead. He glances at her while she works and realizes, no joke, she's faster at this than he'll ever be. He kept his guard up as the truth hit him. This fight was way too easy. And he even didn't have to use the tear gas he'd brought. Elsa keeps tallying her kills, and Node can't stop staring. Same age, same battles, but her skills are somehow already on another. On a whole different level. He knows he'd never land those shots in the tiny armor gaps, but somehow she nailed every vital spot with precision. Node lets out a small laugh at last, because he's finally staring straight at the huge gap and natural talent between them. He wrapped up the job, but the whole time he couldn't stop thinking how crazy lucky he was to be paired with someone that good. The next morning hits, and Elsa's already feeling that heavy pull from the road. She even jokes that if the hunt keeps going this smoothly, they definitely packed way too much gear, and Node just shrugs it off, then breaks into a grin and admits she's probably right, they've totally overpacked. But then he spots it. There are way more wolves closing in than he expected, and Elsa's spotless kills leave every pelt clean as a whistle. Because those rock wolf hide pieces are top-tier armor material, they fetch a ridiculous fortune. And that's when Node finally realizes there's more than enough cash to pay Alec back without breaking a sweat. The two of them slung those massive packs back on and barreled onward, scouring the jagged rocky hills to track down their next pack. By the time night hits on the fourth day, Node is back at camp, hammering out the numbers, counting the haul like a trophy, and realizing they've already wiped out 25 wolves. It proved his gut was dead on. The guild's request form had been short by a mile, undercounting how many monsters were really roaming out there. Elsa says they didn't even snag a single fight all day, then smirks and decides they'll have the job wrapped up in just a few more days. On the fifth day, everything flips. Howls explode across the mountain as a massive pack finally traps them in a tightening circle. Nod clenched his jaw and hissed curses under his breath as everything went south, fighting to keep his footing against the wolves slam in from every side. Elsa yells that this place is a total brack and they're seconds from getting fully surrounded. So Nod finally snaps. He's been caught in a trap, and he's furious at himself for lowering his guard just because the hunt felt way too easy. And looking back, it was right there the whole time. One wrong turn, and everything could have blown up just like this. It's happened a ton of times before. Monsters show up in numbers way beyond what the guild reports, and no, Joe absolutely should have taken those warning stories from the veteran adventurers at the guild to heart. He snaps back to reality, steels himself, and tells Elsa it's finally time to unleash that one specific move they practiced. While he snatches his gear, he yells over the roaring sound, asking her if she's ready to sprint for their lives. Elsa locks in, tells him she's ready, then braces herself as the wolves tear in from every side, striking from all directions at once. Node flashes the signal, and they explode forward like a fired-up pair of rockets, sprinting straight to the heart of the pack to tear open a path. Elsa screams for help as a wolf lunges, clamps its teeth into him, and Node just grunts through the agony, apologizing for the mistake while, as they huddle back to back, the danger finally cranks up way past anything they prepared for. And it's only getting worse from here. Elsie's eyes snap wide with pure terror. She screams at Node to look out, and he spins around just as the danger hits, totally blindsided. A huge shadow crashes down on him, and Elsa snaps that this is officially the absolute worst situation possible. No, totally agrees. Then an armored wolf crashes in, towering over the regular pack, its thick plates shielding its whole body like a suit of iron. Node stares up at the giant beast and blurts out everything he knows about these monsters because it's a top-tier specimen that only gets nastier with age. Its skin hardens into something like metal, and that's exactly why everyone calls them armored wolves. Node wrote in his notes how rare they were, and he even joked that hunting them would be an awesome way to chasing a sweet girl's attention. Books swear that kind of stuff is only for top-rank adventurers. And that grumpy old guild guy leaned in and told him, don't stress, those sightings are so rare, they almost never happen. Node just watches the beast loom over them and spits curses at that old drunk for being dead wrong. Nod loomed over the fallen pack, jaw working as he muttered, "Of course, this is just my luck." As he stares down from the cliffs and sees even more of them swelling below, he can't help but wonder, how did it all spiral this far out of control? One wolf rockets toward him with a vicious snarl, and he's forced to grab a backup plan he swore he'd never use. The whole area erupts in a colossal explosion, flames and thick smoke ripping through the crowd like a roaring, unstoppable wave like, what? Elsa stares at the burnt wreck and snaps that it's a total waste. Those pelts usually fetch a fortune. The last wolves ignite in a blaze and scramble to flee, but the horror has already landed, so there's no escape. Node stood in the choking smoke, and when reality finally hit, burning through that armor was the only way forward, even if it meant wrecking the loot. Being a high-rank adventurer means you don't just swing a sword, you lock in the right tactics, then bail out before a brawl turns into a death trap. Promotion quests throw you at these wolves to see if you're truly ready, because they're manageable only when you know what you're doing, and Elsa stares down at the Node, telling him to drop the burnt fur like it's nothing. His life is worth a whole lot more than a few ruined pelts. Elsa grills Node, asking if he's really confident he can win when they're surrounded, because she sure isn't, and he blurts out a shaky, nervous, yes. Node cracks that he only splurged on that crazy expensive oil because he needed to get home alive, but the second he sees the price tag, he snaps, and Elsa just shrugs like, desperate times mean desperate measures. Turns out those wolves are basically walking fuel tanks. Their armor is smeared with natural grease, and that stuff burns like pure fire. So Node forces himself to see the bright side, telling himself that chasing the promotion and getting to make a friend like Elsa makes every sacrifice worth it. For one breath, the whole world goes silent as Elsa shouts his name. Both of them frozen in place, staring at each other while Nod keeps her eyes locked forward, dead certain about what's about to hit next. Just as the flaming wolves begin snarling and snapping their jaws, they look far more brutal than ever. The entire pack slams forward in one savage wave, and Node snaps that it's time to move, while Elsa promises she's right on his heels. Node snaps the first one out of the air and carves straight through the monster as it lunges at him. But even as Elsa drives another step home, the pack barrels forward too fast. Then one of them spots Node's opening and smashes him off guard, knocking him back hard. Nod grit his teeth through pure agony because the monster's grip was a steel vice and he could barely hang on while Elsa screams, "Are you okay?" But there's zero time to answer because the wolf barrels back in with that insane attack and doesn't. And Node realizes the chainmail blocks the blade, but the beast can still clamp onto him and drag him down, leaving frozen stiff. You watch the massive wolf roar so hard it rattles the entire forest. Both of you just stand there, staring, like you can't move. A blazing monster rockets through the sky and slams straight toward Node's head. He slams into the dirt, barely raising his shield in time as the beast lunges to rip his throat out. Node roars as he shoves the snarling face back. Its teeth are only inches from his eyes, and he feels the snap coming any second. And then boom, Elsa rockets in with a savage swing, smacking the wolf dead in the side of the head. And she fires it back immediately, but she shoots Node a quick warning this isn't finished. Yet then he finally catches his breath and admits, "You really saved me back there." They both stare as the monster grinds itself back to its feet. Elsa insists they nailed it hard, but that brutal thing is too tough to stay down. Node stares at the battered beast and snaps, "It's almost over, finish it right now." He rockets forward with his shield up, shouting that he'll never let that thing pull the same trick on him again. The monster's legs tremble so hard it can barely keep its balance. Elsa doesn't waste a heartbeat. She surges forward with her weapon and drives the attack home, ending it for good. The wolf finally collapses to the ground, and Nod and Elsa just slump there exhausted, breathless, and spent. Later, Node digs into the dirt and vows he'll bury the bodies so they never rot. Elsa's jaw drops at the count. She can't believe Node actually wiped out 8 of those things while Node's already locked in on the money, praying the guild throws them a bonus. She's still boiling with annoyance, muttering that the guild botched the count, so she's about to march in and complain, then spots Node tied up and demands to know what he's doing. Nod whips his head around with a hammer in his grip, saying he's digging for ore because all that cash they burned just to prep for this trip left them broke. He flashes a gleaming chunk of rock and demands they snatch every scrap they can because the guild carriage is about to roll in and drag them home. Node spots something half buried in the dirt, yells it out loud, and Elsa's eyes widen because he really snagged exactly what he came for. She asks if that's a medicinal herb he found, but he dismisses it in a rush, saying it's just the size. And clearly he's over the whole thing. Then the carriage ride spirals into a full-blown nightmare. Elsa grumbles that the ride home is way too cramped, while Node just slumps there, totally drained and staring into nothing. Nod tries to grin through it because at least they've got their loot, but Elsa is hanging by a thread in the back of the wagon. 4 days later, Elsa storms straight into the Adventurers Guild, pure fury blazing across her face. The receptionist starts trembling as Elsa snaps, demanding to know why they got sent to fight a monster count way higher than the report promised. She keeps saying it's basically a death sentence throwing their rank up against a monster that strong, and the terrified receptionist can only bow, mumble apologies, and watch as Nod and his battered old crew keep their distance from the blast. And somehow, it all works out. Elsa bursts in, flashing a massive bag of gold she wrestled out of the guild like it was a victory trophy. Nod tells Elsa her blow-up at the guild was exactly what he figured would happen, and Elsa just smirks that he's the one who was terrifying in there. Node starts tallying the money, and once the rock wolf pelts go in, he's raking in solid profit, even after he pays for the traps. So Elsa listens with a shy, embarrassed look, but Node isn't finished talking yet because they just got promoted to Copplestone rank adventurers, plopped right there with a mountain of gold and the official notice in hand. While they're staring at the new rank tags, Elsa cuts in to grab his attention, and Node glances over and asks what's really on her mind. She leans in and asks if he'll sell her his cut of the armored wolf parts, then reminds him this loot and that reward are locked in as a 50-50 split. She tells him the wolf materials are the final piece to calm down, because so much got scorched in the brawl, so there's only enough left for a single set of armor. Elsa won't stop pitching her plan. She insists that if they forge the gear using those exact parts, their future jobs get way easier, and she calls it out, Nod needs the money, and she needs the equipment. Then she leans in and asks if their goals aren't lining up a little too perfectly. Node's all in, he says the deal is absolutely his pleasure, and the two of them slam their mugs together in a cheers that seals the new partnership. Nod barrels back to the estate and yells for Alek's finally home from his latest job. Alec shows up the second he gets back and gives him a stiff, formal welcome home like this reunion can't wait to begin as. He shoves a heavy bag of gold into Alec's hands, says the full agreed amount is inside, and orders him to double-check it before anything else. Alec swears he's got it, and he trots right after them like he'll catch anything that tries to go wrong. He strides down the hall, and Node waves him off saying he's totally wiped and heading off to crash, leaving. Alec stood frozen in place, clutching the bag tight then. He glanced down at the cash, murmured Node's name like a confession. And you could feel the emotion in him, feeling the weight crushing his shoulders, because it's been 2 whole months since that wild brawl with the rock wolf, and somehow, life has started acting normal again. Nod slumps over on a stool, absolutely wiped out after the hunt, and Elsa eyes him like, seriously, was that whole ordeal necessary just for some leather armor? And Node doesn't even bother fighting. Baki straight up admits he'd started to feel like his current gear just wasn't cutting it anymore. He looks deadly serious as he tells her she's right. Then he's like, all right, it's upgrade time for me. Elsa takes a bite of her meal while Node just stares, jaw dropped, because that armor wolf gear has to be the coolest setup ever. It's apparently as tough as metal, but way lighter, and that's when he finally admits he's been craving a set just like it. Elsa pops up with a proud pose to flex her new look, while Node just stares utterly drained. She slams her drink back on the table and demands, so what's the real plan here? Talk to me. So get your gear sorted now if you want to be ready to shoot your next promotion request. Don't waste a second. Nod slams a hand on the table and says he's got to save cash and dodge the shops. So Elsa tells him the best play is to grab the materials himself. For an adventurer hunting new gear, there are basically only 2 paths to score it. You've got 2 choices. Grab it off the shelf ready to go, or go all in and demand a fully custom order. Custom stuff usually costs a fortune, but if you haul the materials yourself, they'll make it for free, and you'll pocket a huge chunk of money. Node leans in and asks her straight up if that's how she got her armor made using the materials they gathered together. Elsa drops by to check the progress, and she asks, how's it going? But the blacksmith just grins and tells her, I've got this. He said it all basically matched rock wolf armor, so putting it together barely cost anything extra at all. Later, down at the bar, Node blurted that he wanted to build scale armor, then Elsa froze, because she swore everyone knew scale armor was made of metal. She asks if he's really about to dig up his own body or what, and Node shuts it down fast. There's no way he's doing that. He's not just designing armor, he's hunting for a suit of scale mail made straight from real animal scales. He knows the moment someone hears that term, they instantly assume it's just high-end gear stitched from legendary dragon scales. Sure, wyvern or subdragon gear is scale armor on paper, but what he's plotting is on a whole other brutal level. Elsa doesn't look like she's buying a word of that technical talk, so she blurts out for another round of ale. She drops an order of nuts onto the tab while the bartender promises it's on the way. Then she lets Node finish his thought. So the armor he's planning to build isn't made from some unstoppable legend at all. It's powered by materials ripped straight from much weaker monsters. Just to keep it simple, Node explains the grinding up fish or reptile scales can forge gear just as tough as metal, at a bargain price, so your armor keeps going way longer. The bartender plops down their drinks and a bowl of snacks, but Node doesn't even pause. He keeps the conversation roaring anyway. Elsa just guzzles her ale like it's nothing, while Node slowly realizes she's not even listening to his whole story about learning gear specs from the old blacksmith. She thrusts her hand out and demands, "So what's your point?" Node just freezes, staring at her for a split second before, right before she smirks, she tells him, "If you've got everything planned, then you should already know the materials we're going after." Node flashes a confident grin, then yanks out a reference book and starts pointing out every last detail. He flips to the exact page and tells her they've got 5 main things to hunt down. It's got everything: waterfish scales, venomous snake skin, rare great serpent parts, and even fish dragon scales. Elsa scans the list, and even though the fish and snakes are a walk in the park, she admits that getting everything else is going to be an absolute nightmare. Nod crossed his arms, nodded in agreement, and admitted the one nightmare on the horizon: taking on the Great Serpent. Nod can't stop thinking about the Great Serpent because even one of those monsters in the deep marsh is more deadly than an entire pack of rock wolves. They just creep along the ground, and somehow, despite their sheer size, you can barely even spot them. Elsa snaps that battling in a swamp where you can barely see, and the ground sucks your feet in is a straight-up death trap. And without a pro scout, Node's just gonna get swallowed by the mud and slam face first into trouble. But Node is locked in But Town taught that regular scales don't cut it at all, so he's going to rely on those specific, top-tier skills for his new plating. Elsa stares him in the eye and snaps that she knows he's trying to cut corners, then asks why he won't just grab some normal armor from the shop. Even if it's not perfect, it's still more than enough to smash through the kind of crystal rank jobs they're pulling off. She says it's painfully obvious buying the gear is way faster than dragging themselves into a dangerous hunt, but even knowing she's right, No can't force himself to do it, mostly because he realizes he'd need to triple their current budget just to get his hands on the good stuff. Elsa tells him to tuck the idea away in the back of his mind while she chodes the rest of her drink, leaving. Absolutely no. Trapped in a nightmare choice, he had to either gamble on a plan to triple his money, or risk his life in a brutal fight against the Great Serpent. Light is just chilling when someone suddenly spots him, blurting his name out loud. It's Xenius. He strides up grinning, like he's genuinely thrilled to see him, says, "It's been a minute," and immediately asks if Node's been gone on one of those long missions lately. Xenius finally spills the truth. He didn't disappear in accident. He was the one who was gone, finishing up a massive long-term hunting and gathering job way out in the Western Kingdom. He whips his head around and blurts, "Why's Node alone today?" Because seeing him by himself is never ever normal. Xenius just laughs it off, shrugs, and says his crew's taking a 2-week break while everyone else focuses on their own stuff and men. Lisa's at the capital's temple right now, training non-stop as a priestess because she's determined to level up her healing magic. With her training eating up an entire month, the rest of the party shrugged and declared, "Guess this is our vacation for now." Jago's spending his time off in the wild. He's sharpening his spear skills out in the wilderness, and Wimina raced back home because her brother's wedding was finally here. Nod leans in and asks if every single one of them comes from the same hometown, and Xenius grins because his memory is razor sharp, and they've been friends since they were kids. Nod demands where Shino is, and Xenius drops the bombshell: Shino's out of town on vacation in the royal capital. Xenius blurts that he's heard Node's been grinding out here every single day, then presses him like, "Tell me, are you even getting enough sleep?" Explaining that this kind of work fries your brain, so most people end up taking way more time off than you'd expect. Node looks absolutely wiped as he admits he can't afford to slack off right now. Then it clicks. Elsa gave him that same worried look the other day, while Xenius blurts that he's only bringing it up because he's genuinely scared something's wrong. Nod knows it in his bones. If the family had even a little extra money, he wouldn't have to grind himself into the ground. Node swears he only needs the bare minimum rest to stay alive, then flips the whole script and fires back. What does Xenius do when he's off? Xenius tells us he was itching to sharpen his sword skills, but since drills are deathly boring, he decided he needed a real quest right, as that's when the second he spotted Nod grilled him about what he planned to hunt. Then Xenius admitted he was searching the marshlands for something specific. He keeps his string close and admits it, he's been secretly hunting for a way to latch onto another party for the trip. Node tells Xenius, "Since you're headed to the marsh anyway, you've got business there too. So tell me, are you really out there hunting for armor materials?" With Shino on the team, he's basically saying, relax, because those giant snakes won't get the drop on them out there. Node doesn't waste a second and slams Xenius with the question, "What the hell are you really searching for?" And it catches Xenius so off guard he doesn't even know how to respond. Xenius starts acting totally awkward, staring at his drink like it holds the answer, scrambling to find the right words to explain everything. He finally blurts out that he's hunting a crystal flower, especially a rare pink one, while embarrassment burns his cheeks. That crystal flower is unreal like a real rose, except it's carved out of glass, sitting right in the brush like it's begging to be stared at. Usually, these blooms blaze in bright blue around the royal capital, and everyone calls them clear, because their petals and stems look so see-through they're almost unreal. The marsh-grown versions are the real special ones, because they barely ever blush pink, and when they do, it's only during that one very specific time of year. They've got this wildly famous legend about these flowers. Born in some far-off land, and then, somehow, they sprinted across the world until they finally reached Hamel. They say there was once an adventurer who fell headfirst for a noblewoman. But society snapped down on their love like it was forbidden treasure. They say the only gift a nobody adventurer can truly bring a noble lady is a crystal flower meant for plain, sweet affection. But in the story, the flower he found wasn't the usual blue at all. It pulsed with a glowing, vibrant pink like it was alive. When she realized that color was supposedly impossible, she refused to give up on their love, so she fought for it. And in the end, they got married. See, the blue one is just a little, I like you, but the pink one? That's I'll love you forever. And it's a whole emotional earthquake. Nod leans over Xenius' shoulder with a huge grin, practically daring him to admit he's really about to confess his feelings to Lysis then Xenius. Xenius drops his gaze and nods, but the moment his face turns blazing red, Node's eyes lock in. He's decided he's getting his buddy the help he needs. Node seriously couldn't believe they weren't already a couple, because they're glued to each other every second. And even he could feel the chemistry blazing between them. Xenius strides off to grill Kago and Shino about the trip, while Nod swears he'll track down Elsa and drag her onto the team too. Once Note spills the whole romantic chaos, he turns to Elsa and asks what she thinks, then she freezes, blushing hard, with pure stars shining in her eyes. She admits she's always fantasized about a story like this, and now she's pumped, ready to sprint into the swamp and track down that flower. Xenius steps up to Elsa, grins, and says he's heard a ton about her from Node, and he's finally thrilled to meet her, while Shino bursts in with a splash and a big grin, firing up the newest member to the group as she introduces herself with pure energy, and then Shino blurts, "Where's Jagos?" And Xenius scans the paperwork. Dead serious, those other quests are already claimed, so it's just the 4 of them today. Elsa tilts her head up and demands, "Okay, but what job are we actually doing on this trip?" Lucinius lays it out. They're out there hunting and ripping Bibrick lands, no big snakes to deal with. So Shino chimes in, telling everyone to pack their repellent before they step out. The whole group hustled their 2 wagons full and packed up, then hit the road from the city center, ready to roll as the journey started. They pushed deeper into the marshlands, where the trails squeeze narrow and the water mirrors the blazing morning sun, flashing through the trees. Wagons rattled through the tall grass as they neared the site, and Node leapt into the back to grab the supplies and lock them down. Elsa watches Node at work and can't help but grin, because the guy is basically low maintenance. Way less gloomy than she'd expected. But Shino casually leans back and smirks, saying they're lucky it's autumn because she's heard this place turns into a total nightmare to work in once summer heat kicks in. Xenius lights up talking about how his summer out west actually wasn't bad at all, then turns the question on everyone else. "So what did the rest of you do during your break?" Node tells them they spent their time hunting through those cool forests and mountains, while Shino shoots back that taking a swamp quest in that heat would have been pure misery. At the marsh's edge, the group stops short and Shino shoots a hand up. "We move out," as she promises to guide them forward while the rest hold the backline. The 4 of them fanned out through the tall grass and started hunting for the right plants, staying crouched low and locked in on the mission from the first second. Right as Node feels it coming, a colossal snake explodes from the brush and rockets toward Shino the moment she whips around to face it. Shino doesn't even blink. He whips around and plants a crushing kick straight into the snake's head, blasting it backward and making it reel from the impact. They end the snake fast and snap back to the mission, no hesitation. Shino wastes 0 seconds, slipping straight back to the front to scout the area. Sheena shoots her a grin and says a dedicated scout makes all of this feel so much easier. Then she backs it down with a humble reply. This is just his job. Xenius jumps in, telling Nod that they've had it way easier because of him, and that hits Sheena right in the chest, making her glow as she admits she feels truly honored. Ahead, the ground is carved with clean marks through the mud, so the Nod points at the route and basically says, "See how obvious the tracks are? The rest of this job's gonna feel like a breeze." Nod drops that Shino is way more amazing than people think, and Elzet immediately backs him up, snapping that she'd love nothing more than to have a scout like that on their own team. Nod starts weighing whether he can back Zinnius and the others. But the moment the team hits crystal rank, Shino's already locked in as a lieutenant, and with too many frontliners, the backline would turn into pure chaos. Climbing into iron rank could force them to hunt for more allies, but Node just freezes mid-sentence when he spots something strange right on the ground. He spots something off in the grass, then it hits him, and he realizes something is terribly wrong. The entire crew slams to a stop in the middle of those giant flowers, then just stares upward at a massive thread. Nod's whole body tenses up, and he screams for everyone to duck right as a gigantic snake with monstrous fangs explodes forward at them. Elsa blurts out that it's absolutely massive, so huge it looms over all four of them like it's nothing at all. The snake whips its head down with insane force, smashing the ground right under their feet like it never stood a chance. Nod can't believe how brutal this monster is, but he stays locked in and holds his guard steady while the dust finally settles. He shouts at the rest of the crew to back off from its mouth, because if it bites you, it'll clamp around you with its whole body, and that's game over. No doesn't hesitate rockets forward with his sword already drawn, slashing to smash the distance as he and Elsa fire off a perfectly synced attack, their blades slicing through the air with insane speed, no chance for escape. Node clenched his teeth, poured every last ounce of strength into a crushing strike, and it slammed clean into the snake's thick scales. The monster jerks back and chows down, those massive jaws fling wide like they want to erase him. But Node barely throws himself aside at the last second, proving just how gigantic this beast is next to him. While Node ties it up, the rest of the squad piles in. Elsa leads the charge and slams a brutal hit right into its neck. Elsa erupts into a scream, demanding the genius to fire a shot. Then he shoots back, yelling for everyone to back off, and leaving the rest to him as he barrels forward. Then Genius lands a brutal final hit, snapping the snake's head backward and shutting the fight down for good. Now that the danger finally vanishes, they all snap back into breath. Someone cheers that they're done for good, and another fires back. All right, time to start cutting that snake up. Nod looms over the monster he just brought down. And you can tell, yeah, he's admitting it. He had zero clue how any of this was even going to play out after that ambush blindsided him. He stares at those massive fangs on the ground, and you can hear the fear in his voice, because it's terrifying to imagine what could have gone wrong if even one of them hadn't stepped in to help. Nod tries to play it cool and insists the monster was just lightning quick. But Shino can't shake the guilt, and he apologizes for missing the sneak attack. Later on, Node watches Sheena carve into the carcass and blurts out if she really learned butchery techniques too. The genius just smirks at the chaos, like, see, this is exactly how far you've come, proving they've grown more than ever. The group pushes forward across a field glittering with white flowers, and for one heartbeat they just pause to soak in the view. Node yells at Genius to come look, while Elsa and the others hang nearby in the grass, holding their breath. Genius leans in, stares at the flowers, then gives a calm little nod, like he's fully bought into every word that Node says. He snatches a crystal-like flower, holds it up to the light, and blurts out a heartfelt thank you. Later, at the tavern, Node practically gushes that the snake meal Shino cooked was insanely good, and Elsa grins that camping always leaves her feeling totally fulfilled. Nod whips his gaze to the door and mutters, "Speak of the devil," clocking familiar faces rolling in, and just like that, the entire rookie crew rolls in together, grinning like they've been blessed with pure, unstoppable good vibes. Node spots that Genius is finally done with his mission, and the two friends lock eyes for a quick, earned moment of relief. I scan the list, and finally, the Node scale armor pieces are lining up. The serpent and venom snake parts are cleared, so all that's left to hunt is waterfish and sea drake scales. Nod glances down at his notes, thinking about waterfish. Those ocean monsters are downright vicious, and seeing one in the wild is enough to make anyone's skin crawl. They're about the size of a kid, but they're wrapped in brutal scales and jagged teeth like Saw's mean meat chompers that love to ambush you out at sea, and 99 times out of 100, that jump is straight up bad news. But at the tavern, everyone's yapping about how insanely good the food tastes. Someone raves that the meat is thick, juicy, and bursting with flavor, while Elsa just drifts off, staring into the air like she can already smell the feast. Node points out that since it's peak season, the southern fishing ports are practically swimming with work, so he suggests they head straight down there. Then the others whip around and ask if they're going as guards. Turns out the job's wildly popular once those fish bite. They go absolutely feral on the line. The pay's just average, sure, but the real win is you get to keep the extra catch for dinner, and everyone's all over it. Node's convinced this whole setup is a rock-solid plan, and even Elsa looks like she's fully on board. She looks totally baffled at the catching part, but then she just throws her head back laughing because that's exactly what they're doing. Nod gets all fired up and says they can totally go waterfish fishing too. Then he leans in and swears those fish are monsters, so strong they yank with insane force, and that's why everyone loves it as a super popular hobby. The pull from those giant bodies is so brutal anglers feel yanked straight into the sea, but Node thinks getting bitten is the whole thrill until Elsa starts losing it and snaps at him to stop. She shoves him back and snaps. I know you're hooked on fishing, but it's not the water fish that's not the issue. Then she leans in and demands his plan for the ichthyosaur. Node just shrugs her off and dives into the super technical side of fishing, is where it all starts while Elsa keeps smashing him to a halt with a massive stop sign. Turns out ichthyosaurs are officially classified as fish, so no, they're not subdragons, even if they're absolutely massive. They're whale-sized monsters that battle like straight-up dragons, so because they can plow through anything smaller than a big ship, the guild only lets Copper Ink adventurers take the hunt. Elsa snaps that they're nowhere near strong enough to take on a monster like that right now, and asks, "Can't we just make the armor out of metal?" But before they can finish, Node's convinced he can pull it off. He's telling everyone that if he uses high-rank monster scales, that armor's defense will blow past anything else. Elsa blurts out, "How are you even gonna get the materials?" And Node just grins like, "I'll fish it up." That answer only cranks up Elsa's panic because now she's terrified about the real question. Once it's hooked, how is he supposed to kill it? Node stares at her like he's dead serious and tells her they're actually fishing for octopus, and Elsa just stands there utterly over the entire conversation. Elsa looks totally lost and blurts, "Octopus," again and again, and the guy just keeps going ignoring her expression asking if she's ever even heard of a box octopus. Like, it's no big deal. It's basically an aquatic monster the size of a grown man, but don't let that scare you. It's way less dangerous than it sounds, and he swears even a J-Drank adventurer could drag one down without breaking a sweat. Up close, the monster looks downright creepy. Sure, but the real headline is its meat. People can't agree on it because it's insanely stretchy, so it mostly stays a local treat for true food obsessives. Still, no matter how it tastes, anglers can't get enough hunting them for quests or just for the pure thrill. And Node flips open his book to point it out while Elsa leans in, eyes narrowed, still not fully convinced this plan will work. They got that name from the box they lug around because it's basically everything: their home and the armor that shields them when the fighting starts. Turns out they haul all sorts of nasty scrap from the seabed to forge those shells. Node blurts it out. Staring at the idea, do they just grab simple stuff, like pebbles or seashells they stumble across? Or maybe it's even those crusty old fish bones they dig up off the ocean floor? But the real twist is what they uncover next. Nod says some of these octopuses slink through shipwrecks and snatch up human treasures, like coins and silver candlesticks. And get this, people even swear they've seen them haul real gold bars, too. Elsa snaps completely and screams that the gold bars are suddenly way more exciting than she was a second ago. Node bursts into laughter, points at her like, "Look at you, now you're suddenly all in, because payday's here," and tells her there's one more insane treasure waiting for them at the bottom of the sea. Nod's face hardens, and he lifts a finger to tell Elsa that the big prize is the ichthyosaur scales. She nearly leaps out of her skin, blurting out whether a box octopus can really tote something that valuable, while Node stays cool, still locked in on his reading. He leans in and tells you the real anglers secret these fish dragons shed their scales so they sometimes snag on fishing nets, but on lucky days a low-ranked hunter can pull them right out, hidden inside an octopus's den. Dan Elsa's eyes light up with pure greed as she spits that the monster is nothing but a walking treasure chest. Node snaps his book shut with a grin and says, "See, this is the whole point real adventurers live for moments like this, because everyone's calling it the treasure octopus." He leans in and tells Elsa they're heading out right now to grab it. They move on and hook up with a merchant who's practically thrilled to see them, and Node shoots back that they're ready fully locked in for the escort job to Port Els, a harbor town way down south. The merchant warns the carriage is already stuffed with cargo, so space is going to feel tight, but Node shrugs it off and says it's no big deal. Turns out tight was a joke. Every one of them was crammed together with two other guys and a mountain of luggage. One of the guys asks if they're adventurers who need a ride too, and Elsa just stares at him, totally baffled, and fires back, "How'd you even know that?" Node tells them the main roads stay safe thanks to steady patrols, and most folks just shrug and hire cheap adventurers, because it's the easiest way to fill the seats. The whole crew just sprawls in the dark, jammed-up carriage bouncing down the road as the thing rattles and shudders. Nod glances over and sees Elsa completely wiped out, then blurts, "Are you seriously dying from boredom?" He tells her that boredom is a far nastier enemy than someone who never even shows up, and Elsa has to swallow her pride and admit he's right. At long last, They reach port. Elsa leans over the edge, squints at the waves, and declares, "That's the ocean for real." While Elsa just stands there, locked on the water like it's staring back. They head into the guild, where the stone walls are built to block the salty sea breeze, while Elsa is too busy inhaling the food scent. Leaning over the board, they spot openings for ship escorts and beast hunts, and Node asks what she wants to do. Then she snags a specific post right away. He tells her it's a deal from the fishery guild. Join a boat crew and help them haul in the water fish. The note spills the whole plan. This gig mixes fishing with fighting, so they've got to rush to the harbor for the details. And Elsa's already itching to move. They push through the loud port town, where vendors yell non-stop about their imported liquor. Clawing for every last sale, they stride through the market as a loud vendor hawks a legendary Eastern blade, shouting it like it's the greatest thing alive. Another guy slides up trying to sell Elsa a hair ornament, but no doesn't even bite. He just blurts out how packed the street is. They finally spot the building they've been hunting, then rush inside. Node can't stop thinking about how the whole air crackles with energy right before. He chalks it up to sea air messing with everyone, then checks in with the guild to lock down the quest. The receptionist tells them there'll be crew on a boat, then drops a warning about a quota they have to hit. Node suddenly realizes the pay hinges on what they catch, and he leans in like, "So? Is there a way to get those fish scales?" She tells him, "You can keep whatever you grab over the quota, and you can add any other monsters you catch too." So, no. No matter how fast that answer comes, it doesn't impress a soul. But she shrugs and says adventurers bring it up non-stop. Before long, the two of them are out on the open sea, geared up and ready to start the mission. Node swings by Elsa's side, checking if she's okay because she's acting way too nervous for comfort. She confesses she's never fished a single day, freaking out over how to even hook the bait, and Node just stares at her panic, then tells her she's doing great. Then one of the crew strides in and lays down the rules. Every single catch has to be dumped into the right tank. Elsa stands there trembling, insisting the cold out on the water is unreal because the water is freezing. Ice cold! He tells her to quit worrying and says their magic tools keep everything fresh. Then he shouts that they're basically at the spot and the dro. And that gigantic wooden ship slices through the waves under a bright, cloudless sky until it finally crashes onto the fishing grounds. It doesn't take long before one of the sailors jerks around, points with shaking hands, and absolutely loses his mind at what he's seeing. Elsa's already dragging in this giant waterfish like it's nothing, and No's mind is totally blown. He's staring at her like, "Wait, you just admitted you're a beginner. How are you this good?" The whole crew is reeling too because it hits them. Both of them are pure naturals at this. As Node stays ice calm and locked in, Elsa keeps ripping monsters out of the ocean one after another. After they haul in a mountain of fish, the sailor gawks and blurts, "Are you sure you're not secretly fisherman full-time?" Node just shuts his eyes, looks away, and blurts an apology for kicking up that whole scene. One sailor's totally snapped. He's screaming that the fish tank is already stuffed to the brim, then demanding, "So what am I even supposed to do now?" He's absolutely stunned, because nothing like this has ever happened to him before. And he starts roaring across the deck, demanding the captain come fix the mess. The captain doesn't even glance back. He just barks at the crew to drag themselves to a new fishing spot. The sailors scramble to finish it, stunned by how fast that first tank fills and terrified the next one will spill over just as quickly. Node leans back, finally done playing, and declares it's time to stop wasting moves and lock onto his real target. He dives into his gear, yanks out the wild boar fat he carted along just for this moment, and then he tosses the line straight into the deep, and the second it sinks, a hulking tentacle lunges up and clamps down on the bait like it's alive. Nod gets that brutal yank on his rod and instantly knows his monster finally showed up. Nod feels the brutal weight yank at his line, but he doesn't flinch. He just keeps his cool, reminding himself he's only testing the waters. He plants his feet on the deck as the creature yanks at him, forcing calm into his chest and refusing to let panic take over. He clenches his teeth and throws everything he's got into it, leaning back so hard the rod starts bending double. The strain shows all over his face as the ship's crew member shouts, "Come on! Are you really hooked onto something massive?" Suddenly, the water blasts open. The crew goes wild and yells that he really did reel in a treasure octopus. Node roars as he drags that colossal beast out of the ocean, then drops it hard onto the deck like it's nothing. He and Elsa tower over the giant beast, and for the first time they finally spot that strange, stone-like shell it's hiding behind for protection. Next, the story kicks back to land where the horses are already waiting, ready to launch them into the next leg of their journey. Elsa stretches out and gushes about how insanely fun the fishing was, and Node admits he's low-key wishing they'd stayed out there a little longer. She even drops that the captain begged for him to stay a few more days. But Node just shrugs. She's done with fishing for now, so Elsa bursts out laughing as they march on. The captain tells Nod, "Hit me up later for your next request if you're down." And Nod can tell the guy's dead serious about it, like, completely serious. Later, Nod finally lays eyes on the scales he harvested, and he's stunned by their sheer size. The tree ring patterns hit him next. These scales came from a truly ancient beast, which means they're exactly what he needs to forge the new armor he's after. He and Elsa jog back into town, then shoot to the workshop and yank the door handle the second they reach it. He strides in the moment the bell rings, and the blacksmith snaps his head up from his forge, like, "Who dares show up now?" The blacksmith asks if he's back for more, and Node just slams that huge bag onto the counter and blurts out that these are the exact materials they talked about. But then Node reaches into his bag, pulls out a handful of special rocks, and lays them down right in front of the blacksmith, who freezes, totally bewildered. The craftsman snatches it up, studies it with sharp focus, and spots the truth in seconds. Those stones are top-tier emerald ore. He snaps on his eyepiece for a sharper look, then tells Node there's more than enough here to forge a whole set of weapons for one person, and Node can't believe his luck. Elsa cuts in fast, reminding him, "I handed you the ore next time. You're helping me forge my own weapon." She tells him she'll need some serious monster materials, and right then, Node starts freaking out about what kind of brutal hunt he's walking into. The blacksmith leans in hard and demands, "Let me see that sword on your hip." And Nod freezes for a second, then shoots, "Sure," and reaches down to, yanks the blade free. Then the craftsman raises it to the light and tells them to reinforce the thing because they've already got the materials. But he can't just stand there. His face is pure shock at the idea. Yet the blacksmith doesn't even clock it and keeps right on working. He inspects the metal, taps the blade, and says he noticed it the last time he sharpened it. Then admits the sword's crafted so damn well, you can tell the smith was a total pro. Even if the steel is just plain basic, he still drops a joke like, "Yeah, you're not quite on my level yet." And that's when Node can't help but think back when he was still just a kid. He vividly remembers staring up at his dad and blurting out, "Tell me it's real, so I can finally." His father told him it was finally time to get his own gear because, honestly, he'd been needing his own sword all along. Then he just left the kid standing there, clutching his tiny bag of coins. He felt his dad's hand clamp on his shoulder as he demanded, "Pick the weapon yourself, because sizing up your own gear is a huge part of the job." And Nod gave him a hard stare and a serious nod. Then he glanced down at the 3 tiny coins in his palm, realizing picking the right sword was going to be a real challenge. With that budget, pretty much impossible, he trudged away with his head low, feeling like he'd come up short, and realizing his family was even poorer than he'd ever truly understood. He stares at the coins Node, and it hits him at this rate, he's probably trapped with. He shoves in some trashy bottom-shelf blade or an apprentice forge practice sword, and still strides into the shop, shouting that he wants a sword. Node caught the blacksmith off guard. Then he thrusts out his hand and admits that his tiny pile of coins is all the budget he's got, and leaves the blacksmith staring in total shock, and the guy just laughs it off, saying it's pocket change for some kid, then turns back. He bolts back to his work, then pushes Node to roam solo right away. He stumbles on a huge wooden barrel crammed full of old blades. He lunges into the pile, digs through it, and yanks a hilt free, drawing a sword just to check if any of them are even worth using. Then he grabs one that's way too heavy to lift and just starts methodically hunting for every blade he can reach until he finally fucks up. Until finally he yanks out a straight sword that feels wrong in the best way. He stares at the steel and knows instantly it's the one, so he rockets over and slams the blade onto the counter, then tells the blacksmith, "I'm taking this one." And the moment hangs there. It nearly makes the guy jump out of his skin. Smith snaps, asking if the kid is really still here, and No just plunks down his 3 coins, shoves the payment at him, and tells him to get moving. Nod drops his gaze to the sword in his hands, and the weight of it slams him with memories. His father's blade back then felt as enormous as a giant greatsword. The blacksmith stares at the weapon sitting on his counter and grills him, "Are you hunting an upgrade, or do you want a total replacement?" Node doesn't even hesitate. He flashes a grin and blurts that it's an upgrade, totally electrified, like this is exactly what he wanted. As he steps out, Node can't shake the thought that it's been ages since he strolled through the royal capital like this just for the fun of it. The blacksmith shoved the temporary blade into Node's hands fresh from his apprentice, and swore it was only to keep Node's hit from feeling lonely while the main sword got hammered out. Then Node immediately clocked the truth. The lonely blade was so dull, it might as well have been a butter knife. Node decides to hit pause on everything and go scavenge materials to earn extra cash for his meals until he spots something that snaps his attention. That slick comb in the shop window just screams, "Take me." And he can't stop imagining it sitting on his sister Lilia, looking absolutely perfect. He starts crunching numbers, cashing in that big bonus from the fishing job. Then he totals up the cost of his new gear and his family's expenses, and it all drains to nothing. He can't stop thinking about his sisters and how thrilled they'll be. But he's got to keep moving because he has to leave that pricey gift sitting in the window. Nod lets out a deep, dragging sigh, then swears to himself that one day he'll finally track down real souvenirs for every last one of his siblings. Nod clocks that the family cash situation is still a total disaster, while Alec keeps showing up asking him how to scrape together even more funds. And honestly, that's brutal to deal with, because most adventurers his age are out there partying, burning every last coin on food, fun, or girls. He's been grinding nonstop for 6 straight months, spending almost nothing on himself, just buying the bare essentials for his gear so he can shove every last ounce of gold back into the household budget. Genius and the others call it pure cheapness, but he swears it finally gives them some real breathing room. If he can just reach crystal rank, that family debt finally starts crumbling for real, then he's already gearing up to. Finally, they paid Alec and the other servants what they truly deserved. No shortcuts, no betrayal, no ditching the Ferris house. They even took minimum wage just to keep it. He's got one mission getting Lilia some great new clothes now that she's older, while he's also dead set on buying brand new outfits for Ellen and Iris. And then he just wants his younger siblings to finally chow down and enjoy a real feast for once. And he clenches his tag so tight it hurts. Because now, he's got to push even harder than before. The thought of his loyal staff keeps him pushing, because he knows that if he keeps earning like this, he'll finally give Alec and the others the treatment they deserve. Staring at his sisters, he pictured them finally slipping into brand new clothes and sinking their teeth into those amazing meals, turning every grueling day into something totally worth it. Node clutches his gear with white-knuckle determination, swearing to himself he'll push even harder until everything finally starts working. He groans deep, then stretches his back hard to work out every last bit of tension, and he scans the park and watches the kids laugh and play, and then he finally snaps, turns around, and heads back home. But then he brakes hard when something near the tree snaps his attention. He can't help staring, dying to figure out what he's really seeing. Nod snaps his eyes up, and boom, there's his sister Hannah, rocking a maid outfit and beaming, like she just won the lottery. And then, he slips behind a fence with the kids to stay hidden. Then his mind snaps back she's working nearby, so he strains to catch who she's talking to. His mind rockets straight to the worst-case scenario. If some creep is bothering her, he's coming after him, and he'll make him pay. Then he catches sight of her strolling off like it's nothing, right beside that guy, and his whole protective mode just collapses. He scratches his head, cringing at himself, because, yeah, he totally overreacted, and it was probably just someone she knows. Node heads home and starts plotting how he'll clean his gear before dinner. Then he remembers he promised Ellen he'd play with her later. The entire Ferris family crowds into the giant dining hall for dinner, and that long table is jam-packed with kids while the maids and staff hustle the food non-stop. One of the older sisters leans in and tells little Melia to sit up straight in her chair, cracking down hard to keep the whole meal from turning into chaos. Another sister pops over and asks Albro if he wants more, and he just grins and tells her he'll grab some later. Little Helena gets yanked over just as she's wobbling, trying to haul a huge bowl of soup with both hands, and she can't even get it steady yet. Because, no, Mode pauses for a heartbeat to help one of the tiniest kids, showing her exactly how to grip her spoon, then urging her to raise it all the way up to her mouth. He steers her hand through the steps, urging her to try it herself right now. She gives him a huge, "Yes, brother," then dives straight into her food, and Node can't help it, he grins, because it reminds him of how Hannah used to take care of him just like this when he was a total rowdy brat. Suddenly, Node's father snaps up at the end of the table and tells Albaro the army is hunting for more dragon knights. An insane shot at a real promotion. Albaro doesn't mess around. He looks his father in the eye and swears he'll grind harder than ever to make sure he lands the spot. The little kids look totally lost, one of them straight up asks Node what a dragon knight even is, and whether it's any different from the regular royal knights. Nod leans in and starts spelling it out for the younger kids, holding up his hand as he declares, "Turns out there aren't just one knight order, there are 4 different ones in this kingdom. First up is the regional knight order. Basically one huge crew of soldiers pulled from every lord across the north, south, east, and west. And then boom, there's the Royal Knight Order, the same squad their dad and Alburo are in right this second. This order is the biggest of the bunch, packed with warrior family brats, landowning nobles, and the absolute best graduates from the top military schools. The third unit is the Imperial Guard, built to guard the king above all else, so they only choose the absolute elite nobles from the Royal Knights. And then comes the Iron Dragon Knight Order elite riders who dive into battle riding flying dragons, and with the kingdom suddenly swelling with more dragons, They're scrambling to find riders for every open slot, so this is the perfect moment for someone to climb the ranks. One of the little girls shoots up from her seat and blurts out, "Why can't we just become the king's personal guards?" Nod tells her to sit back down and makes it crystal clear. Those spots are pure personal trust, and their great-grandfather only got in because he was best friends with the king. After that, Node drops the bomb. He tells everyone he actually spotted their older sister, Hannah, while he was walking around town. Nod steers the convo to their older sister and shoots out a, "How have you been lately?" And the second Lilia hears her name, her whole face lights up like a match being struck. She's looking totally hyped as she asks if Hannah's doing all right, but the little kids just stare there, completely lost, too young to even really. Nod points out that since Hannah's always been working for another noble family, the little ones probably won't remember much so. Lilia shrugs and admits she only manages to get back home a few times a year anyway. Then she leans in close to Node, asking if their sister ever said anything specific. But Node has to admit he only saw her from far away, and she looked like she was caught up in something, so he held back from interrupting her and he never even got the chance to talk to her. And at this point, he's pretty sure Lillian knows more than he does, because between non-stop adventuring, he basically left her sitting there feeling crushed. The whole family keeps circling back to the massive table under the chandelier, and for once everybody's finally under the same roof, packed and complete. Servants hustle the meals along and wheel the youngest babies through the hall, because feeding a family this massive takes non-stop effort to keep everyone full and smiling. Eventually, the brutal long day finally catches up to the toddlers. Now they're getting cranky at the table and flipping out as everything winds down. Nod is back in his element deep in the woods, and right when the air turns tense, Elsa screams that the monster is coming for him. Nod tightens his grip on his sword and tells her, "I've got this." The target is a berserk bear. At first, it just looks like any normal beast, but once you look past that thick fur, you realize it's basically one giant wall of pure muscle. Most of the time, they're totally chill until one little trigger hits, and boom, their eyes blaze blood red as they unleash a full-on rampage. Node clocks the glowing red eyes already burning into the moment, tells himself he doesn't care what snapped it. He's just here to finish the job. And the bear doesn't hesitate for a second, roaring and lunging straight at him. Nod snaps back with a shout of his own, bracing to take the hit head-on, searching. With a hulking beast slamming a clawed arm toward his head, he doesn't panic, he stays locked in. Ducks hard and slips right under the strike. He realizes his blade can actually tear through the monster's tough skin, and he slices clean across its face like he just found its weak spot. A bear rips the silence apart with a deafening roar that ricochets through the trees, but Nod shrugs it off because now the beast is staring wide open, ready for the next strike. The monster shrieks in agony as another crushing hit lands, and it staggers, struggling to stay upright. Elsa bursts into the chaos out of nowhere, shouting at Nod, "Don't you dare forget, I'm in this fight too!" She hurls her weapon with everything she's got, crashes it into the bear's skull, and a brutal shockwave erupts, ending the beast for good. Nod hurtles into the beast's path, roaring that it won't get to slip away after that attack. Then he snares it mid-surge. He yanked its focus and screamed for it to come at him, right as its massive claws carved the air where he'd been standing a second ago. The two of them dug in and faced the bleeding monster head-on. Nod shot Elsa a quick nod and said they were almost there. Just need one last push. Then, later back at the guild, the receptionist beams at them and starts double-checking there. She signs off on their quest report, then backs it up with the bear hunt proof right at the front desk. She tells them the hunt is officially over, praises them like they're legends, then slaps down a huge bag of coins and pays them in full, only to pause and whisper that there's more. Nod glances down at what she's holding, and her eyes widen when she realizes they're their brand new guild cards. They got officially promoted to Crystal Rank. Boom, that shiny new tag screams they've finally clawed their way into the big leagues. Nod can't stop that grin as he stares at the crystal card, then he blurts out to Elsa to come share the moment right now. Nod gets completely blindsided when a massive adventurer hurls an arm around him, cackling like it's the funniest thing ever while asking whether the kid and his partner had already clawed their way up to Crystal Rank, because the second that word hits, it rips through the tavern like wildfire. Instantly, it pulls in a crowd of veterans who can't believe how brutally fast they're scaling. Then one old-timer starts. He starts rambling about his rookie days until a voice crashes the moment, screaming that it's time to go. They raise their glasses to celebrate and then order a round for the whole room, kicking off a toast to the two newest Crystal Ranks as the veterans swarm in to congratulate them, and Node practically gets his head ruffled by the big guys as they grin while Elsa just stares at her drink. The party spirals out of control fast, and before they know it, they both end up completely wiped out on the table. And then, after what feels like forever, Node finally jolts awake, still trying to piece together how they even ended up like that. They didn't even get a moment to celebrate. As a duo, Elsa just stares at her fresh card and shuts it down, saying she didn't. She doesn't mind the chaos at all. Everyone's so real, so heartfelt, so she beams, thrilled that they finally pushed this far. Node lets out a quiet sigh, staring into the thoughts of his journey. Then the adventurer's ranking system clicks into place, and everything about it starts to matter. It's split into 10 stages, and even though Crystal rank sits just third from the bottom, that still hits like a huge deal, because it means that those aren't just ordinary pebbles anymore. Now they're official adventurers, ready to be trusted with life and death escort missions. And then, like magic, she hands him something real and valuable. Elsa grins and asks Node if he knows it's been 6 months since she first found him broke. Node just grins back, telling her, "Because of you, my family is finally safe." And they even. He hauled together all those rare materials, then realized most people spend years chasing Crystal, but they cracked it fast because having a partner you can trust is everything, and Elzer swears by it, saying just how much stronger they've both become since that. On their very first day together, the two finally lock arms. Nod goes quiet for a beat, then gently calls out Elsa's name across the chaos. She leans up from her drink, eyes lifting toward him, and asks with sharp curiosity what's really been weighing on his mind. Nod just stares at her and says, "Thanks for everything we've survived together," and she gives a tiny nod right back, fully on his side. Node slides into the tavern seat across from Elsa and tells her, straight to her face, that their partnership is officially over starting today. They finally slammed into Crystal rank, and Elsa's smile tugged at her heart, because right after this, they're about to split up. After all that, she finally comes clean. She's about to be seriously lonely. And then she asks him, straight up, if he's definitely heading back to his hometown Fishg. For his family, Node locks eyes with her and urges her to take care of herself, and Elsa just snaps back, "Stay safe, don't you dare get hurt." They raise their drinks sky high, lock side by side to hit Crystal rank, and they blast out cheers as their mugs clink. No doubt about it. He downs his drink in one shot, and Elsa bursts out laughing, praising his killer drinking style as they clink their glasses. Their mugs one last time, clinking as they toasted to fresh starts and whatever chaos came next later. The tavern is. Quiet hangs in the air, empty mug sitting on the table, and then Nod snatches his bag to leave until he hears someone call his name. Then he whips around, and there she is, his mother, arms crossed, staring him down like a warning label, telling him they have to start even though he just walked in. He needed to talk in her room, and Node didn't hesitate. He shot back that he'd be there the second he tore himself out of his armor. Nod strides down the hallway toward his mother's room, beads of sweat pouring as he panics because he has zero clue what he messed up, and his mind is racing through every possibility, hunting for the reason he's about to get scolded. He halts at the door, calls out that he's here, and his mom just waves him in with a simple, "Come inside." As soon as they're inside the room, Node tries to slice through the tension and blurts out, "So what do you want to talk about?" His mother stands at the window, scanning the grounds, then whips around and tells him the bombshell. Someone has sent a real marriage proposal for their sister, Hannah. Node's face suddenly brightens, and he blurts out that's amazing news for her, mostly because, for once, he isn't the one stuck in a hot seat. But then his mother's face stays stone cold and serious, and Node realizes this isn't some warm, happy visit, so he hesitates and calls out, trying to figure out what's going on. She blurts out that it's all falling apart before they can even begin, and Node snaps, "Why?" Until it finally clicks, this is the real reason he was summoned. His mother tells him the man is a baron, a close buddy of the noble family Hannah serves at the royal palace. The real problem? This guy's family looks down on the Ferris house, and lately they've been spreading some nasty rumors about them. Turns out the baron's family has already decided. They're sure Hannah's nothing but a gold digger, desperate to marry him for his money. Nod's mind races, and his brothers have been grinding non-stop just to pay things off. But the family's still drowning in debt, and it's all starting to crush him, like he can't even breathe as the sentence cuts off. So his mom lays it out. They've got to prove they can pay back what they owe, at least enough to save face right now. Node fires back and demands the exact amount they need immediately, and he psychs himself up to go out and bring home enough money for Hannah's wedding. Pressure's crushing him, but he's dead set on grinding anyway, thinking that, so because it's snowing and Elsa's nowhere to be seen, he thinks he can snatch every high-paying winter gig for himself, grind through a whole bunch, rake in 20 or 30 silver coins, and then his mother drops the hammer and blurts out, "We actually need 200 silver coins," and he just freezes there, deathly pale, like his soul just slipped out of his body because he can't. He can't even process the number she just dropped. His brain is glitching out while his mother strolls right past it and casually asks what the total debt for the whole family is right now. The two of them just stand there, staring at this giant scroll packed with every last thing the family owes, and it's way longer than he ever imagined. Node's jaw hits the floor when he asks how they even pulled off borrowing that much money, and he laughs, wondering if they're secretly some high-ranking lords or something. But his mother just sinks into a tired stare and tells him the truth low-level nobles like them barely scrape by on 30 silver coins a year. Then she points out how everything was running smoothly until their big brother Albiro showed up. She tells him that when she was pregnant with Hannah, a war suddenly erupted with the country next door and Node's father had to scramble for loans just to pay for the gear he needed to go fight. The mother keeps the tale rolling, telling how the family fought their way into the official roles they hold right now. But that wasn't the end of it, turns out. It was only the spark. And she folds her hands tight as she tells you that from that moment on, she and the father bonded even tighter, and No just stood there, looking worn out from listening to his parents' love story while, right when he finally understood the debt wasn't stopping it, just kept stacking. With a massive family to raise, Granddad's funeral, and yet more war gear, they were drowning long before they ever got the chance to pay a single thing back. And even with that extra interest tacked on, those 200 silver coins still won't wipe the debt. Clean Node can't help thinking his family's financial disaster is almost impressive, in the worst way possible. Especially, some people have been circling this payout for nearly 20 years, and when the mother explains that refunding only a handful would light a fuse and leave the rest furious, Node can barely even process it like, how could anyone wait that long? Because now they're stuck footing the bill for Hannah's wedding, and the neighbors are already gossiping like crazy, saying if that family can throw a huge party, they should be dumping that money into their loans instead. So she decides to shut down the loudmouths all at once, fighting tooth and nail to keep the family name from getting dragged through the mud again, especially knowing that Hannah's future in-laws are already getting cold feet thanks to those nasty rumors. So if Node can somehow snatch those 200 silver coins, the wedding won't hit a single snag, and that's what keeps everything from going south. Node gets completely fired up, clenches his fist, and tells her he's got this, promising he'll do anything it takes to get that cash. Node stared at the tiny thing in his hand, heart hammering as he thought, there's no way I can tell my mom how I really feel. And then he starts crunching the numbers on those 200 silver coins, because that stack of money is basically what a whole little territory earns in an entire year. And when he stacks it against a normal adventurer's life, the gap is flat out insane, because even a high-rank crystal adventurer only pulls in about. Nod just sinks to the ground, head in his hands, stress crushing him as he stares at the about 40 silver coins a year job and panics. Because how in the world is he supposed to pull this off? But he refuses to stay down. He throws on heavy winter gear, stomps into the freezing mountain range, and battles through the deep snow. Right as he keeps moving, something finally snaps his attention. He spots 2 glowing gems half buried in the dirt, and it hits him. This is it, the thing he's been hunting for. These are Ice Spirit Stone's insanely rare magic gems you can only uncover when winter freezes. Everything outside when the world is at its coldest. Node starts loading them up, staring at his massive pack like it's about to spit out answers, wondering what the payout will be. Because even with all this, he's still nowhere near that 200 silver goal. That bag was brutally heavy. He staggered like the world tilted, then muttered, "Close one," because that weight nearly shoved him straight down into the snow. He stops, tightens his straps, and snaps his gear into place, then nods like, "All right, we're good to go," determined to keep grinding through the cold. Node slogged through the deep snow, gear clanking, and swore this winter cold was nastier than any monster. He was just relieved he never trusted that shopkeeper and stuck with his old leather armor, because that was the only thing keeping the freeze off him. Even with the gear upgrades costing a little too much, he swears it's worth every coin, because if he can't move through this mess for real, he's not surviving. So he presses on and keeps his eyes razor sharp as he scans the mountain air, feeling that eerie dead quiet settle over everything until, out in the distance, he clocks a strange, shimmering light that makes his breath catch and cuts off his thoughts as it comes into view. That snaps his attention. On the spot, he freezes in place, staring at the sparkles drifting over the frozen plains, wondering if they're real ice spirits. Nod remembers those spirits are total pranksters, but the scary part is they're so powerful that even a harmless joke can wreck a normal person in seconds. So he makes a sharp exit before they even lay eyes on him. No way he's letting some funny spirit decide to turn him into minced meat. He keeps his head down and marches forward, trying to convince himself the foothills are right around the corner, but then boom, some massive sound rips through the valley and Node just stops cold as the shock hits his senses, realizing something enormous is right there. He plunges face first into the snow, grits his teeth, and swears he won't move a single muscle. Then a massive shadow sweeps straight over his head and He tilts his gaze just enough to catch a massive winged beast slicing through the storm overhead, then freezes to the ground, gripping stillness as he watches it vanish into the clouds and prays he stays unseen. Nod crouches in the crushing snow, shoulders tight, snapping his eyes back to the sky, checking if that monster finally vanished, and right then his thoughts trail off. And when the dust finally settles, he cranes his neck to make sure it's a wyvern. No doubt, he's safe for the moment, but getting back is brutal. And the trouble only keeps. Node slumped over the tavern table like his spirit got crushed, fully defeated, while the waitress hovered there waiting for his order. He only managed a pathetic, miserable groan. He slams his head into his hands, staring at the fact he's officially out of money, while the waitress clocking his total shutdown and another regular cracks up, bragging about how the kid's been acting up again. Nod doesn't even budge from that table, looking like a walking disaster. Then this random guy nearby spots that Elsa's nowhere around. Shocked, since it's super rare to ever see Nod by himself, so he leans in close and asks his buddy if they've heard the news. Yet turns out everyone in the bar is whispering that Node's party finally broke apart for good. The guys burst into laughter, all wondering if Elsa ditched him, or if he ditched her first, and before anyone knows it, everyone's got a different version, and the gossip train just roars louder. Node hears every word and thinks, these drunks are just talking nonsense, smirking to himself as he keeps his face hidden. Then one of the guys slides a drink over and tells him to cheer up, but No just goes silent, staring at the mug like it's the only thing that still makes sense, and he just shrugs and lets them spit all their trash, then chugs a massive gulp of ale like, hey, I at least walked away with a free drink. The bar's buzzing with dudes still yapping about Node's mess. One guy swears the whole party's done for, and his buddy's like, wait, did Node get dumped? But the first guy laughs and corrects him. It was the girl who got tossed. Node just sinks in, letting their trash talk slide off him, thinking these drunks have no clue. Then someone pats his head and tells him to cheer up, so it finally hits him, and he slams the rest of his drink down in one massive gulp, then yells that the pacing has to change now. He's done sitting around, so he charges straight for the guild's request board, because in the morning, the good jobs get snatched up instantly. Node stands there all by himself, and when someone nearby asks if he's finally feeling better, he only shrugs out a half-hearted reply. Then his words cut off mid-brut. He scans the scraps sitting on the board. Those jobs nobody wants just rot there for days, until the guild either yanks them down or sweetens the reward with extra cash to make someone finally bite. The Node lunges for the nearest paper, grumbling about how a pain like hunting ice spirits still spits out those bonuses, and yeah, he knows it'll only be a couple more silver coins in the end, but he keeps staring at it anyway, because 4 silver coins usually could stretch a whole year of living. Yet what he needs right now is straight up absurd. He figures his mom probably doesn't even expect him to drag home all 200 coins. Then he stares at the job's bonus slip in his hand and calls the guild stingy after they toss him only a measly contribution boost. But he knows he can't sit still. His parents are just panicking because Hannah's already over 20 and her marriage is dragging on. So he tells himself, if he can scrape together at least 50 coins to chip away at the debt, maybe the groom's family will finally take them seriously. But that's where the trouble starts. But the moment he locks eyes on that board, doubt crashes in and he can't stop wondering if that plan will actually pay off in the end. Node wraps up a handful of jobs over the last 2 weeks, even chalking in the travel time. And once he totals his bonus, he ends up with roughly 5 silver coins so far. So good. Until now. It sounds like plenty until you realize he knows it still isn't enough, even with the good pay finally landing the number he needs for Hannah's wedding by spring, because that whole timeline feels like a fantasy he can't reach. And when he glances at those numbers, the guy just goes still, staring off like he's seeing a nightmare, because he knows there's no way he can pull this off alone. He blurts to himself that life would be so much easier if Elsa were still here. Then he stops cold, wondering if even her help would really save the day, because the Ferris family's debt isn't just big, it's a whole different beast, and he trudges through the quiet streets knowing even top crystal or bronze adventurers would choke on paying it off. Walking away, it left him staring in disbelief as visions of Elsa smiled at him and reached out, like she was begging him to keep pushing forward, snaps him out of his funk. Then he steals his resolve, because if he gives up now, his sister's happiness goes down with it, and quitting isn't even an option for him, so he ramps up his ambition. If crystal rank pay won't cut it, he's hunting iron rank quests, because that's where the real money lives, and those jobs dump out dozens of silver coins in one go. Then reality crashes and those monsters are far too brutal for him, and his sword probably couldn't even nick them, plus the guild won't let some low-rank nobody like him so much as touch those papers. But Then he stares at his own hand, and a wild idea lights up. Should he ditch the guild altogether and hunt for a client who hire him straight up? Nod lunges toward the board, fully aware that if he goes rogue like this, it's his life on the line, because the guild sure as hell won't back a stunt like this. But he's dead stuck, because he has zero idea where to even lay hands on the high-level monsters he'd need to hunt. And it slams into him that when a job's 2 ranks above his own, he can't even figure out where to begin. In the dead quiet hall, he lifts his head and realizes he's staring straight at the silver rank bulletin board. He stares at his own hand, wondering if even iron rank gear is already too much for him, because the monsters the silver rank guys hunt must be a whole other beast. So he spots a random flyer for wyvern parts, and boom, this client's dangling a wild reward, 800 silver coins for just 1 head. Node can't stop a dry little laugh because that kind of money feels like nothing. Unless it's a dream he's finally about to catch. Even the toughest spiders who finally claw their way into iron rank usually slam into a brutal ceiling, and most of them never manage to break through to silver. As he turns away, he can't stop thinking, those guys are on a whole other level, because they can actually bring down a dragon. And even a wyvern is supposedly the weakest they've got. He slips into flashback mode, replaying every story he's ever heard, especially the one about that silver rank adventurer who somehow clawed his way all the way into the kingdom's Iron Dragon Knights. To him, anyone who can tame those beasts is pure evil. But then it hits him. Someone once told his brother, Albaro, that joining the Knights was his shot to finally break out and make it big. Node thinks his dad is going way too hard on his brother, pushing him to join the elite Iron Dragon Knights, because sure, parents want the best, but this feels like way too much pressure, especially since he realizes that if he actually pulls this off, those 200 silver coins could finally end up in his hands, and yeah, it's a long shot, but it's still a way better bet than spending the rest of his life stuck doing boring, basic jobs. He stands there by himself for a beat, eyes locked on the wall as his brain scrambles to understand the whole plan. Later, he catches up with that old drunk in a tavern, shoves a drink into his hands, and the guy's face lights up because he's never seen him this generous before. But the drunk guy can't stop himself. He demands why this guy's tossing money around if he's broke, and the dude just grins, swearing it's because on his last quest he actually ran into a wyvern. And he makes it crystal clear this isn't him being nice. He's desperate to learn the proper way to handle those beasts, because survival depends on it. He slams back a giant swig from his barrel, then growls, "Oh, I get it, now running into one of those things is a total disaster for anybody." He leans in and tells Node to listen up because those monsters are no joke and messing with them gets you destroyed, So Node plops down with his notebook and asks Elsa to spill some of her battle stories, and she huffs like it's a chore. But the second Node's listening, you can tell she's ready to show off. Node leans in and demands the old guy tell him what's coming on the snowy mountain, and the veteran snaps back that he better stay sharp. Snow golems start crawling out around this time of year. The old drunk leans in and demands how Node somehow slipped free when that wyvern attacked. Node just stares at his drink, shrugs, and admits it was pure luck. So he starts ripping through his notebook, scanning every note about monsters, how they move, where they slip, and what they can't defend. And he's hunting for a way to stay alive and outsmart them. Because he gets at figuring out how these creatures move is the only path ahead. So he grabs every scrap of knowledge and hard-earned experience the others left behind. And when he snaps the book shut, he reminds himself right information is the sharpest weapon he's ever wielded. While the tavern roars with laughter and demands another round, Node stays hidden in the corner, alone and silent. He finally slips away to a quiet corner, tries to drown out the noise, and starts reviewing his notes one last time, right up to where it cuts off. He's finally certain his plan won't fail. Then his expression turns ice-cold serious, and he snaps, like it's the moment of truth. It's finally time to get to work. Then he barrels into the freezing mountains and starts climbing a towering ice wall, smashing his pickaxe into the cliff with brutal swings. But that climb is brutal. He almost slips clean off the edge, gasps for air, and admits to himself that he barely made it. And just like that, his hand shoots out from a massive pile of snow because he'd gone completely buried. Nod finally spots a place to drop, collapses against his gear, and gasps for breath. Then the cold creeps in and wipes him clean out. Realizes the brutal cold doesn't care how many winter layers he's packed, and he decides he has to boil up some water just to keep his body temp up, so he starts to. So he drops a tiny stove into place and fires it up with magic stones. Because not a single scrap of wood is anywhere, he knows it's a waste, but it's the only way to melt the snow and get a warm meal going, so he yanks out his rations as the wind howls around his hood. He shoves that stubborn, hard bread straight into the pot, dunking it fast so it finally soaks up heat and turns soft. The second he bites in, he tastes that jam sweet as a revelation. and it hits just right. Like the warmth he'd been missing finally punches through. After downing his drink, he leans toward the snowy ridge and peers out, then spots a monster hunched in the distance, barely moving as the frost claws at it. He says he'd gladly sit there all day and binge every second if he could, but he knows he can't stop, not for one more moment. He stuffs his cup away and he keeps clawing his way up that gigantic frozen cliff as the snow hammers down. He hammers the stakes straight into the ice and hangs there dangling over a brutal drop. Node plants himself on the ridge's edge, staring down the gigantic mountains ahead. Then he jabs a finger at that distant cliff like, "That's my next stop!" And kicks off the brutal grind of hammering stakes into the frozen stone, hauling himself up one painful inch at a time, locked on the climb to the top as the wind claws at him harder and harder, whipping snow into a frenzy around his cloak. He throws his weight forward, fighting for balance on that razor-thin ledge, and he darts through the chaos, weaving around colossal boulders until he looks like nothing but a tiny speck in their shadow. He clamps his gear in both hands, eyes locked in pure focus, and tells himself this time he's finally ready to hunt down that wyvern egg. And then bam, we spot the monster itself perched on a jagged peak, right where it's safest. Because wyverns crank up their nests so high in places like this for one reason: they know smaller predators can't crawl up there to snatch their young. Node knows other nests exist, but they're miles away or hidden in lands. Those monsters aren't just strong, they're on a whole different planet. Trying to land a hit on the right spots without knowing the area? That's basically suicide. So he clings to that cliff like it's home. He's done these winter quests before, and he knows every treacherous inch, so he starts scaling that brutal ice wall until he finally breaks through a massive opening carved into the side of the mountain, then dives into the icy cave, clenching his nerves tight as the wind howls and closes in behind him. Nod finally stumbles into the monster cavern, ice and rock twisted into a frozen maze. He ducks behind a chunky slab of ice, eyes locked on the scene with total focus, and yeah, everything is hitting exactly like the plan so far, and he recalls every scrap of intel he gathered. Turns out the monster drags itself out of its nest once a day to hunt, and that means his timing. Perfite watches the wyvern drop a low growl and launch into the sky, and with snow this deep, it's going to vanish for a long while hunting for food, so Node wastes zero time and rockets to the back of the cave, because he knows he's got to grab that egg and bolt before anyone comes back. Then he rips into the nesting material only to come up empty-handed. He checks one spot, then another, but the egg isn't there, and it leaves him staring in shock like his whole plan just vanished. He's frantically raking through the pile, and panic starts to spike. He's thinking, where the hell did the monster stash it? Right up until, as he screams at himself to move faster, right when hope starts to die. A strange shimmering glow flickers from the corner of the nest and snags his attention. He leans in and freezes because it's not an egg at all. It's a sword jammed in the rubble, buried up here like a secret. And the sheer weirdness knocks the wind out of him, as he can't figure out why any weapon would be here. Right as he steps in for a closer look, his foot smashes down on something and a brutal sharp crack rings out. Node flinches the second his fingers graze something sticky in the dark, then yanks his hand back like he just got burned. He stares at the disgusting mess on his gloves and instantly realizes, horror hits, that he's not just near it, he's literally standing in a pile of wyvern poop. Staring at that sword again, it finally hits him. This blade was probably an adventurer's last hope, and now the monster's already turned him into a meal. Then it clicks: every inch of the cave's back wall is basically one giant bathroom, and he knows he has to grab that egg and vanish before trouble gets even worse. After tearing through the grime, he finally catches sight of a hidden little corner where big, smooth shapes are quietly bunched together, and he lunges for one of the eggs, heart pounding, convinced this tiny thing is the key to everything he's been chasing. A massive crash rips through the cavern, rattling the ground under his feet. His mind scrambles. Is it some avalanche starting outside? Then he hears something else, and his heart drops when he realizes the wyvern came back to the nest way sooner than it ever should have. Ice starts raining from the ceiling the second the monster hits the ground, and Nod's instantly freaking out, scrambling to figure out how on earth he's getting out of this nightmare. The brutal truth is this: there's only one exit from the cave, and that wyvern is blocking it like it owns the place. Nod scans his options: fight the beast and stand his ground, but he already knows that's a straight-up suicide run, so that giving up and dying right then flashes through his head. He can practically picture his skull dropping into that pile of bones, but he jerks back from that darkness and swats the thought away, because he knows if he doesn't hide right now, it's game over. So he spots a crack in the rocks and bolts straight for it. Just as the giant wyvern finally slips fully into the cave, it crashes forward with brute weight, its claws grinding over the stone floor as It lets out a deep, rumbling growl, then drops right over its nest of eggs so tight, so watchful, that Node realizes this isn't a nest at all. He's trapped, so he clamps his mouth shut, holds his breath, and prays his hiding spot will fool those razor-sharp eyes, and then it hits him. This monster would never think to hunt him in its own bathroom, and that foul stench is working overtime to hide his scent. He tells himself this is his lucky break, so he freezes in place, waiting for the creature to take off again. Then he'll snatch an egg and bolt. But the wyvern has zero rush. It curls up, crashes into sleep in seconds, and leaves Node stuck there in the dirt, just rotting in boredom as the minutes crawl by. He's been stuck here for what feels like forever, staring at the eggs and counting every second as the monster doesn't budge until his patience starts to crack and he can't stop asking, how much longer? That stench is so foul that Node's nose is going numb for real. He's tucked behind the rocks, barely daring to move an inch as the wyvern towers right over his hiding spot. He's totally frozen, eyes locked on those massive scales sliding past, and he can only, praying it hasn't clocked him yet. He feels the earth rattle boom. That brutal thud like the beast is charging straight for his throat. So he shuts his eyes and starts praying. Then he blurts a quick goodbye to his parents and sisters, fully convinced he's already toast as he keeps praying, and he can't even process it. His life is ending in a place like this, while the monster paces right over him, cornering him. And then he hears this creepy sound, and boom, he snaps his eyes open, peeks out like, what the hell is happening? And he can't even find the words. He just freezes, staring blankly at what he's seeing, while all the fear just evaporates, and he's frozen in a stunned, dazed eyes locked on the massive creature, suddenly understanding that turns out the monster's not hunting at all. It's just using the cave as its own filthy bathroom. But at least for now, he knows he's safe. And before he can even blink, hours have vanished. He's been crouched there so long that he starts to wonder if a whole day already slipped by. Node crouches and peers through the rock cracks as the massive beast finally stirs, then it launches off to hunt. This is the moment he's been craving. Those things streak so fast he figures he's got under an hour to react, so he tells himself this is his only shot. He snatches one of the eggs, but it slams into his hands like a brick. He's so shocked he starts wondering if it's solid iron, because he can't. He can barely lift it. He knows he's got to move fast and bolt out of the cave before the mother comes back, but the second he steps outside, a wall of blinding white smashes into his eyes. It's a full blizzard out there, and the moment he goes for it, trouble hits wind claws at him, trying to topple him, while he strains to drag that massive egg through the deep snow. His feet keep sinking, and his legs are about to collapse, and he's desperate to stop and breathe. But he has zero clue how savage that wyvern will get once it realizes its egg is gone. He remembers cornering Elsa in the tavern, but she was already halfway through another ale, then shrugged and said she had no clue because she's usually too busy chopping up monsters before she ever heads home. Turns out the advice from those top-tier adventurers hits like gold. But Node quickly realizes he's still nowhere close to their level. He's still way too close to the nest, and he knows it. If he doesn't back them off right now, he's signing his own death warrant. K-Node's hands are violently shaking as he clamps down on that heavy egg, because if he hesitates for even a second, he's dead. He lunges to move, but his coat is turned into frozen wood. He can't take a step, then it smashes into him. He can't forget his dad and brother talking about the people up north who ride boards down brutal mountain slopes at insane speeds. So he tosses some hot water over his frozen coat, melts it down, and reshapes it into rough makeshift skis. He straightens up, launches himself down the slope, and the wind roars in the moment he finally catches the slide leaving him. He gets blasted away down the mountainside, right as the wyvern crawls back to the nest and snaps to attention, only to find its prize is gone. Later, Nod turns back toward those towering peaks and realizes if he'd tried to walk down the normal way, he never would have made it out alive. He finally found safety in the back of the carriage, curled up and gasping for breath after that razor-thin escape, so he snatches the egg in his reach and tells it, straight up, that it put him through the ringer. He finally realizes those months of non-stop planning weren't for nothing selling. This will clear his debt and even give his sister Hannah the chance to finally get married. Nod slumps in the back of the carriage, staring at the egg while dread crawls in his chest, because even now, after all of this, that family debt still isn't cleared, not even with the interest piling on. He just keeps staring at the shell, until something feels off. Then he lets out a quiet little gasp because a massive crack tears across the surface, and the panic hits him so hard he can't even breathe. He panics out of nowhere, scanning for where he might have knocked it, terrified that if the egg cracks or goes bad, the price will crater, because this was his family's last real hope. Nod drops his face into his hands, absolutely shattered, because he knows there's no way he'll ever reach that nest again to grab another one. But he clenches his nerves, swears to himself he's got to harden that shell, because the royal capital is right around the corner. Right as his hand lunges for it, the shell snaps apart into a million pieces, and he erupts in screams of pure, mind-blown disbelief. In the pile of shattered shell, a tiny eye snaps open. Something is alive, and it's staring back. Instead of finding a ruined egg, Nod freezes as a tiny baby dragon chirps in his hands, then snuggles straight into his chest wall. He stood there frozen, reeling over the bright future he promised his sister Hannah. Nod watches his family laughing together, and it hits him. Hannah finally looks breathtaking when she's happy, but the moment lasts only a second. But just as the moment hits, panic slams him. He can barely spit out a word, because the little creature in his arms gives a soft chirp, still rocking bits of its shell like a tiny hat. It bursts out with one more brutal cry and immediately rams its face into his chest, while Mode just freezes in absolute silence, staring down at the baby dragon like, okay, what am I supposed to do now? That tiny thing doesn't seem to care at all. It just keeps rubbing its face all over him, like it's demanding attention. Right then, Nod's father bursts out running, shouting how relieved he is that his son made it back safe. So Nod tries to talk over him and tell him, I'm here. His father halts mid-sentence when he spots something squirming under the cloak, then snaps. What are you hiding in there? Leaving Nod drenched in sweat as he scrambles to explain. Then the baby pops its head out and absolutely rattles both his father and Alec. That little wyvern tips its head and chirps at them from deep inside the folds of the cloth. Nod stares down at the tiny creature cradled in his arms, and his face bursts bright red as the truth finally hits him. The baby wyvern squeaks once, then whips its head around the room while Nod scrambles to explain to his stunned father and a weirdly calm Alec that this is just how things are now. Before Nod could even get a word out, his father whipped around and sprinted out the door, yelling for Nod to stay home and saying he'd handle everything, while Nod crumpled onto the couch, drowning in pure stress. While he sits there, the memories hit everything he knows about these creatures, especially how the Iron Dragon Knights only raise dragons born from eggs, because the wild ones are too feral to ever be trained. He stares down at the tiny guy snuggled up to his arm, expecting the usual super aggressive attitude he's always been warned about, but instead this one is shockingly calm, so he can't help wondering if it's just baby behavior. Suddenly the door blasts open, and a voice from the hallway hits him with the rumor about the dragon being tied to him, and he doesn't even flinch. Nod's father strides back in with two stern-looking men, and when he introduces one as the vice commander of the Iron Dragon Knights, Nod's mind instantly goes blank, pure shock. The tiny wyvern senses the brutal tension in the room, lets out a shaky little chirp, and starts trembling like it can't handle the nerves. It screams even louder, and Nod freaks out, trying to hush the baby fast, begging it to stay silent because the important guests are watching. The vice commander just bursts into laughter and waves it all off, saying it's fine. Then he apologizes for crashing in while there's still a mess from the road. Like, that's exactly how the adventure life goes. The vice commander stares at the baby dragon and shoots Nod a question. Is that yours? Because that little guy clings to him like he's the only thing that matters. And right then, nervously blurts out, yeah, then tries to play it cool, mumbling that maybe it's just because he still reeks of the mother dragon from the nest. How? And it looks like the vice commander is genuinely blown away right then. Alec barges in, calls out that he's back. Then he slams down a tray stacked with raw steaks, and Nod stares at it, thrown off, because they're already handing over plain meat, so the vice commander orders Alec to feed it, and Alec shoves the tray to Nod. Nod nods and agrees to try it, while the little wyvern leans in and drags out a long sniff of the meat, eyes lighting up like it can't believe what it's tasting, then it snaps its mouth wide and steals a massive bite, no hesitation at all, and Nod can't. I can't believe the little guy's still eating. He says he's got a crazy appetite and straight up asks if it's already hunting for seconds, which makes the vice commander shoot him another message, and then, without hesitation, he personally hands the baby that very thing. And the wyvern just snaps, totally loses it on the food, tearing into the meat with way more fury and energy than anyone ever expected. Vice Commander Goldwyn and Walter stare at the baby dragon, and even though it looks just like a normal wyvern, Walter can't shake the truth its behavior is nothing like any creature they've ever seen. Then the vice commander blurts out Nod's full name like it's a bombshell. Nod freezes, totally baffled, while that tiny dragon chirps away, happily snuggled in his arms. And then Goldwyn wastes 0 seconds and roars that Nod is officially his new apprentice for the Iron Dragon Knights. So stunned that Nod's brain nearly flatlines, and all he can spit out is a baffled, stuttering W, which makes Goldwyn snap around to Walter and say, "You're the one who look after the kid from now on." He orders Walter to keep a tight watch on him, but Walter looks dead annoyed, and he snaps the order back like, "Seriously? I'm babysitting some random kid?" Especially because he tells the vice commander to his face that Node just doesn't cut it for their ranks, then stares Node down and flat out admits he can't find a single skill that an Iron Dragon Knight needs. So he pushes the idea that they should wait until the kid graduates from the military academy. First, he's clearly trying to dodge the job, and then, never Goldwyn snaps that if they wait that long, they'll lose every scrap of their best data gone. Then he explains the hatchling only likes Nod because Nod's wrapped in the mother's scent. Meanwhile, Nod just stands there, blushing hard, thinking he's got to stop diving into dragon nests. Goldwyn says it's way simpler than everyone thought. Nobody ever had the nerve to try it before. But once you hear that, it hits like a total game changer. And he tells Walter to just take it as a lucky break, because he's certain Nod and the dragon in their corner will become a huge win for the Iron Dragon Knights down the road. Everyone crowds in on Walter, the vice commander, piling on pressure so much that even Albert, Node's father, is practically begging him to just take the job, and Walter's feeling the pressure hit hard. He rubs his eyes, lets out this huge sigh, and can't believe these guys are talking him into all this. But he finally snaps and declares he'll do it, and Albert's face lights up then, right when the mood peaks. Someone else bursts in, with even more food to keep the party rolling. Noj just stands there in dead silence, drenched in sweat, staring at the chaos like, how did my normal adventurer life spiral into this? Walter locks eyes on the kid and drops his full name like a warning, then snarls that he won't spare him one single bit until Nod becomes a real Dragon Knight. And Node is so freaked out that he blurts out a yes on instinct before his brain can even catch up, and the moment it lands, you can tell he's spiraling because he has zero clue what he just agreed to. His brain's basically short-circuiting right now. He can't even wrap his mind around how fast everything's flying. Later on, the whole crew is watching a wedding ceremony when that tiny dragon suddenly decides, right now is the perfect moment to cause a full-blown disaster. The baby dragon is screeching like crazy in Nod's arms, and Nod just stares down at it, wondering if this little menace is really already awake and raring to go. It winds up pissing off the guy who's trying to read the speech, so he snaps at them to shut up and show some respect while he's talking. The guests are already whispering about Node, and one older noble points him out, calling him the third fairest son, then drops the bomb that he heard Node actually made it into the Iron Dragon Knights. Nod forces himself to stay calm and tells his mind to snap into focus because that baby dragon won't stop chirping, drowning out everything while his little sister Iris totally tunes out the drama to hit the buffet. She's stuffing her face with snacks while that dragon keeps roaring and wrecking the peace. That tiny dragon gapes its mouth for a bite, and you just stand there like, is it gonna keep being this hungry forever? The ceremony is straight up beautiful there. They stand at the altar, the bride and groom smiling like they've just found their forever. This is a huge moment for the family. Mom's voice even wobbles. She's dabbing at her eyes, and everyone watches like their hearts are in their throats. Staring at that cracked shell, I realized the whole scheme to flip that egg to the knights for a fast fortune crashed and burned completely. Even as an apprentice, he wasn't doing too badly. Just being part of the kingdom's top knight order was enough to earn real respect from the groom's family. Then the party crashes to a stop, and reality punches Node in the gutties suddenly back to earth, gasping like he can't breathe. As Walter breathes down his neck, exhaustion hits hard and nausea rolls in. But Walter just roars at him to keep moving, then tosses another 100 rounds of training on top. Node is sprinting for his life, stunned that this nightmare is real. He's totally wiped out. And the baby dragon is chasing him inches behind, flapping through the air. He jerks his head back and yells to the little guy, but the dragon only chirps, then it rockets toward him like this is the funnest game in the world. The dragon slams down right onto his head, and the impact knocks the wind out of him so hard he nearly faceplants on the spot. Nod screams at the dragon to get off its crushing him. Yet the beast just chatters away like it's thrilled, and Nod realizes his new life is about to turn into pure chaos. Suddenly, the story plunges into a pitch-black forest. Node spins around totally clueless, freaking out, wondering what on earth he just got himself into. Right in front of him, something crashes into the ground with a thunderous thud, and he freezes dead in his tracks. He snaps his head up and spots a giant wyvern hanging over him. An ice-cold fear floods his veins as he insists he has to scramble out of there right now. The monster swings its massive mouth wide and blasts a roar that rattles everything. Node immediately screams at the top of his lungs like he's fighting for his life. His vision flashes to white, and he keeps screaming as he stretches out, clawing for something, anything to grab. He jolts awake in his own bed, choking on air, barely able to think then. He feels it. Something heavy pinning him to the mattress under the covers. That baby dragon is completely out cold, snoring and drooling all over the top of Node's head. Nod finally jolts awake like he got hit by a truck, and he can't stop wondering if that wild nightmare was really sparked by this little guy sitting there weighing him down. He jolts upright and roars Newt at the top of his lungs like the whole world is about to hear it. But the dragon doesn't care one bit. It just chirps back wearing this gigantic happy grin, and honestly, it shuts the whole moment down. No way, he just slumps there in bed, completely wiped out and furious, while Newt pretends everything's fine and rolls on, leaving the little dragon behind. His mood snapped on a dime. He looked up at him with those huge, watery eyes and let out a tiny, broken whimper. Nod can't even keep his anger going. He just tells the dragon, "You're something else," while Newt burst out with yet another long, happy chirp. Next, the tail barrels into the Iron Dragon Knight's secret home base hidden deep in the mountain like a fortress holding its breath. It's a brutal, miserable stretch of land that looks exactly like a wyvern's nest, so nasty that even the other night groups don't dare claim it. That's the real reason it works, because it makes spotting any spies creeping toward the capital almost effortless. Newt struts along, then loses it, screaming at his cloak because Newt is squirming inside, jabbing and trying to poke his head out. He snaps a warning at the little dragon anyone who spots him, and it's instant disaster, so he better stay stone quiet until they reach the camp, while the girl nearby just stares at them like she's totally lost. The tail rips straight into the training grounds. A massive slice carved into the mountainside, where adult wyverns are raised, and where the kingdom's top knights train every single day, getting tougher. And Node is right there with them, face planted in the dirt, wheezing like he's about to explode, while a voice above snaps whether he's done yet, even though he can't stand up at all. Instructor Aaron's loomed over him and snapped that Nod is clearly behind since he never set foot in the military academy. And even with his special circumstances, he has to prove he truly belongs in the best knight squad in the land. Nod refuses to give up, hauls himself back onto his feet, and tells the instructor, "I can still keep going." They slam together again at once. Aaron's whips in a massive swing meant to splatter him, but Node snaps his sword up at the last second and blocks it. That weight is crushing him, and Nod can feel his arms trembling as he desperately fights to stay upright. It's like a sword is the wrong word. More like a giant sledgehammer is smashing into him, yet somehow he grits his teeth and stays upright. He spots a sliver of hope and yells that he's got him only for Aaron to rocket past, vault clean over Node's head, and slam down behind him before Node even has time to blink. He lies flat on his back, gasping like he can't pull air into his lungs, his whole body caked in dirt, while a sword hovers and presses right at his throat. Instructor Orange won't give him a single second. He yells, raises his blade for the final strike, and Node can only look up, totally spent and frozen in place. Nod's eyes snapped wide. He realized he was trapped with nowhere to move, and he knew with total certainty he couldn't dodge it, so he braced. He braces hard as the wooden training sword hammers straight into his chest plate with a brutal thud. The instructor finally snaps it shut, tells Node he's done for today, then turns and strides off, leaving Node sprawled in the dirt, too drained even to speak. He finally tries to haul himself up, but his arms are trembling, caught in the brutal loop of realizing he couldn't land a single hit or even last a second on his own. As he watches the instructor stride off, he clocks it no sweat. Not a drop, then it smacks him hard. The distance between an ordinary guy and a top-tier knight is absolutely monstrous. He slumped there, feeling absolutely defeated, when someone suddenly shouts, teasing him like, "Guess you got your head handed to you again today, huh?" A knight with a huge grin and a spear riding his shoulder strides up, nods like he means it, lifts his eyes from the dirt, and lets out a weary yo to the guy like he's his superior. He tells Node to drop the formality and just call him Rena, then shoves a rake into his hands and yells at him to start leveling that wreck of a training ground. Node drags a rake through the dirt to get things neat, then he pauses mid-job and turns to Rena like, "Okay, what am I even doing here?" Rena tells you the instructor's been hunting for him, says Newt's medical checkup is finally wrapped up, and then adds that Nod has to go fetch him. Before Rena slips away, she tells Node the tiny dragon is basically begging for something from him. Node's like, "Wait, what?" But Rena just waves him off and shouts, "Hurry up, move it!" Node strides over to the research wing, a massive stone fortress sitting right on the edge of the grounds. He explodes through the doors, panting like he ran a mile, and blurts out an apology the second he sees them, saying he took way too long to get there. Right before he can even straighten up, Newt streaks in and smacks his face with a chirpy little joy burst, leaving Nod completely blindsided. Nod steadied himself, but that little dragon started snuggling and rubbing its head all over his hair. Nod squirming and yanking at it, grumbling at the clingy menace to back off and give him some space. A woman in a lab coat, clipboard tucked in her arms, just stands there cackling like it's already decided and tells them it's painfully obvious Newt couldn't wait to see him again. Nod tries to talk to the professor while Newt is basically latched to his head, chirping like crazy and digging his claws in as Nod keeps yelling at him to let go. He finally pries the little guy off and lifts him up with both hands, and Newt just stares back with those huge, innocent eyes like he hasn't a clue what trouble even looks like. Newt keeps chirping and latching onto Node's head like it's glued there, and Node keeps yanking at him, snapping at him to knock it off while the professor just watches, amused and curious all at once. Leading, she waits for her to drop back into her chair and keep typing, then blurts that this tiny dragon is way more interesting than anyone thinks so. Node immediately snaps, asking what she means. She keeps scratching out her report and flat out admits it. Sure, the dragon looks just like any other wyvern, but his behavior is the part that's genuinely messed up. And turns out every other wyvern they've hatched before has never acted this friendly most of the time. They're all snapping and snarling, always on high alert around the staff and the knights. Node just stands there clutching the happy dragon, looking super awkward, while the professor bursts out that she can't believe Newt actually thinks a human smells like his mother. She keeps scribbling like her life depends on it, then blurts out, "Wait, did we miss this in the research somehow?" Since wyverns are so simple, she figures they'll latch onto you fast once they trust you. So Node finally breaks the silence and asks what she really needs him to do. The professor whips around with a huge, excited grin and declares that she's bringing Newt in to meet every other wyvern right now. She lunges toward the door, yells for him to keep up, and Node trails right behind her, looking shaky as he blurts out, "Do I really have to be there for this?" As they stride through the towering stone hall, she blurts that she can't wait to see how the other dragons react to a human, especially since one of their own has fully accepted them. They finally crash into the heavy iron gates of the restricted area, and the air erupts with metal rattling like something is about to go wrong as the next moment cuts off mid-sentence. Node feels a dragon lurking nearby, and the professor strolls straight up to the gate like she's the boss telling the guard she's just passing through, only for the poor guys on duty to look terrified and warn her she can't waltz in. One of the guards is totally losing it over her laid-back attitude, but the professor just smiles and asks what's the problem since they're only there to meet a dragon, which makes the whole situation. The guards get even more thrown off when they see Node hanging out in the back, and they demand to know who the kid is. Node just freezes there, awkward as hell, clutching Newt the whole time, so the guard finally throws up his hands with a miserable face, grudgingly letting them in on one condition. He gets to come along and keep an eye on things, while the professor can't hide how thrilled he is. But the guard jerks the Node aside with a stone-dead serious face, pleading with him to make sure he doesn't even breathe wrong or provoke the dragon. As they march into the dark stone corridor, Node finally clicks that almost everyone in this place is just getting yanked around by the professor's moods. And as he sweeps his eyes across that massive, chilly hallway, he can't shake the feeling he's back in the real wyvern nest, the same place where he first stumbled on Newt's egg. The professor slams on the brakes and snaps, "We're here," and it totally blinds the guards. No way they thought he'd reach this fast, but before he can even blink, he realizes this isn't a cave at all. It's a gigantic indoor stable built for the beast. And then a bone-shaking roar detonates through the whole chamber. Node's whole chest rattles with a massive roar as he's trapped in the dark still, staring up just as he's frozen, locked eye-to-eye with the dragon's massive mouth, convinced his life is about to snap out of existence any second. But then bam! A guy yells at the beast to shut up, and he plants a brutal punch straight across the dragon's nose, making the massive creature backed off. But the guy just casually hopped onto its back, leaving Nodes frozen on the spot, totally stunned, trying to wrap his head around what he'd just witnessed. The guy keeps huffing about how insanely loud that dragon is. Then he suddenly shuts up, spots the professor and the guard standing right nearby, and Crashy totally loses his train of thought. He clocks her instantly and blurts out, "You here on business?" Then fires the real question, why on earth Node is sticking with her. The professor flashes a bright grin, then jumps straight into her plan, telling him that she thought, let Newt meet the older dragons and watch how they clash, or click, to see how things really play out. He's like, "Dude, that sounds awesome, can I stick around and watch?" And the professor lights up, thrilled to let him join in. Next thing you know, the professor dives in with a soothing rubdown for Zephyr, praising every last one of its scales like, "Look at that, so healthy today." Rena keeps gushing about how awesome the dragon's scales look, and when Nod finally stares at them, he can't believe this huge beast is actually so calm being petted like it's nothing especially. Once Walter marches in with a torch, he snaps, asking if Rena's slacking off in the stables again. Node and Newt nearly leap out of their skins since they totally didn't see him coming. And Node can't stop thinking how insane it is to slack off in a dragon's nest. Turns out, this guy's full name is Reinald Harlow. But he makes Node call him Rena and flashes that fake friendly smile. And Walter cuts in. Sure, the guy plays the total clown most of the time. But when it counts, he's one of the Night Order's top-tier fighters. Which means he's not done yet. Which, as Node stares up at that massive dragon, everything clicks into place. He realizes he's got a mountain of lessons to earn if he's going to keep up. But Rena just flashes a grin and tells him she's learning something brand new every single day herself. Nod stares down at his brand new uniform, claws the fabric tight, and can't shake the feeling that he's still way too green to be wrapped in the robe of the Iron Dragon Knights. But Newt doesn't care at all. He happily keeps licking Node's face while cradling the little guy close. That tiny dragon just stares up at him with those huge, sparkling eyes like Node is the only person left in the world, and Node just grins, telling himself, "It's fine, I'm still a rookie, and I've got a long road ahead," just like the little creature curled in his arms. Nod flashes. Newt a small grin and tells himself, "I just need to get stronger on my own time." Because he finally understands he can't rush this. He has to take it one step at a time, and he thanks the little guy for sticking around. Newt chirps back, curious and bright, and looks up at him while Rena waves across the training grounds and screams for Nod to come over for introductions. Nod yells back that he's on his way, sprinting over fast until, while Rena drags him over to this colossal beast, he points out that the dragon's true name is Zephyros, though everyone else just calls him Zephyr. Turns out, Rena stepped in and took over the dragon from a retiring senior the moment she first joined the Knights. She says Zephyr is a battle-hardened veteran already, at 15 years old. Then Rena leans in, brazenly telling the others not to show a lick of fear, because these dragons are so sharp they'll actually strike the moment they sense panic. Nod can feel that giant beast staring down his every move. Sweat pours down his face as he blurts out what he's supposed to do to keep the peace. So Rena tells him it all comes down to guts. And then he jabs his finger toward Newt, who's standing there, staring that massive dragon in the face like he's got zero fear. Rena points out that the baby couldn't possibly win a fight, but he's not scared of Zephyr one bit. Then he tells Node that he should learn from that kid's setting. He drags in a deep breath, tells himself to keep his cool, then blurts out whether he can reach out and touch the dragon only to light a spark in Rena, who's thrilled by his new student's guts. Node stands right before the towering dragon, while Rena and the professor huddle at the side, watching Ben. As he gets closer, a bone-deep chill hits him, and he snaps that even though Newt's chilly. Zephyr feels like a straight-up block of ice. Turns out dragons are built like tanks, so tough they can thrive in freezing mountain peaks or right beside active volcanoes without breaking a sweat. Rena beams and explains that Zephyr is a rare snow dragon variant, and Zephyr practically agrees it looks amazing to him, while the professor just shakes his head, calling it a real shame. Since these variants hit harder than regular dragons, Nod can't shake the thought, what if Rena is stronger than even a gold-rank adventurer? Rena snaps at him to stop spiraling, then ushers him to introduce the two dragons. Node agrees, just lifts the baby up and prays it works every single time. Everything clicks into place. The giant beast locks eyes on the little guy. Then Node blurts out, asking if this is truly the right way to run the show. Right as Zephyr drops his huge head down to grab one perfect sniff of the baby, Nod clocks that the dragon's absolutely sniffing out Newt's scent, and Rena can't help but watch, thrilled by the reaction until the giant dragon abruptly locks onto Node, and Node's panic hits like a punch. He blurts out, "Am I next? Are you sniffing me?" Nod stands right behind the massive dragon, staring at it in disbelief. This thing doesn't feel hostile at all. But he's still got no clue what's happening as the big guy actually takes to Newt, and Newt immediately purrs as he rubs all over that fur like it's home. While Rena just stands there, hums thoughtfully. Half a year vanishes like a blink, and that's when Node finally corners his instructor and demands, "So I'm really getting a vacation after all this?" The instructor finally breaks it to them. Things are about to go wild. Iron Dragon Knights are getting shipped out for huge joint drills and border duty, so no time for games. So Node pieces it all together, and it hits him hard. Nobody's got the time to babysit a rookie like him for a while. His instructor snaps that this isn't a real vacation, just 2 whole months off, and he turns to Node like, "So what am I supposed to do with all this time?" Until the Newt suddenly explodes forward into the woods. He dives straight for a monster's throat and brings it down hard, blood spraying everywhere. Nod strides over, claps him on the back, and says he did a solid job. These monsters don't even stand a chance for him anymore. While Newt just chirps back, especially since they tore down a spear deer, an absolute monster usually reserved for way higher-ranked adventurers, because these beasts are fiercely territorial, and those horns can slice right through armor. Node just flips through his paperwork, stamps it all, and officially shuts the book on the monster chaos that's been wrecking the local fields. Node watches. Newt grab a chunk of meat out of thin air, and then he says, yeah, with a little help. But the kid's been hunting on his own and getting seriously good at it. He slumps against a towering rock, catching his breath, and just watches as Newt tears into his meal on the forest floor like he's in heaven. Newt's been growing at lightning speed, and Node can't miss it. His body's been ballooning bigger every single day. He can't stop thinking about his instructor, so he asks what he's supposed to do with those 2 months of leave, grips his blade tight, and decides he's done messing around. He's heading back to the guild as an adventurer, ready to grind his skills every day and come back even stronger during his time off. Newt chirps for more food, and Nod instantly fires him up with another helping. Then the tiny dragon goes, happy chirp, and right when it seems like it'll end there, Nod eventually finds his way back to town, and as he steps through the guild's busy halls, nostalgia crashes in, old memories flooding back while he stands there, staring. He stands before the quest board, leaving Newt behind at the family home to keep Iris company, and locking in on the perfect job that'll finally push him forward. He spots a request that screams perfect fit, a top-tier monster hunt called Land Sharks Ash, right out in Alco's territory, and then once all that trouble hits, they burrow under the ground, disappear into the dirt, and wait to explode out and ambush anyone who walks by. Land sharks often roll in huge packs, but here's the catch. Alone, they're not that dangerous, so you've got nothing to worry about. So Nod scans the board and realizes, time's almost gone now, all that's left are the annoying low-paying jobs. He figures battling land sharks is the perfect training run for Newt, tough enough to help, not so deadly it goes sideways, so he locks in on this quest like it's a safe bet. If he doesn't bleed money, he's totally fine, because now he finally has room to breathe, and it hits him hard that every reckless gamble he made before actually paid off. But then his eyes catch something off on the paper and his stomach drops. Because the request for those 20 monsters doesn't just come out of nowhere, it traces straight back to Asina City. He's totally baffled. This hunt is supposed to be happening in Alco's territory, so why is some guy from the next city knocking on their door for help? Normally, the local lords would handle the monster problem, but most of their soldiers are really just farmers who have to keep the fields alive, so when things get ugly, the higher-ups don't sweat it. They grit their teeth and toss the whole mess to the Adventurers Guild. Nod keeps wrestling with it, convinced that name on the paper has to belong to the village chief, or the lord, and he can't make sense of why some outsider is tangled in it. Until a hand suddenly slams onto his shoulder, and a voice from behind growls that he'd be smarter to turn around and leave this fight before it swallows him. Xenius slid up with a casual, yo, totally catching Nod off guard, while Lice waved like crazy and said, it's been way too long since we last saw you. Xenius fires off a question. Does Node know what this request is about? And the second Node clicks which one he means. Xenius lays it out. It's the cleanup job after a monster stampede. A stampede is when monsters pump out and reproduce like crazy, then swarm the area around them, sniffing for food and hunting for a place to call home. It happens to every kind of group creature, bugs, birds, even the worst nightmare of all. Locusts swarm, so yeah, that's why. Why did the monsters suddenly start roaming for miles, devouring everything in sight and turning the entire region into absolute ruin? Xenius's face hardens as he tells them the truth. His party wasn't just nearby, they were the exact crew the group sent in to stop the disaster. He can't forget how it all kicked off right after they wrapped a simple gathering quest and started heading home. They spent their days dropping off packages, running deliveries through the streets, and jumping in to help the locals anything to stay useful. They finished their rounds, waved goodbye to the villagers, and figured this was just another ordinary day at work, nothing special at all. Xenia says that was the final chore for the whole village, and Lyses cuts in like, don't freak out, just take it one tiny step at a time. Xenia sighs, saying they're not on Node's level yet, but they still have to scrape by as adventurers, while Lysis stares into the distance, worrying about how Node's doing these days. She drops the bomb that legendary mushrooms are rumored to grow right around here. Then Xenius clocks it immediately and blurts that this must be the moment for Shino to finally flex her cooking skills. Then he bangs on that they've got to reach the royal capital ASAP until Jago freezes in place, dread ripping across his face, and Xenius snaps. What's wrong? As the ground starts ripping under their feet, and a brutal impact slams down right beside them. Someone in the party blurts, "Did you feel that?" And they barely get the question out before Zinnius yanks his sword out in pure panic, screaming that a massive swarm of land sharks is closing in on them. He realizes, way too late, they've practically walked straight into the heart of a nest. And Shino just goes ice cold with shock as she blurts out that it can't be real. Monsters erupted from the ground in every direction, and Zinnius and Jagos had to hack like their lives depended on it just to keep those jaws from closing. She now rips into a scream, warning they're about to get wiped out if they don't move, while that whole group is barely holding the line. Zinnius yells for everyone to throw in the towel, ditch the fight, and sprint straight for Wasina City to save their lives. Later on, Zinnius slumps there, clutching his head in total defeat, realizing the chaos wiped out every last piece of the cargo they swore they'd deliver. Wasina City's streets are normally buzzing like the world's biggest marketplace yet. Right now, every last person has snapped, shouting that they're fed up and demanding answers. What are the local lord and the guild even doing to fix this mess? Casualties are stacking up in every corner. Adventurers are shrieking in agony, while crowds scream for healers to drop everything and get treatment ready right now. At the guild, the whole place crowds around the notice board, buzzing like crazy. Nobody can stomach it. An actual emergency quest is posted, and it's for a full-blown land shark disaster. Zinnius admits that when the whole city went into full panic, his crew had no choice but to jump into the emergency hunt trying to stop that swarm, but then it spiraled into a full-on nightmare. No matter how many sharks they hacked down, the waves just spat out more until the healers collapsed, utterly drained. In the middle of the chaos, a shark explodes forward and lunges straight at Almana. She shrieks her name as the monster bears down on her, pinning her to the ground. Back in the present, Zinnius fires off, asking if Shino really got out of that mess okay, but Lisa's only stares down, saying she took one brutal hit. Zinnius jabs his own hip, pointing exactly where she got wounded, and it looks awkward, like he's not sure he's hitting the right spot. Slice flushes bright red, looks absolutely mortified, and blurts out, asking if he's seriously talking about her butt in front of everyone. Zinnius wraps it up by saying Lisa's finally fixed, but they still had to pull out of the fight. Then boom! A silver-ranked guy shows up, slays the boss, and shuts down the whole disaster, and Node just keeps nodding like it all makes perfect sense. Nod reels back to the armored wolf leader he and Elsa clashed with, and it hits him hard. Those normal mountain wolves can grow into nightmares just like that. Staring at the paper, he blurts, "How is this supposed to tie back to our job when we already took the leader down?" But Zinnius drops the bombshell. The whole monster disaster didn't start in his turf at all. It blew up in the Alcos territory, and that left Node totally blindsided. Turns out this lord is completely obsessed with money, so he dumps every single duty on his staff and boots anyone who even dares to get on his bad side. With taxes going through the roof, the land crumbled into ruin, and monsters flooded in, turning it into a breeding ground. And when Elsa hears how the lord handled everything, disgust hits her so hard, her face twists. She calls that guy the absolute worst. Zinnius instantly clocks that his friends didn't just show up for fun. They joined because they grew up in a tiny village. And when they saw Alcos, panic hit hard. Like they thought their home was next on the chopping block. He points out that Alcos territory can't even wipe out the leftover monsters, so Wasina's city crew is the one coughing up the money for the job themselves. It's a total disaster, and Zinnius is convinced the king could seize the whole territory any day now, so there's no. He starts forging ahead, stuck in his thoughts because these tangled political chores feel like a nightmare, and bringing a trainee dragon knight into it would only turn the whole mess even worse. Node slams the paperwork back into Zinnius's hands and shoots a quick thank you for the heads up, then immediately decides to walk away from the Alco job because that whole gig reeks of political chaos. With that job gone, Zinnius leans in and asks what they want to do. Next, maybe it's smarter to just wait around and let the board reset by morning. Node says it sounds perfect, and just as he's about to move, the guild receptionist strides over and asks if Node can spare a minute to talk. She hit Node with shocking news: someone just submitted a nomination request, and it was meant for him right now. Normally, these jobs only hit the top-tier adventurers or legit specialists until the client demands one specific person by name. And that changes everything. Snagging jobs like these is the fastest route to rubbing shoulders with the big players. And it always comes with some seriously awesome perks. If you work for the Merchant Guild, you get first pick on rare gear, and the alchemists rush your way with powerful magic meds as long as everything goes right. The receptionist slides the request over in a letter, and Node just freezes, stunned out of his mind, because he has no clue who could possibly be important enough to send him a private job. He starts panicking that someone's trying to trap him, so he storms up to the receptionist and demands to know who actually sent the thing. She flips through the files, tells him the client is Johann Dolbriere, and then it hits. It's Node's own brother, married into another noble house. Node just freezes in place. Stunned, he can't wrap his head around it. It was Johann, his own brother, who sent that request. He double-checks the envelope, hunting for the truth, then reads the letter inside where Johann calls him his dear brother and drops the rest before the words can land. And then he starts peeling back the truth of what the job really means. Meanwhile, Jan sits back in his office, comfortably, while he's writing about how monsters have been raiding his territory. He claims they haven't been dealt with in forever. So he tells Node to swing by and wipe them out for a low price. The receptionist looked rattled and asks if he's really sure, because the pay is straight up awful, but Node just smiles and tells her it's fine because he's taking the job anyway. It totally makes sense. Once Johann married into the Aubrier family, they've been propping up the Ferris household for years, pumping in the money to keep everything afloat. Nod tells Xenius and Lysis he can't say no because that's his brother. Even if the reward is basically pocket change, he just keeps going. But the real worry gnaws at him. Can he survive a whole week trapped on a carriage with Newt right beside him? Lucky for him, the Iron Dragon Knights hand over one of their own carriages, and Node gratefully thanks them for making everything so much easier. Newt sits there while the horses snore in the background, and this little dragon can't stop trying to play. Node is slumped in the driver's seat of the carriage, looking completely wiped out, and the brutal long trip is crushing him until, as the horses trot on and the path rolls by, his head starts to nod right into sleep. Suddenly, Newt pops his head up and blasts a monstrous screech right behind him, knocking Node into a full-body panic as he jerks, yells, and scrambles to hang onto the reins. The horses suddenly lose it and start bolting, and Node has to throw himself back as far as he can, yanking the reins with all his strength to make them calm down. He swivels back toward Newt and asks if he's already sick of being trapped in the back, and the dragon just shoots him a restless glare like it's itching to cause the next round of trouble. Newt chirps like everything's fine, like he didn't just cause trouble. And then Node snaps at him, telling him to finally start behaving for once. Newt lets out a smug little sound, shuts his eyes, and grins like he's proud of every last bit of chaos he just unleashed. Node sits in dead silence for a full minute, grinding his nerves into control. Then he tells Newt that as soon as they start running into more people, he'll have to duck back inside and hide. The carriage rumbles on down the quiet road, and Nod can only pray that if anyone spots the dragon for a split second, they'll shrug and assume it's just some weird cat or something. A few days slip by, and Node's right back to lounging in his seat until he lifts his head and, just in time, Newt snaps, loses his patience, and rockets into the sky. He clicks that Newt is done with carriage life, and since the kid's already soaring so high, he figures no one will even blink when a dragon circles overhead. Nod bumps along on his horse, while a thick-coated older guy rides right beside him, and they stick to a steady pace as the trouble. Night tumbles over the towering fortress perched on the hill, and under a sharp crescent moon, the carriage finally starts to. He pulls up to the entrance, and there's Johann smiling like he's been waiting forever. He tells Node he's happy he took that long trip, and then he drops his gaze to the dragon and shoots. Wait, did you seriously get bigger since we last talked? Node jerks back, yeah, and then Iris drops the bomb. She named him Newt, and right away little Amelia screams that it's not some gecko, it's a legendary warrior, and he can't even admit he's already been yelled at for mixing that up. One of the girls finally clocks Newt and immediately snaps. She blurts out that he's the cutest thing she's ever seen, and she can't stop screaming. The woman behind her lunges forward, grabs her, and tells her to calm down, because she hasn't even said hello yet, so she rushes in to apologize to Node about the kid's nonstop energy, but Node only chuckles and waves, then greets Amelia like she's probably about Iris's age, like she's in the same world. As the two of them stand there, totally hypnotized by the little dragon, glittering sparkles in their eyes as they refuse to look away. Nod gives Newt a little push and tells him to say hi, and the dragon just chirps happily like it's greeting the whole world. Amelia steps up and introduces herself, begging, "Let's be friends," and just as everyone finally starts settling, Johann says, "You two've got a ton to catch up on," and then pitches the perfect first move, a welcome meal to get things rolling. So the staff rolls out the food, apologizing like it's just some basic spread. Then Node cuts in fast, saying it's totally fine and everything looks absolutely delicious, right as while dinner gets underway. Noble tables are where the big meetings and sharp political moves happen, sometimes even turning into something more. Secret schemes, since Node's family, one of the older relatives, suddenly brings up marriage and presses him. "So, are you thinking about that yet?" Right as Node tears off a chunk of bread and blurts that marriage is ages away because he's still only a trainee, and the old guy snaps back, shocked, asking if he's really training with the Iron Dragon Knights. So Node humbly says he's still down at the bottom of the ladder, but the guy hits back that his father's probably bragging about him to everyone. So Node just shrugs it off, stays modest, and admits he's got a ton more to learn. The older noble lets out a booming laugh and says, You don't meet someone connected to the Knights every day, then leans in, grinning. And the real stories from the inside? That's the best part of these get-togethers, and he breaks it down. If you're stuck out in the provinces, the only chance you get to see the Knights in action is during those joint drills, which it sparks someone at the table to mention the Eastern Knights are gearing up for a huge drill real soon, and now everyone's staring at each other thinking, when was the last time we saw anything this massive? Yolan leans in and asks if what happened back when Nod was still a tiny kid really was that huge like. Is the story blown up, or what? One of the older nobles at the table scoffs and says, sure, everyone was busy partying after the war, but the kingdom's territory grew so fast it turned into a real problem because for younger guys, that scale is almost impossible to feel then. He points out the border used to hug the eastern mountains, meaning this whole region lived one bad day away from getting dragged straight into the middle of the fighting. Even though they don't have to worry about turning into a war zone anymore, life still doesn't ease up, because being royal knights forces them to ship out far more soldiers than ever, wiping out the local workforce and freezing the farms dead in their tracks. Johann drops his gaze and thinks, this is it, the perfect moment to bring it up. And the second Node clocks his face, he whips his head over and asks his brother what's on his mind like, right as he starts to speak about it. As Yuan spills the real reason he begged Node to visit, he drops the bombshell. It's all about those coming military drills. Node stares, clearly thrown off, and shoots back. Wait, I thought I was only here for a monster hunting job. But then, Yuan leans in, dead serious for once, and tells him, technically, you're right. He tells them that woodcutters stumbled on monster tracks in the forest, and when the guild dispatched adventurers to investigate, they uncovered a massive spider nest lurking deep in the woods. The guild begged those adventurers to handle it, but they straight up refused, saying it was way too dangerous, because the only high-ranked fighters who could pull it off are off on an expedition to the east, and they're not coming back anytime soon, so timing couldn't be worse. Those massive drills already wiped out the men, and with the locals gone, the militia is basically dead on arrival, with nothing left to stop what comes next. The villages are packed with nothing but women, kids, and the old folks who can't stand a chance against monsters, alone. So Johann drops his fork and blurts that he's scared too. If bandits spot how helpless everyone is, they'll swarm in and make everything worse. Johann breaks down how a few people still squeezed out profit by selling food amid the chaos, then drops the real kicker. His brother-in-law is a total sharp businessman for pulling it off. Then he breaks it down. These giant military expeditions are just massive business opportunities, since everyone's suddenly moving and spending, but the summer wheat harvest doesn't look good at all. He breaks it down like this, because every real adventurer dashes east chasing the money, the only folks still hanging around here are green rookies. And since hiring an outside guild would drain their pockets with a mountain of fees, he decides to skip the middleman and shoots a request straight to the Node instead. Node looked absolutely wrecked by the news and snapped at Johann, asking what the whole plan was supposed to be if he hadn't ditched the vacation and shown up right now. Johann just shrugs it off and says he'd introduced another adventurer he knows, betting his brothers would at least take the job. Meanwhile, the girls in the back start looking uneasy. He pauses for a beat, then drops the real bombshell. This isn't just for appearances. He says it's also to make room for a brand new family member who's about to join them soon. Nod looks wiped out as Johann tells him to drop the worry about the reward because his house will pay for it. Then his wife snaps in, saying, "That's not what I meant at all." With a grin that screamed joy, Johann finally blurts out the headline he and his wife are having a baby, and she beams back, saying the little one should arrive sometime this winter. Node is completely blindsided by the news, then blurts out loud congratulations to both of them right away. Then the vibe flips again. Johann snaps the talk back to business, demanding to know which exact monster they're hunting in the forest. At last, they reveal the target's true form, a colossal nightmare spider called the Night Spider, which is lurking deep inside Alba's forest, and the guide orders Nod to follow him, leading the way while Node cracks open his monster book to dig up to Night Spider threat, and right above him, Newt rockets through the sky as the guide puts it, these aren't your average spiders. They're gigantic, relentlessly aggressive carnivores, and they blast sticky silk to forge massive webs and a brutal shell that turns them into a one-man nightmare. So let's move on. He says it's only been a few weeks since the Lord shut everyone out of the woods, and now the local hunters are getting fed up fast. He tells them this place hasn't really had a problem with brutal monsters crashing in before, so Node leans in and fires off a question. What kind of stuff do they usually spot or hunt around here? The guide swears it's mostly goblins, giant bats, and spear deer out there, but they barely spotted any forest wolves lately. Node starts worrying that maybe the deep forest is packed with only weak monsters too, but the guy shuts that down. Those beasts don't even venture that far. The guide warns that bears sometimes stray right to the wood's edge, while Newt keeps his nose to the wind. Nod figures the night spider isn't really from this part of the forest. It sounds more like it got kicked out of its old territory, so the guide slams the brakes, stops dead in his tracks, and tells Node, "This is it. This is as far as I'm going." Node shoots the guy a quick, grateful look as they split apart then. Finally, dashing into the heart of the deep forest alone, Newt hung overhead, scouting the danger from the sky. Nod leans in and tells the little dragon, "Stay locked in, right now." And Newt chirps like he gets it, like he totally gets it. Then, out of nowhere, Davies rocketed from the sky with a thunderous cry, dropping right on a wild boar monster and catching it totally off guard. Nod ruffles him with a few pats and says he nailed it, and Newt just leans in closer, practically glowing with pride. He's blown away by just how wild a wyvern's sense of smell is. And he can't stop praising how Newt's scouting has kept this whole trip running flawlessly so far. As the sun slides behind the trees, Node throws in the towel for the day and starts setting up camp right away. Node throws himself into the work, hauling in a mountain of firewood, while Newt slips under the low branches and checks everywhere for more. He drops into action, laying rocks around the pit, as he explains this isn't like normal animals that all monsters don't fear fire, they fear the glow, so you've got to smother the light before a blazing flame lures in something vicious. So he keeps the fire low and locked in, letting a pot of soup bubble and simmer while skewers of meat sizzle off to the side. Newt sits there, staring at the food with eyes as wide as moons, and then, bam, his stomach erupts into a thunderous growl that ricochets through the silent campsite. Node finally raises a skewer and declares the meat is ready, and Newt just stares like someone handed him a miracle. Then the little dragon dives into the food like it owns the place, while Nod plops down and digs into his own dinner. Nod grabs a massive spoonful of that scorching soup, then flashes a satisfied grin like the whole meal just hit perfection. Together, the two of them finish their dinner in peace, snug in their secret little hideout deep in the woods. Under the crescent moon, everything goes dead silent. Only a thin ribbon of smoke crawls upward into the night sky, and then by the next morning, Node already hits the jackpot. There it is, a huge, heavy web slung between the trees, and he points it out like he's finally found the answer. Nod craned his neck at the giant white cocoons dangling from the trees, realizing this is where the night spider keeps its trapped prey. Basically, its creepy storage room. He pushes through the brutal brush with Newt, mind racing as he remembers why these monsters are called what they are. Because they don't strike fast, they keep what they catch alive. As they tiptoe through the clearing, Node finally clocks the massive creature crouched over the ground, and he lets out a whisper. He found it. The two of them crouch in the tall grass, eyes locked on the spider's hairy legs, twitching close by while they wait for the perfect second to pounce. Newt rockets into the air, first just a blur of scales and claws snatching the monster completely off guard. The tiny dragon stays lightning fast, juking just outside the spider's claws until the monster gets yanked and smashed right back into its own sticky web. Node steps out, fires off a quick compliment about their rock-solid teamwork, and the little dragon chirps back like it's got endless energy. Noah wastes zero time. He charges in yelling, and his blade whips through in one brutal, massive swing, slicing the monster clean in half. Blood splashes across the forest floor as the danger gets crushed, and Node calmly bids the thing farewell. He slides his sword back into its sheath and shrugs that it was all way easier than he thought. Then Newt breaks into a long, happy chirp, basically celebrating the win like crazy. Newt sprawls on the grass, gulping air after the fight, and Node grins because that scrappy little distraction was perfect. Sure, he can't fight back yet, but he'll be okay as long as he keeps. Nod drops down, praising him and calling out his name as Newt looks up, dodging like a blur, with that total jolt in his eyes. Joy finally, things feel calm, but that peace shatters when Newt suddenly snaps into a growl, blasting a sharp warning right as. A second goes by, then a much bigger spider rockets out of the canopy, screaming down at them, and Node blurts out in total shock as when the massive creature crashes down right where they were standing. Node barely throws himself out of the way in time, and the ground violently shudders as the impact blasts through field at the impact. He can't believe it's happening again. But he refuses to lose focus and rockets his sword forward like it's the only answer. Newt moves ahead to clear a little space, teeth bared at the beast while Node calms him down, swears he's fine, and blurts out his thanks before the sentence cuts off. He knows it. If Newt hadn't shouted right then, that would have been the end, no coming back. Node gaps up at the monster hanging over them. This one's way bigger than the last, and as he counts the 12 eyes staring back, it hits him. This isn't some random monster. It's a high-ranked one that's had all the time in the world to grow. Node suddenly flashes back to when Newt was just a tiny, freshly hatched wyvern baby. Seriously, how does time move this fast? But he also knows Newt is still just a kid far from fully grown and nowhere near finished. He finally gets it. Monsters aren't different from anything else. The ones that last the longest stack the most experience, level up into something totally new, and grow so terrifying they might as well be their own species with chilling names. Staring at the towering beast before him, Node realizes this monster isn't normal at all. It's the night spider's ultimate nightmare, the biggest one that exists. A general spider. The monster's leg slams down like a concrete pillar, and Node barely yanks himself back in time just in time to dodge being crushed by the impact lands, and he snaps back into action. He swings his sword to counter, but the blade just skitters off that brutal hard shell. He instantly realizes it was a shallow strike, the kind that can't possibly crack anything. That spider is moving way too fast for Big to even handle, skittering through the clearing, bouncing around like it owns the place, and dragging Node into a constant, never-ending sprint. To stay alive, this thing hangs over the forest like a nightmare, stalking every step he takes with those 12 glowing eyes. Then, without warning, a thick blast of webbing rockets out and smacks Node right in the middle of his swing, yanking his arms tight and forcing the brutal truth on him. This is serious trouble. His stance is shattered. He can't even find footing. He's left fully exposed, and that monster is already closing in to finish him. The general spider slams a leg down, but Node's focus is razor sharp. He watches every move crawl in slow motion, stays crouched, bursts forward with insane speed, dodges each crushing strike, and launches himself into the leap. He rockets up into the sky, vaulting over a huge swipe from the spider barely. The monster hurls a glob of nasty fluid, but he doesn't freeze. He screams it's go time, throws himself forward anyway, even though the beast looks like a walking nightmare, massive and brutal, but he refuses to back down. Nod rockets straight at the monster's face, bellowing at the top of his lungs as he shoves every last ounce of strength he has left into one crushing. With one massive swing, his blade carves straight through the spider's head. Once the brawl ends, Nod slumps hard on his sword, gasping and hurting all over, while Newt swoops in immediately, chirping nonstop like crazy, frantically darting around him, and Newt's panic is screaming off him. Yeah, he just laughs, then yanks the little guy in and crushes him in this huge hug. He starts patching himself up, brushing off the pain like it's nothing, just bruises and little cuts. Then he wraps bandages tight around his side. Nod yanked the bandages tighter around his waist, staring at the bite like it was nothing. Yeah, that spider took a chunk out of him. But he'd heal up, clenches his fist, and a rush of confidence hits him hard. He just knows he's getting stronger after a fight like that. So if a few days fly by, and at last it's time, he heads out, links up with Johan, and his wife wins again in the field last time. He's trying to show off the massive haul he scored. When Johan's wife lays eyes on those monster parts, she can't even breathe, and the moment Node says it's actually 2 whole spiders, she's absolutely stunned. Johan reaches out and tells Node he looks wrecked, pushing him to stay the night instead of bolting out right away, only for Node to start arguing. I shouldn't. But eventually, he caves and admits he'd really appreciate a place to stay. Johan's wife's face lights up, and the moment her joy shows, a knife flashes in the scene. Nod finally drops into bed after a sweet dinner, completely drained, while Newt is already passed out cold on his stomach, snoring away. Next morning, Node stands by his carriage, gearing up to ride out, and Johan's wife blurts that he has to go. Already, Node shoots back that, since he's still only an apprentice, he's got to return and get back to his duties. As the carriage lurches into motion, she throws him a wave and brings up the winter festival, reminding him he can come back anytime he wants, and he nods and waves right back, Newt soaring beside him as they head toward the Heading straight for the royal capital, he finally crosses the gate, barrels into a workshop, and slams his busted armor on the counter. Then turns to the smith like, can this be fixed? Or is it done? The blacksmith squints at the wrecked gear, says he can fix it. But the damage is so brutal it'll cost a fortune. And then he cuts himself off. Like the bad news isn't done. He reels from how much he loved that set. Then the truth hits. His growth is racing ahead of his gear, and it's finally time to swap it all for something new. The smith blurts, what the hell could have destroyed my gear this badly? And the stranger doesn't just drop a hint, he casually admits he fought a general spider, and that's when the damage finally hits him. He yells that Node is lucky to still be alive, then slams the point home. Now show off the materials you managed to drag back. Staring down the estimate, Nod realizes Johan's reward won't even touch the cost, but he knows he can't put a price on his own life. So the blacksmith tells him, hold up, it'll take a bit. Then grins and swears he'll drop everything the second his rush orders are done. Nod barges in and sees the entire workshop exploding and chaos workers screaming for materials, while the smith snaps, losing his temper over every last bit of madness. Turns out the whole mess is military drills lords from every corner are streaming into the capital with orders, and Nod tells him, "Don't worry, you can handle the weight." All right, he strides straight to the Adventurers Guild to knock out his business, and the receptionist slams the material buyout paperwork into his hands. No. Nod squints at the total and blurts out, "Wait, did someone mess up this number?" Because he burned so many parts on his own gear that he fully expected the payout to be way smaller. The receptionist nods and tells Node the amount is spot on, then she spills the real reason. Material prices are skyrocketing because the military drills are going full blast, leaving. Node stared at the massive payout and thought, sure, those drills wrecked his armor plan, but this extra cash is a damn good silver lining. Things explode into chaos when Alec barrels in panicked, clutching the ledger, and Node snaps yelling, "What the hell is going on with the family budget?" He snaps, demanding to know why they're struggling again. Especially after they'd finally clawed their way forward on the debt, but Alec, he lays it out plain. Those drills are what jacked up the food prices, so Node can't ignore it anymore, because those military exercises are wrecking his life from every direction. Moving on to training, Walter suddenly rockets forward with a ruthless strike, and Node barely has time to react before he's caught off guard by just how fast he moves. Walter rockets through the air to stay on top, and right as Node crashes in with a brutal strike, he barely raises his sword in time to block it. The two of them clash blades for a split second, but Node snaps into motion, shoves him away, and slides right back to reset his stance. But right then, the instructor slams the session to a stop, and both of them yank back and drop their weapons instantly. Nod blurts out a gasp, thanks, as he catches his breath, clutching his sword for support. While Walter just keeps standing there like he could fight all day. After the session, Walter grins to himself. Honestly, stunned Node actually connected with a clean hit, because the kid really does take after his father, Albert. As Walter storms off, Node's in the back, wheezing and trying to catch his breath, asking if he said something wrong. Walter just smirks that those last 2 months of training definitely weren't wasted. Then Walter hits him with the big news: it's finally time to begin real Dragon Knight training. And Node's eyes go wide as he blurts out a massive, heartfelt thank you. That evening, Node rattled through town in a carriage, grumbling under his breath because the hours dragged on, just as his brand new armor finally got finished. He's sitting there, mulling over Elsa and how she's actually a decent person despite all that chaos. Then wait, he hears something weird outside, and his mind just starts to sprint before he can finish his thought. I spot a hooded stranger lurking in the shadows of the alley like he owns the place, and the whole area screams something's wrong. K-Node's first thought is to shrug and let the city guards handle it. But then a terrified scream tears through the air, and his whole focus snaps to it. He can't just brush it off, so he slams the carriage to a halt, orders them to wait, and then bolts into the dark to find out what's going on. A scarred-up thug steps in front of him, sneers and laughs at Node, claiming they're using this spot, then warns him to keep moving if he knows what's good for him. No, doesn't even blink. He shoots the guy a cold stare and warns him, plain and simple, that he's only saying it once. That guy is blocking his way, and he needs him moving right now. No waste, zero time, he launches forward, smashes the lead thug in the face, and sends him crashing down hard, leaving the guy reels and screams about that bastard Note, but his tough axe starts crumbling the second the words hit. The thug starts screaming for help, but the guy just stands there, dead calm, like he already decided it's time to end this. It's over in a blink. Nod stands over a pile of unconscious guys, while the girl he saved watches from the ground in her eyes. And then she finally finds the courage to speak up, telling him, straight to his face, just how much she truly appreciates him for stepping in like that. She introduces herself as Elisha, sounding painfully formal, and she thanks him again for pulling her out of that group. He doesn't even check whether she's hurt. He just fires back, asking if those guys were trying to rob her. Then she snaps her days away and tells him she's actually at the Magic Academy, dead sure those thugs weren't random. They were hired just to mess with her. Node says he could probably beat the truth out of them. But Alicia shuts him down, saying it's pointless because they're just low-level hired muscle. He figures they might as well tie those guys up and asks if he should go grab some rope. But Elisha snaps at him to hold up. Nod whips his head back toward Elisha, asks what's wrong, and spots that she's frozen in place. She tilts her head down and declares, with total confidence, that she can actually make the rope they need herself. Before Nod can even react, Alicia whips her magic into motion, and the street beneath her starts to split open. The earth rips open with a violent roar, and she yanks those heavy iron chains straight out of the shattered pavement. Node can't believe it, so Elisha grabs the chains and hands them over, and tells him it's just alchemy. But Node shuts it down fast, pointing out that tearing up the public road is a massive, unacceptable mess. Just then, the guards finally burst in and hauled the thugs off, and they even thanked the two of them for stepping in. Nod says it's a good thing they patched up the street before the knights ever laid eyes on it. While Alicia, he thanks her again, and Node steps in pushing the idea that he'll walk her to the main road so she stays safe. Alicia nods, agrees, and shoots him one last heartfelt thank you as a carriage rattles by and rolls past them down the street. Node stands out on the quiet city street at night, telling them to just hang on only a little longer. While the blacksmith tells him spider parts are a dream to work with, polish the shell the right way, and it turns rock hard like metal. Then the skin comes out smooth as silk. Nod stared down at his brand new gear finally. His new armor, yet confusion hit hard, because the design didn't look anything like what he pictured. So the blacksmith tells him, "Congrats, you're officially a knight now," and then he springs a free upgrade, carving the set to look just like the real deal knight gear. Later, Node proudly shows his brand new outfit to his family, then shoots them a grin. "So, what do you think?" And everyone freezes on the spot, staring like they can't process what they're seeing. His mother breaks into tears, gripping her handkerchief because she's insanely proud. And even Alec can't keep it together, blurting that he never imagined he'd live to see the day Node look like a real knight. She instantly starts plotting a massive celebration for the moment. But Node's panic kicks in and he blurts for her and Alec to slow down just for a second. Alburo, his older brother, strides up and clamps a hand on his shoulder, saying their mother must be over the moon. Then Node whips around, staring at him just as Alburo tells the truth. She's been hurting ever since the burden she put on his shoulders, and now she can finally breathe because seeing him thrive is exactly what she's been waiting for. Right in the middle of their conversation, a stranger waves from across the way and shouts his brother's name. Node locks eyes, freezes, and turns around fast. Ellen goes absolutely feral with excitement, bursting out loud that the new gear looks sick and that her big brother looks unstoppable rocking that armor. Nod flashes back to being a little kid, still awestruck by how high he used to look to his dad and brothers when they got all geared up. So he tilts his face to the stars and, in a soft moment, thanks Ellen for what she said. Back at training, Rena spots the upgrade and tells Node he finally looks like a real knight. Then he fires off a joke about how even a regular guy can look great in fancy clothes. And somehow Node doesn't buy it as a compliment at all. Right as the training grounds start getting louder and more chaotic, the mood flips fast and everything tumbles toward. Rena yells for Instructor Orange to come take a look at her new armor, and when he finally checks it, he straight up admits it's actually pretty solid. Nod blurts out a thanks, but Orange's face twists into something scary. He swears he'll make sure Nod's skills can really live up to the gear's quality, and the kid completely loses it as the training turns brutal. Later on, Node slumps there, cloaked and utterly drained, while the research professor leans in and says it looks like someone beat him up again. Node asks what's wrong. She apologizes for the weird timing, and then asks if he can run a quick errand for her. Node just grins and says he's totally down. Right then, Newt shot those big, shining eyes up at him and made the cutest little sound, like, "Hey, can I come too?" A long-haired man stared down, shoulders tense, and whispered the name of the magical institute like it was burning in his throat. Node finally burst through to the front of the towering stone building. And it hits him in a heartbeat. He's really at the institute now. This is the capital's main academic hub, where they push everything from elite magic to basic tech. But step in as an outsider, and you'll feel the cold stare of a place that doesn't care about you. Standing there in his cloak, he could already tell this place was ultra-exclusive, cold to the bone, and it made his nerves lock up fast. He watched some guy get screamed at and shoved out the building. And the poor fool just kept apologizing as he bolted for the exit. Then, with the door slamming shut, Node just freezes, scrambling to figure out how he's even supposed to handle all this until Elisha pops up out of nowhere, and the second she locks eyes with him, she knows exactly who he is. While Node is left reeling, stunned, she showed up in a place like this. He tells her he's got a letter for Instructor Layson and asks if she knows the way. Then she jumps in, offers to lead him, and Node practically cheers, saying it's a huge help. They burst into a room packed with dusty old books and gear, and Node slips inside like he belongs. Then he blurts an apology for the interruption and shouts for the instructor. The long-bearded old man whips around, and the second he spots Node, his whole temper snaps. He erupts into furious yelling at him. The moment Layson steps in, he starts yelling right away, flat out telling them he won't take in a single new student, no matter how many times they come back. It totally throws Elisha off guard, so she scrambles to explain that Node's only here on official orders from the research facility. Yet Node stays icy professional, introduces himself as a messenger, and pushes on with his pitch, hoping to pull it off so the story can keep rolling. To calm the old man down, and Layson freezes in surprise at the mention of the facility, stopping his yelling just long enough for Node to thrust the document he's carrying into his hands. The instructor snatches the paper, scans it right away, and the moment he's finished checking, he He slams that heavy bundle back into Node's hands, flashes the kid a quick, "You're good," and orders him to deliver it to a guy named Eric. Node just nods and hurries off. Gets yanked straight out the door, and Layson roars after him that Eric needs to stop acting like an idiot and show his face the next time. No excuses, got it. Node stood in the hallway, totally thrown, and told Elisha he still couldn't believe she just got kicked out like that, only for her to look back at him. He looks absolutely guilty about the whole mess, and she jumps in with a quick apology saying Layson always shuts down anyone who tries to become his apprentice, so he probably thought Node was just another newcomer. As they stride on, Nod blurts, "So you're really an alchemist?" After spotting those chains earlier. Alicia grins and admits she's all about enchantments and physical magic, then says she's training to master attack spells too, and cuts herself off right there, like she can't even finish the thought. He realizes she's way more gifted than she lets on, and the moment he clocks it, he can't help thinking mastering 3 different kinds of magic is honestly mind-blowing. Elisha bursts with pride and tells Node, straight up, that her magic skills come with real confidence, and yeah, that's exactly how she feels. He can't help but be blown away because in his head, that kind of skill would feel like learning the sword, spear, and bow all at once. He knows he's still a rookie with just a spear, but watching someone this talented hits him hard and shows him exactly how far he still has to go. Nod asks if enchantment magic is what they use to forge things like magic swords, and Alicia grins. "Yep, you've got it." She gestures at a nearby lamp and says, "Even this little thing? That's an enchantment too, because it runs on magic circles etched inside, sucking power straight out of magic stones to keep everything alive and roaring." She blurts out that her true dream is to research and build magic tools like that then. Right in the middle of it, Node snaps with an idea as a life. Alicia whirls to him with a bright grin and asks if he wants to return to her room, because she's got something she can't wait to give him. But just as they start moving, she wobbles, trips over her own feet, and blurts a scream into the air. Right as the moment cuts off for her, Node snaps into action, and before she even hits the floor, he hooks her from behind, clearly thrown off by just how fast everything happened. He grabs her attention, snaps that she's got to watch where she's going, then asks if she's okay to get back up like, "Are you even all right?" Alicia snaps beet red, hiding her embarrassment as she stammers out a quiet thank you for saving her. Nod locks eyes with Elisha and suddenly can't stop thinking she looks just like his younger siblings back home, until he realizes it's probably that fiery red hair. Elisha totally freezes for a second at that comment, then snaps back that her mom is the one with the red hair. So, yeah. As they keep marching through the halls, she suddenly realizes Node's wearing armor she's never seen before. She thrusts a wrapped gift into his hands, and when she says it's a magic tool powered by fire magic, his whole world snaps sideways. He's caught completely off guard. He knows magic tools cost a fortune. Something like this could easily fetch dozens of silver coins, a price he can barely even picture. Alicia insists it's just her way of saying thanks for helping her, so No finally stops spiraling and takes the gift. She shoots him a warning that blade's built for magic stone and every swing shrinks it. This is just a fragile prototype, so he's got maybe 3 uses left. Then she tells him exactly what to do: grab the handle, shout Ignis, and once the magic answers, push the power with a Finey and Node. The code almost runs. Right there then, Alicia snaps, screams at him to stop before he turns the whole room into a fire hazard, and he jerks to apologize on the spot. She warns him to be careful. One direct hit, and that fireball the size of his whole torso will explode and fully engulf the target. As they stride off, Node can't stop himself from thinking, with a tool like this, I bet I could drop a crystal rank monster in one shot. Nod stares at the magic tool and tells Elisha it's way too big for a simple thank you. But then he leans in and promises that if she ever gets into trouble, he'll have her back. Elisha drops his gaze, cheeks warming up, and admits that ever since he brought it up, she's got something on her mind that's been weighing on her. She confesses that for someone like her, a nobody, finding a master magic user willing to train her is basically impossible, because she's got 0 connections, no title, and no way in. Only a teacher with a master rank can even get her into the Magic Institute. While they walk, the Node keeps talking like she's listening to every word. Then, out of nowhere, he asks how she's really doing in class and what her grades are looking like. Alicia doesn't even blink. She cuts him off and admits she's been the top student in her entire class the whole time. Like that. It hits him so hard, he's totally blindsided. He freezes mid-step, then stares at her with wide-eyed shock and blurts out, "So, how old are you, really?" She blurts that she's only 14, then reveals her classmates are basically 20-somethings, leaving him stunned, convinced he's talking to a literal genius. This is the Royal Magic Academy, the kingdom's absolute top spot for training magic, no competition. So it's packed with students who swagger in like they own the world, convinced they're the greatest thing ever only to realize a bunch of them aren't. Elisha isn't just good, she's on a whole other level, flexing talent that blows away everyone her age. Node can't stop himself from imagining the looks on people's faces if they ever saw just how wildly talented Elisha really is, especially. Elisha's convinced the man who hired those thugs was just seething with jealousy over her skills, and she flat out says she's selling her own magic tools to build her reputation so she can finally land an apprenticeship. But she admits the real problem is brutal. She can't get the materials she needs, like spirit crystals. And Node knows those things are ridiculously expensive. Spirit crystals are crazy special magic stones packed with the real power of a spirit. Only strong spirits drop them, and you have to beat the spirit to get to its core, which is terrifying because if a spirit decides it hates you, it can smash everything in sight. And yeah, God keeps reminding everyone of the old rule. Don't wake a sleeping dragon or a spirit, so he's totally wrecked with stress and tells her, I want to help so bad, but no number of lives will ever be enough to survive hunting those things. Elisha just grins at him and tells him to drop the worry, because that prototype he handed her wasn't just a gift. It cracked the code for how to pull enough power even from cheap, low-grade stones. So she leans in and asks Node if, through all his adventure connections, he knows where she can get her hands on a fire-type magic crystal. Nod weighs it all out and realizes he's only ever scored ice spirit stones so far, so now he's freaking out. How on earth is he supposed to pull this off for her? And it's not just a coincidence. These crystals, the so-called spirit tears, only appear where magic is choking the air and the spirits hit their absolute peak. Ice spirit tears only show up on snowy mountain peaks when winter clamps down, while water spirit tears are hidden way out in deep lakes and out on the sea. Thunder spirit tears only show up where lightning crashes into the ground, and everyone swears fire spirit tears only live in active volcanoes. So yeah, that means Nod tells Elisha the nearest volcano sits across the border, and a round trip would chew up at least 2 months, far too long for him to go alone. So Elisha's face instantly falls. She shrugs it off with a grin, saying she doesn't have the money anyway because all she ever does is copy borrowed textbooks, and that hustle barely earns her a thing. So all she can really do is forge him one more magic tool just like the one she already gave him, while he just stands there, jaw hanging wide, barely able. He tries to process her words, but the moment he looks at her, confusion and full-on disbelief hit him at once. Did he really hear that right? Nod leans in so close it's almost a whisper, eyes locked, and demands she repeats every word she just said. Elisha grins and tells him that since she's already planning to grab extra spirit tears, she can crank out as many of those magic tools as he wants, no sweat at all. Nod stares at the tool clenched in his hand, sweat pouring as the truth finally slams him. He can't believe she's totally clueless about just how insanely valuable and rare her work is. The hall roars with noise and bodies everywhere, but Node just stands there like he's daring the chaos to come to him. He hears someone shout his name, snaps his head around, and there's Zinnius waving like crazy and yelling at him too. They head over to the tavern to catch up with the old crew, Jago stuffing his face in there, while Shino and Almona hang back and wait. At the table, Shino's eyes light up because she realizes it's actually Node, then Almana drops that it's been way too long since they last hung ouchies. Already halfway through her drink when she leans in and tells him she heard the big news about him. He jumps into the night order, and Shino tells him straight up that he needs to show up more than things pick up from there, just a little bit. The girls keep bickering back and forth while Jay just chugs his beer like it's nothing. Then he finally stops, leans in, and tells Node he's looking totally solid and super healthy. Zinnius slaps a hand on Node's shoulder and tells the whole group, I'm gonna borrow the. Jagos tells their friend to cut it short because today is all about getting straight to the point. They're cheering their promotion to Red Copper rank, then Node stares at the fresh adventure tags and the realization hits hard as everything starts to make sense. Even after all that brutal training, his friends are still blasting up the ranks faster than he can keep up. Just as the crew breaks apart, a voice from the back calls out to Node, asking if he's okay. Zinnius's face turns grim as he tells Yagos to cover the rest of the party for a bit before the story cuts to a quiet night, sky stars blazing overhead, and everything feels unreal and about to change. Much more private, Node yanks out a weapon and orders Zinnius to take a look at this magic sword, and Zinnius stares like he's just seen a ghost, sweating as he grips the blade in his hand, then fires off. So you're telling me this is truly a top-tier combat magic tool? Stuff like this is basically impossible to get for regular people? But the moment he starts to press, he stops. But Nod doesn't even blink, just keeps that stone face. He needles Zinnius, What would he do if Nod could finally land a meeting with the mage who forged the thing? Zinnius completely snaps. He yells at Nod, demanding to know if he's serious and what the catch is, then pleads for an introduction, desperate to find out what kind of mage could. And somehow she still pulls it off. The note says she's a total genius, wielding 3 kinds of magic, but Zinnius gets warned. She's not just dangerous. She's the kind of danger that comes with a smile, because she had no idea how priceless her work truly was then in a flashback. Alicia stares in confusion while Node remembers how she survived every day, completely unaware that her skills were a gold mine, and Node even told her that if she ever dangled magic tools as payment, adventurers would swarm in, begging to help her for free, and the memory snaps off with Alicia brimming with hype. She declares she's posting her request right now, and Node's left staring like, wait, she makes it look that easy too? Zinnius admits he had to jump in and stop her before it spiraled out of control because it isn't just her size. Her total lack of common sense is downright terrifying, and Zinnius then breaks it down how mages truly tick. They can't stand the idea of money running their craft. Since magic is a gift they worship, they don't waste their time with anyone they don't respect, so he bets, just from her vibe, that she's never registered with the guild, and Node confirms it, and that's when the real nightmare hits, because the guild is the only reason adventurers don't get swallowed alive. Rules, protection, the whole shield. Pull that away, and you're basically out there alone in the dark, with nothing. No, nothing can stop the wrong people from hunting them down. Zinnius snaps that once word leaks about Alicia, she won't just face nosy researchers. Someone dangerous could grab her and drag her into a cage, and they made Node crank out magic tools, like a machine, just so some creep could get richer, and she still remembers scaring her with those exact facts. Zinnius leans in and asks if he really spilled everything to her like that, and she nods, admitting she got the danger, but he probably went a little too far with those threats. Looking back on her past, Node realizes this much. Her parents were nothing but farmers. They died when she was still little, and she didn't even step into school until she turned 12, so she never got a real shot to learn the ropes. That's when Node, since the guild won't let anyone post a secret request. Zinnius's party is the only crew he can truly trust. Then Zinnius finally clicks into the full picture, and everything changes. He locks eyes with a stern stare, then leans in and orders Node to spill the real details, exactly what this job is about to demand. Zinnius lays the mission on the table, he's sending them to a volcano to scoop tears from fire spirits. Then he smirks and says Node can grab the full story from the client later because the real payoff is way better. Whatever extra magic tools they forge from those crystals, they get to keep. Zinnius tells him not to expect a single real coin from this run, so Node can only take what he can get. Then he fixes his eyes on the crystals and demands to know if there's any other rule he's supposed to follow. Zinnius is dead serious about one thing. Nod must never ever spill where the tools came from or who the mage really is, because Zinnius knows adventurers can't stop talking. And the second that secret leaks, it'll spark one massive headache for everyone. So Node finally snaps and agrees to the deal, then freezes for a second, because there's one last thing he has to ask. He's baffled. Why is Zinnius pouring all this effort into a mage when he isn't even making a profit as the middleman? It looks like a brutal amount of work with zero payoff, but Zinnius just shrugs it off. Says he already got paid way too much for helping spot those thugs back then, because Node still isn't buying it. And that's where things start to crack. So eventually, he finally spills the truth. Cheeks burning as he rubs the back of his head. He admits Alicia hits way too close to home, like his younger sibling, and he couldn't stop himself from taking care of. Zinnius just bursts into laughter, tells him he hasn't changed one bit, then yanks him along like it's a party mission, and drops the bomb that the first round of drinks is on him tonight. Later on, Node heads back to Alicia, and she's posted right at the door, bursting with excitement. She asks if he finally settled the deal, then tells him he's got to come inside, because she's not letting him get in from outside. Node clocks that she looks wrecked and fires off, "Are you even okay?" She just shrugs, admits she stayed up all night grinding, and then staggers away to make tea. Node strides through the house when he spots it. The back room door is yanked wide open, and he blurts it to Alicia, who's in the middle. She swings into the room with the tea, and when she asks what he's staring at, he points. Then she follows his gaze and spots it. Her bedroom door is wide open, revealing a white cloth lay draped across the bed. Then Alicia snapped, her face blazing bright red as her mind caught up with what was about to happen. Node just clocked her underwear and she drops into motion, lunging across the room to slam the door shut, while Node just freezes there, utterly confused, until she steps right up to him, eyes blazing with suspicion, and demands to know what he really saw. Node just stalls, plays it safe, and asks if that white fabric was just some kind of magic material. Elisha freezes and stares at him, completely stunned. Because she just goes for it, laughing through the nerves as she blurts out that this super rare material is something she hates showing off So Node swallows the excuse and rushes to apologize for peeking into her bedroom. But the guilt hits him hard really hard. He can't stop thinking about the whole thing. And the room turns ice cold with awkward silence, and he panics, scanning for anything at all to latch onto. And then he asks if he can grab a book about legendary monsters, and Elisha smiles. Yeah, go ahead. Because thank goodness the awkward talk finally shifts gears. Elisha finally finishes stirring the tea, then casually drops the bombshell that she hand-copied that entire book herself, because she couldn't get enough of the subject, and, as she lists legendary beasts, Fenrir and the sky dragons, she turns to Node and asks if he ever dreams about going toe-to-toe with monsters like that. Node stares at the drawings of those colossal beasts, and even though the thought tempts him, he admits honestly, he'd rather just walk away than get involved. He tells her most of it is probably just made-up nonsense anyway because it's a life. Elisha slams the brakes right there and tells him no kidding, there are tons of ancient records that prove these monsters are real. She tore into the pages, hunting down the perfect example for him then. Right when she hit it, she finally, landing on a page about the Emperor Spider, and boom, Node's attention snaps to it instantly, like a magnet. As it clicks and the name suddenly feels familiar, Elisha leans in and tells him he's probably thinking of the raw silk that gets imported from the East because, back when legendary adventurers still roamed the world, they called that silk Arachne's thread. Node points out. She's talking about something from hundreds of years ago, so a life. Elisha locks eyes with him and demands to know if he thinks she's lying, and Node just can't come up with a real answer. Nod tells Elisha he knows she isn't playing around, but honestly, it's still so wild he can't quite get his head around it. Elisha swears the info is real, telling you she dug it out of an ancient document while she was stuck knee-deep organizing the Magic Academy's archives. Node blurted out why she'd waste her time on some boring job, and she snapped back that the Academy runs a cash shelf program, hand-copying books was literally the deal. She whips her head around to hunt down the exact copy she made, leaving Nodes behind with his tea as she frantically digs through her stuff, almost toppling everything in her panic, until she finally breaks into a triumphant grin, because she's found exactly what she came for. She slams the books onto the table, saying the original text is falling to pieces, but she's still stitched together the missing bits, translating the Empress Spider's traits and the legend of how that fabled thread is made, which, he's so locked in that he leans over the table, staring at everyone, wondering if monsters that terrifying are actually roaming the whole continent. Elisha fires back, wondering if the old-school adventurers just hunted every last one into extinction, because nobody's seen a single one for centuries. Node swears he wants that explanation to be real, but the book flips the story, says, the queen only shows up when massive, violent wars tear the world apart. No. Nod suddenly remembers there was a massive war just over 10 years ago. So if no spider showed up back then, he starts thinking Elisha could be right about them being gone, until a thought hits him like lightning. Elisha snaps to attention, realizing she dropped the ball. She admits she completely forgot to mention the request hiding in the adventurer's note. He shuts his book, snaps back into the moment, and grills her. What's the deal with that guy, Zinnius, because that huge favor just saved him, and he makes a point to thank her for running the errand as wyverns roar over the city. Elisha dives back into the shelves, grilling. So you're really friends with Instructor Layson? And when she says the old man told her the node has to show up in person next time, she leans in, shocked, because he even called her by her name. Node just shrugs it off and stares at the desk, then tells her he's sorry she got stuck taking the heat and getting yelled at instead of him. Elisha drops a bombshell back when she was still at the Magic Academy. That instructor was actually her master. Then she stormed out because she couldn't stand the place anymore, and now everything about this feels wildly awkward. She slumps her head on the table and tells Node he probably figured it out already because the Academy is so sealed off and exclusive that it pretty much leaves no. Reliving the cold stares those other mages gave him, he's sure they weren't friendly at all. And now he can't stop wondering if Elisha is the only one who's truly different. And the thought hits him hard. Turns out the research institution is a total disaster, everyone's scrambling for power, clashing with each other nonstop, and it's a mess of lies. Living in a world where your connections mattered more than your worth, and then Instructor Layson showed up, stayed completely neutral, and somehow he was one of the few truly decent people left. The research professor drops her gaze, Her tone turns serious as she brings up a maid she once knew. She wipes the chalkboard clean while she lays it out this person started from humble roots and still clawed their way to a name by crafting magic tools. The eraser snaps against the board and she bluntly tells everyone pretty much right away that it's probably a lost cause. Node clenched his fist, zeroing in on exactly who she meant, and demanded to know why it had to be like this. She lays it bare. Instructor Layson can stay neutral only because he's backed by a powerful family, while any mage with no clout or connections is treated like dead weight in their non-stop power games. Right as she finishes wiping down the board, she points at him and says that's exactly why nobody will ever step up to take on an apprentice like him. Nod lunges into an argument saying everything could change if they'd just prove it with real results. But the professor whips around and tells him flat out that she can't stand being the one to break the news to him. She meets his eyes and bluntly tells him that every real instructor, every last one, was branded a genius at least once in their lifetime. She admits the kid's got a rare, insane level of talent, then leans in and tells Node that kids like this have shown up before again and again, and, as wyverns roar over the city outside, she drops the bombshell. She's the one who earned her instructor title at just 18 years old. Elisha beams with a massive smile and tells Node, I swear I'm just so happy we actually became friends. Back in the present, Node keeps his eyes on Newt, panicking over how he'll even help Elisha if her hunt for a magic master crashes, while the rain outside starts hammering down like the sky's furious. Right when they finally make it back, Alec the butler rushes to the door with a note, but the second he spots how his master looks, worry hits him like a punch. Node is absolutely wiped out, drenched from head to toe, and warns Alec he needs a break before he catches a cold, so Alec hustles off to get a hot bath ready for him. Node lets out a huge sigh about how brutal today's been, then waves Nude over to get him cleaned up too. The little dragon snuggles right into Node's chest, blazing with pure joy, like it's finally back where it belongs, wrapped in warmth and home. Nod rips into action with a towel, wiping every last drop of rain from his back and wings. He tells Newt to fling his wings wide and finish the job, and the little guy chirps as he shakes the water off. Once he's totally dry, Newt sprawls onto a soft mat to recharge, and wow! He looks way better than he did after that brutal storm. Alex strides back in with a cup of fresh herbal tea, and Node tells him it's a lifesaver as he finally chills out and rolls around on the floor with Nude. Alec blurts out that there's one more thing he has to tell Node, and it snaps Node's attention like a warning bell as the two of them make their way to the baths. The kids are already splashing around, and the girls proudly wave their toy duck in Nod's face. He praises them for doing great, then gently reminds everyone to chill out, relax, and soak for a while. Once they finally get out, Node jumps in to help dry off his little sisters, while Alex just stands there, ready to help too. That night, Node finally got his chance. He sat down, cracked open a fresh letter from Johann, and it was stamped in his name. Johann tells everyone that since Nod wiped out the General Spider a few months back, the locals can finally head into the forest again to hunt and gather food. Even with that brutally cold summer wrecking part of the harvest, the village is still pulling through, and it actually looks like they'll make it through winter this time. Nod can't help but beam especially since Johann insists his brother can always come back for another visit, and Newtcher burst into happy joy right from the floor. But then Node spots a tiny extra note crammed at the bottom of the page, and it says, A. The wyverns made a nest out in the eastern mountains. Johann breaks the news, and even though nobody's been hurt yet, the whole area is shaking with fear over what it might do next. Johann makes it crystal clear he's not asking Node to handle a thing yet. Node just fixates on the word wyvern, staring like it's the only thing in his world. A knock rattles the door and tells Node dinner's ready. Then, right on cue, Newt's stomach starts growling like a wild beast. He wraps up what he's doing, then yells over his shoulder, I'm on my way. And then he yells at Newt to hurry up so they can get their food, and the little guy chirps with excitement before scampering out, leaving the dragons soared high above the academy buildings as the sun blazed down, turning another chaotic day into pure chaos. Later, Node bursts into the office and confronts Instructor Orange, demanding to know if he needed him. Orange hunched behind a mountain of paperwork, telling Node, my training is officially on hold. But Node swears he's heard that same line before, and before he can even respond, it's like the moment slips away. Rena lunges in out of nowhere, starts sobbing, grabs Node by his shirt, and begs him to help with the non-stop work. Orange snaps at Rena to quit picking on the rookie and start acting like a proper senior, so Node leans in and demands to know what's really going on with this whole mess. Orange spills that the top brass finally cracked, deciding to massively expand the Dragonites to crush the border war that's been dragging on for years. Turns out the paperwork is wiping everyone out, so Node demands answers. Exactly how many more knights are they planning to tack on to their crew of 40? Node stares at the room packed with supplies, and a sharp thought hits him. There's no way the real number of fresh recruits is anything but tiny. He asks Arendt if they're down to maybe 5 more riders, but Arendt just raises a hand, shuts it down, no, and then Arendt. When Arendt drops 50 as the real number, No Jaw slams to the floor, stammering it out like he can't breathe, completely blown away by just how massive it is. Arendt lays it out in stages, and Node blurts, "Are you sure that massive expansion is even a good idea?" But turns out taming dragons isn't a anyone can do it job. It takes rare, top-tier knights, and ripping them from other units would leave the country wide open. Rena, though, just cheers from the background, nudging Node to keep it cool between them. Aaron tells Node it was him who fixed everything, and when Node jabs at his own chest like, "Wait me," pure confusion washes over him. And so Aaron says, in most cases, these dragons want nothing to do with people. They'd roast you on sight, unless Rena steps in and bulldozes them into behaving. But Node stumbled on a way better plan by pure accident right while he was holding Newt. He tells you that if you use the mother's scent to fool a hatchling into imprinting, then no matter who you are, you can become a dragon rider. Which means, so now they can stop burning their best knights and quit fretting about the military slipping, because that deal also dumps a massive budget boost right into their hands. Nod can't stop thinking back when Newt was just a baby. He was already wolfing down twice as much food as him. And if Newt ever grows to full size, that grocery bill alone would destroy the family budget. So he's beyond relieved they're getting support. Gazing at that mountain of paperwork, Node blurts out, "So, are you actually going to let regular adventurers collect the egg?" Aaron rubs his chin and finally admits they actually considered going to that planet first. News rockets across the city, and people start spotting those fresh collection requests from the Iron Dragon Knights, whispering to each other, "Wait, are you seeing this too?" If they've seen the post yet, and the whole place erupts in laughter at how the eggs and dung are now a matched set, everyone's scrambling to guess who's getting hit next. Aaron's face looks downright furious as he snaps. That's exactly why they shut that idea down. And Node chimes in that adventurers definitely aren't famous for staying quiet about things. Orange points out that sure, any adventurer could probably take a wyvern and snag an egg, but nobody ever imagined Node's plan. Just getting himself drenched in poop like that would somehow do the job. He slams his hand on the board and roars that the info is only minutes away from leaking once the rumors hit. So he's decided the Iron Dragon Knights will take care of the collecting themselves. Oren steers the group to a huge wall map, jabs his finger at every known wyvern nest ant, but when Nod leans in and studies those marked peaks, he suddenly spots something that totally knocks the wind out of him. Aaron's voice cuts through the silence. He sees the notice board just standing there, staring at the map and asks, "What's going on?" He nods hard toward the eastern mountain range and tells Arens Warrien's already staked out a nest up there. He's got the info only because his brother just fired him a letter about it. This is their newest lead, but Nod's expression hardens as he lays out the truth. This is a full-on disaster, because that spot used to sit right on the border, stacked with top-tier mining zones. So Arens gets it instantly. He blurts out that if those wyverns start attacking the horses carrying